Chapter 25. Welcome back, said Yuri into her mic. For those of you who are just tuning in, we are now starting round 5 of the Chunin exam. In the first 2 rounds, victory went to Uzumaki Naruto. Too bad the rest of the matches weren't as brutal, whined Kodo, who was in the middle of the arena floor. In fact, ever since Naruto-kun fought, it has been a real snooze fest down here. Kankuro forfeited to Aburame Shino before the match even began. And the match between Nara Shikamaru and Temari, while interesting, lacked any bloodshed. What's a girl got to do to get a little blood down here? That's enough, Kodo, snapped Yuri. Call the next match already. Alright, mumbled Kodo. Spoil a girl's good time. The next match is Mitarashi Enko vs Tsuchi Kin. The two said girls appeared on the scene in an instant. As a wind blew across the field, they both drew their weapons. Enko pulled out her snake-like blade, and Yurumi, ready to fight with everything she had. She had waited long enough and Hinata was out of the exam. Now all she had to do was win this match in order to one-up her rival in love. Kin, holding her scythe with a large bell attached to it by a chain, had her own reasons for wanting this to be over with. She knew that soon the invasion would start. Yet, as she stood there, she was beginning to have her doubts. Orochimaru had cut off all contact with her. Also, she had no idea what had happened to her teammates. Not that she cared about them, but what could happen to her in the near future. Maybe her leader had already taken them back to the village, and pigs had discovered how to fly. As loyal as she was, she knew that failure meant death. There was no escaping that cold hard truth. It was more than likely that she had been hung out to dry now that she no longer had a use other than stalling this exam. And she had no choice but to do it, for she knew the fate of those who dared to defy Orochimaru. Are you both ready? Asked Kodo. She received a nod from both of them. All right, Hajime. The two girls wasted not a second after hearing that. Kin rushed at Enko with a frontal attack. Enko, in response, sent her blade towards Kin. Her opponent smirked and moved to the side to avoid the attack. But with a flick of the wrist, Enko manipulated her blade to turn around to attack Kin from behind. Then Enko heard the sound of a bell ring. All of a sudden Kin vanished and the blade was heading right at Enko. She could have cancelled the attack or sent it elsewhere, but instead she dove to the side. Kin appeared moments later as she swung her scythe where Enko had been. So that's why Ino was freaking out during her match, thought Enko as she quickly got up. Genjutsu. That was very impressive, said Kurenai with a slight nod. What is sensei? Asked Kiba. That girl Kin is combining Kenjutsu with Genjutsu, she explained. Not an easy thing to do for someone so young. It must have something to do with that bell at the end of her weapon. That's right, exclaimed Ino. I heard a ringing sound just before I started seeing things. Then why didn't we all see it? Asked Tenten. Kurenai shrugged. I would have to guess that its effectiveness is either due to range or the amount of people in the area, explained Kurenai. If it covered too large of an area, then the Genjutsu might be weaker. Or she can only cast it on a certain number of people at a time. Or it could still be incomplete. Back on the field, Enko was having similar thoughts. She was no Genjutsu expert, nor did she have any desire to study it. She was a close-range fighter who loved pure combat and thought that Genjutsu users were weak. People like that hide in the shadows and use their illusions to wear their opponents out and then attack them as soon as they were too weak to do anything else. Where was the fun in that? But all of that didn't mean that she couldn't figure some things out on her own. Her biggest clue had come from Ino's match. No one had seen Kin use any hand signs, yet Ino reacted like she had been under a Genjutsu. The only explanation had to be that weapon of hers. Kin, wanting to end the match quickly, charged at Enko and then leapt into the air. As she did, she brought her scythe above her head to prepare for the final blow. Enko saw this and prepared herself to counter it when she heard the sound of a bell once more. Now, instead of one Kin, there were several all around her. Kin thought that Enko would panic. Her Genjutsu was simple and effective. Seals were carved into the staff and bell of her scythe, which allowed her to move chakra into the bell and then release it into a Genjutsu of her choice. All she had to do was think about what she wanted and her opponent would see it. What happened next, however, caught her off guard. Enko swung her arm at one of the Kins and her blade pierced it. Then, with a flick of the wrist, the blade turned and attacked the next Kin. And then the next Kin. This continued until there was only one Kin left who had no choice but to block. In the nick of time, Kin blocked the blade, the staff of her scythe, thinking that its power was diminished. Sadly, she was wrong, as the blade cut through her scythe staff and pierced her in the chest. She then fell to the ground while still holding on to the two pieces of her weapon. I may suck at Genjutsu, said Enko, but I do know how to handle multiple enemies. It's not over yet, grunted Kin as she got on one knee. She then dropped what was left of her scythe and pulled out Enko's weapon from her chest. She then got on her feet and prepared to grab some Senbon needles, but Anko yelled, Dokiki Tsuba no Jutsu, and sent several purple acidic balls at Kin. The Otonin tried to dodge them all, but one grazed her left arm and began to melt away the flesh that it had come into contact with. Kin gritted her teeth in pain but refused to give up. She grabbed some Senbon needles and began to throw them at Anko. So wild and random was her aim that Anko didn't even have to dodge one. Anko, in response, used her blade once and stabbed Kin's left leg. Kin fell to the ground and then pulled the blade out of her leg. What a turnaround, exclaimed Kodo. In a bloody fashion, Anko has completely turned the tables on Kin. It was true, Kin was covered in blood. Her chest, left arm and left leg were covered in blood. Also her hands were as well from pulling the blade out of her twice. That's what you think, said Kin as she got to one knee. I've out you trapped. Anko looked at her like she was nuts. Then, from behind her, she heard the sound of a bell ring. Anko whipped her head around and saw a Senbon needle with a bell attached to it. She then scanned the ground and saw that it wasn't alone, for there were at least a dozen on them. The next thing Anko knew was a ringing that was not that of one of those little bells, but that of a grand cathedral bell. No, it was like she was in the bell tower and hundreds of them were ringing at the same time. It was deafening. Anko's hands covered her ears in an attempt to block out the sound. This was Kin's chance. She quickly got up and attempted to run at Anko. Well, it was more of a limp to tell the truth. But along the way, she picked up the bladed half of her scythe, and when she got close enough to Anko she swung it at her. But as Kin swung it, the ringing stopped and Anko moved back before it could tear through her flesh. Her shirt, however, was a different matter. All that remained was her fishnet mesh undershirt that hid nothing. Damn, that was close, muttered Anko as stood her ground. She looked around and noticed a few things in the stands that she didn't like. Like, for example, some of the looks she was getting from the younger men in the audience. However, when she looked at Naruto, she saw that his nose was dripping blood. This is the end, growled Kin. Once again, the ringing started up and Anko felt she had no choice but to cover her ears. Damn it, thought Anko as Kin stumbled over to her. I have to do something or else I'm finished. Once Kin got close enough, a kunai shot out of Anko's sleeve and Anko stabbed her side. However, at the same time Kin's attack made contact with Anko's shoulder. Moments later they were both on the ground. Is this it? Asked Kodo. A double knockout? Come on Anko-chan, yelled Naruto. Get up. Upon hearing that, Anko slowly stumbled onto all fours and then onto her feet. We have a winner, cried Kodo, and she raised Anko's good arm. X. Up in the crowd, Kiba was coming back from the bathroom. Seeing Anko without her shirt had caused him some discomfort. The kind that shouldn't be noticed around women. So he had gone to the bathroom to calm down for a couple of minutes. On his way back, he noticed Haku standing by the railing. Hey Haku-chan, he called out. Haku noticed this and gave him a slight nod. Been here long? Of course, she said. My cousin is in the finals after all. So, what do you think? He asked. Who do you think is going to be a Chunin? Well, began Haku. It's tough to say. Hinata won't for making the match too personal. She cared more about proving something than winning. Anko won't if she doesn't quit before the next round. She's injured and will need treatment right away. Shikamaru is defiantly a Chunin for his tactics and for knowing when to give up. Naruto Otoko might be able to become a Chunin as well, but they might look poorly on him fighting back to back like that. It'll depend on the judges. But he won, said Kiba. Isn't that what's most important? No, said Haku as she shook her head. What's the point if you complete a mission and your whole team is dead? Sometimes you have to know when to run away or not fight. Naruto Otoko hasn't reached his limit yet, so it's still anyone's guess. X. And now it's time for the final match of the first round, said Yuri. Due to interference in the second part of the exam, Uchiha Sasuke has been allowed to take part in the final part of the exam. He will be facing off against Gaara. Who will win? Save it Yuri, said Kodo. Will Uchiha Sasuke and Gaara please report to the floor? X. As soon as his name was called, Gaara turned and walked down the stairs and into the hallways that lead to the arena floor. He had been feeling better lately. Ever since Haku had stopped by, he had been sleeping better. All he did was eat one of the cookies that she had left and he was out like a light. Never before had he felt so refreshed. Sure, he still had the dark circles around his eyes, but that was to be expected. As Gaara walked into the final passageway, he was stopped by two Kusanine. Hey kid, our boss wants you to lose in this next match, said one of them. He bet a lot of money on the Uchiha to win, said the other. You're in my way, said Gaara. These two guys really annoyed him. Had he been his usual self, he would have killed them without saying a word. Right now, he was giving them a chance to walk away with their lives. Sadly, it seemed like they didn't care if they died. You little shit, said the first. Don't you know anything? This exam is not about you. It's for the daimyos to gamble and gloat with each other. Now you're going to lose or else we'll make sure that you never make it outside. So what's it going to be? Moments later, their screams were heard and then quickly silenced. Moments later, both Gaara and Sasuke were facing each other. Both looked at each other with eyes that were ready to kill. Are you both ready? Asked Kodo. All right, Hajime. Gaara wasted no time. The cork in his gourd shot out and sand poured out of it. Moments later a Tsunabunshin of Gaara was created. Unlike what Naruto usually did, Sasuke had no problem seeing the difference between the two. Sasuke charged, aiming for the real Gaara, however the sand clone moved in and blocked the attack. And it didn't disappear. In fact, Sasuke's arm was stuck inside of it. For a moment at least. With great effort Sasuke pulled it out and backed away a bit. Seems your defense is as good as Kakashi said it would be, said Sasuke with a smirk. But don't think that it'll be enough to keep you from me. Bold words, said Gaara. You couldn't even make it to this round without someone helping you. You're nothing but a joke. You're barely even worth putting up an effort or even killing. At that, Sasuke growled. I'll show you, he snarled. Once again he charged at Gaara while doing hand signs this time. The Tsunabunshin moved to intercept the attack, but Sasuke jumped into the air and yelled, Kase Handu. Moments later his foot was set aflame and he did heel drop right on the Tsunabunshin's head and destroyed it. Never underestimate the power of the Uchiha clan. That attack is similar to what Uzumaki uses, said Gaara while completely unaffected. However, there are differences. First, you had to use hand signs. Also there is the difference in power between them. Your jutsu doesn't hold a candle to his. Sasuke was about to respond when the sand underneath him began to rise. But that doesn't mean that I should let my guard down. Sand was about to wrap around Sasuke when he suddenly vanished. Gaara's eyes widened in surprise for a moment. He then sensed Sasuke was right behind him. Gaara turned his head just in time to see Sasuke's foot being blocked by his sand. Sasuke vanished again and reappeared in front of him. Once again he attacked and was blocked by the sand. However, this time he got a little closer. Over and over Sasuke kept vanishing and reappearing to get a hit on Gaara and kept on failing. Finally he yelled, Kase Handu, and landed a flaming kick into Gaara's stomach. This sent Gaara flying in the air until his sand caught him and placed him gently on the ground. For the most part he was fine, but some of his sand armor had turned into glass. Still doubt my power? Demanded Sasuke. Yes, replied Gaara. Had that been the Senpuken and it had landed a direct hit, I doubt that I would still be standing here. All you are is a cheap knockoff. Sand shot out from around Gaara and became like a whip that tried to attack the raven-haired ninja. Sasuke, who had just recently learned how to move at these speeds, wasn't used to the strain it put on his body and didn't have the stamina to use it for long periods of time. So right now he was a little winded. But he refused to lose here. As Gaara kept up the attack, he looked up for his sensei. He knew that soon the attack would begin and wanted to see how much longer it would be. All he needed was to look at his sensei and he would know. However, he saw someone else that made him stop looking. It was Haku. What is she doing here? The invasion will begin soon, he thought. Damn it, she doesn't know. Why do I care so much? I have never given anyone else so much as a second thought before, so why is she so different? As these thoughts continued, Gaara's assault seemed to slow down a bit. Finally, Sasuke was able to get a safe distance away. He then ran up the huge wall until he was halfway up. He's not even paying attention to me, thought Sasuke. Well, it's time for him to learn that it's a bad idea to ignore an Uchiha. With that, Sasuke began a series of hand signs and when he finished it was as if he was holding lightning in his hand. That jutsu, muttered Guy. I can't believe he taught the Uchiha that jutsu. What is it? Asked Tenten. Guy shook his head. It's Kakashi's one and only original jutsu, said Guy. It is very powerful and difficult to control properly. Too much for someone so inexperienced as Sasuke. That's rich coming from you, said Kakashi as he walked onto the scene. Didn't you teach Lee two very dangerous jutsus that could kill him? That's different, said Guy. I taught him those over time and made sure that he would know only to use them properly. But Sasuke is my student, said Kakashi. Back with Sasuke, he was now racing towards Gaara. As he did, he left a path of destruction in his wake caused by the electricity in his hand. He then shot out his hand, raised to kill. Chidori, he yelled as he neared Gaara. However, before the attack could connect with Gaara, who hadn't been paying any attention to Sasuke, leapt to the side and avoided the attack. Everyone could only stare in amazement. It was unheard of. Gaara ran to the wall and then up it. Soon he was with the spectators with one goal in mind. Several Chunins tried to stop him but they were pushed away by his sand. Then his sand went for the target, Haku, as if you hadn't guessed it. Hey, let her go, demanded Kiba as he glared at Gaara. However, Gaara didn't stay long as he and his captive made a hasty retreat. Sasuke followed him, fully intent on finishing their fight. With the other combatants, Naruto was gripping the railing. What the hell was going on? Why did that guy just grab his last living family member? He was about to take off when all around the arena feathers seemed to drop from the sky. Suddenly, all his anger vanished and he fell asleep. What's going on? Demanded Kodo as she watched everyone fall asleep. Suddenly Baki appeared in front of her. What's the meaning of this? Well, first off, why aren't you asleep? He asked. Kodo blinked. I'm a reporter, she said. I don't rest until the job is done. That wasn't what I began Baki, but his other two students appeared in front of him. He turned to them quickly. What's going on with Gaara? The invasion has begun and he's running away? We have no idea, stammered Kankuro. Well, find him and bring him back, ordered Baki. He's our secret weapon and the ace in this invasion. With that, his two students vanished. You heard it here live, folks, said Kodo into her mic. Suna is attacking Konoha during the Chunin exam. I can only imagine the bloodshed. Back with Naruto, he was just waking up thanks to Urahara. Shikamaru was next to him with a lump on his head. What happened to you? Asked Naruto. That's what he gets for faking being under a genjutsu, answered Urahara. Anyways, the village is under attack. Sasuke is following Gaara who has Haku Itoko, finished Naruto. With that he shot into the air and sped off after Gaara. Urahara sighed. He figured that this might happen. However, Naruto was their best shot at beating Gaara. After all, everyone else would be busy with the invasion. He was the lowest ranking person they could spare at the moment who had the power to take someone like that down. He then looked at Shikamaru and sighed again. Looks like you'll have to catch up and provide support, he said. Troublesome. Neji awoke to find himself strapped to an iron chair. He looked around to find himself in a bare room with no discernible means of escape. He also noted that he couldn't move his head or close his eyes due to some strange device. Every once in a while a light mist would be sprayed into his eyes to keep them hydrated. What was going on? The last thing he remembered was at the Chunin exam and then he blacked out. What could have happened? Suddenly a small area of the wall opened up in front of him and revealed a TV. It turned on and the face of a strange, creepy puppet dominated the screen. It wore a black suit, had black hair, and white skin. It looked at him with cruel eyes made of wood. Then, it spoke. Hello Hyuga Neji, it said. You don't know me, but I know you. You are a coward who believes that everything is predetermined, that nothing you do is of your own choosing. Well, today we are going to put that belief to the test. Just then, a circular hole appeared in the corner of the room. As soon as it was open, Neji heard the sounds of machinery. Soon Neji realized that whatever machine he was hearing, its purpose was to lift something into the room. And whatever that something was, all Neji could tell was that it was a glass tube. But that wasn't all, for what he soon saw nearly made him gasp in horror. Tenten was in the tube. Neji wanted to get out of the chair and get her out of there, but he couldn't due to the chair. Then, without warning, all the restraints on the chair released him automatically. Neji was about to get off of the cursed seat, but the puppet spoke once again. At the bottom of that container is a pump that will fill that container full of water in less than 5 seconds. However, as long as you remain on that chair, it will not activate. Her life is now in your hands. Now, enjoy the ride. Neji wondered what that meant as he stared at the now blank TV. Suddenly the wall in front of him began to open up like a sliding door. As it did, Neji realized what the evil puppet meant. He was going to do something to make Neji want to get out of his seat. Well, he wouldn't do it. Tenten was his teammate. There was no way he could let her die. Besides, how was torturing him or whatever supposed to prove that fate was wrong? Now the door was fully open and Neji could see what was in the room. Or rather who. It was Hinata. Rage and anger filled Neji as she stood there. He hated everything about her. The look of pity in her eyes as she looked at him. The way she spoke to him. The way she dressed. Everything about her pissed him off. She was so close and no one was around to stop him. He could kill her right now if he wanted to. And he did so much. He had lost too much because of her and the fate of the Branch family. Forgetting everything, Neji leapt out of his seat and lunged at the person who had once been his cousin. He brought back his hand and then did a palm thrust aimed at her heart. Hinata never moved, never reacted at all. The attack hit, and she still didn't move. Frustration filled Neji as he tried to figure out what went wrong. She should have gone down from an attack like that. She should be dead. That's when Neji remembered Tenten. He turned around only to see Tenten floating in the water-filled tube. Dread and fear filled Neji as he fell to his hands and knees. He wanted to throw up, but didn't. He looked up at Tenten's body and wondered why. Why hadn't he just stayed on the chair? She could have lived and he had just keep his cool. Do you understand now, Hyuga Niji? Asked Hinata in a voice that wasn't her own but that of the evil puppet. There is always a choice, there is always free will. People who talk of fate or destiny are those who want to excuse themselves from responsibility. That they are not the ones to blame for their actions or lack thereof. You could be trying to change the way your clan is, but instead you blame it on fate while you do nothing. And now someone else is dead because of the decision you have made. If you hadn't have put her in that position then she would still be alive, argued Niji. That may be true, but the one who killed her is still you. And now you will suffer until your own death. With that, Hinata's body melted away until it was nothing but a puddle. Niji wondered what his opponent could do to make this situation worse when the wall began to twist. They twisted and changed, and when they were done, Niji realized that he was in hell. He was in the It's a Small World boat ride in Disneyland. All around him the childlike puppets sang that horrible song and it never ended. Truly, this was hell. Niji woke up with a start. One moment he was having some sort of hellish nightmare and the next he is staring at a shinobi who he has never seen before. Well, that's his best guess. After all, not all shinobi were the same uniform. For that, he had Guy as the perfect example. Even so, this blonde-haired shinobi with a cane looked too weird. Well, said Urahara as he pulled out a fan and began to use it. Looks like even the pride of the Hyuga clan fell for that genjutsu. Not surprising seeing that they were aiming to incapacitate most of the shinobi and civilians. Or could it be that you fell for it because your Byakugan is underdeveloped? Niji growled. He didn't like the way this man was talking to him. Like he was some kind of useless rookie. The nerve. What's going on? He demanded. Urahara pointed his fan into the stadium. Niji turned his head to look and what he saw was a battlefield. Konoha shinobi were fighting both Oto and Suna shinobi. In some instances it was several versus one. I have to help. Don't worry about this, said Urahara. Someone like you would just get in the way. Niji glared at him, but he knew that this man was right. Most of the people out there were Chunin and above. There were even members of ANBU fighting. All he would be was a distraction. Besides, there's somewhere else you have to be. Right now Naruto is going off to get his cousin back from Gaara. You want me to back up a guy like him? Demanded Niji. Urahara looked down at him with a cold gaze. Who ever said anything about helping him? Asked Urahara. I just want you to watch and see what happens. I have a feeling that it will be life-changing. And with that, Urahara vanished. Let's go, cried Koto to her cameraman. The two of them were on something that looked like a golf cart with a camera on top. As soon as she saw Naruto leave, she figured that he had to be going after Gaara. And something deep down told her that this would be the fight of the century. Well, there was also that fortune cookie that told her to follow her heart. Sure, she was missing all the blood spilling back at the village, but Yuri was covering it. This is Yuri reporting from the Chunin exams. Please, someone help me, whined Yuri. She wasn't like Kyoto at all, who lived for violence and watching people beat each other to a bloody pulp. She had only taken this job so that she could find a rich man and marry him. Was that so wrong? Elsewhere, several Otonins were walking through the village. Their job at the moment was to seek out anyone who could pose as a threat and kill them. After this was done, they were to make sure there were enough survivors for Orochimaru's experiments. Suddenly, the wall of a building not too far ahead of them seemed to explode. The leader of the group cursed, thinking that one of their own men had just gotten careless. As the dust settled, a figure seemed to emerge. His long black hair stood up in several spikes with bells at the end of each spike. A thin scar went vertically over his other eye. He wore the standard Jonin uniform with a sword at his side. And on his shoulder was a small pink-haired girl. "See Kenchan," said Yuichiro. "I told you I knew where we were going. There they are, there they are." "Yeah, I guess you were right this time," said Kenpachi as he licked his lips. "But I doubt that these three bakas will even be able to scratch me." At that, the three Otonins raised their kunai. Well, it seems like they got some fight in them. Alright, I'll make this interesting and let you guys make the first move. I won't even dodge or block. Come at me. Sadly, the three Otonins took him up on his offer. They all threw their kunai right at his heart. True to his word, Kenpachi never moved and allowed them to hit him. However, they all seemed to bounce off his bare chest. Looks like I won't be getting a sweat from you guys. And with that, Kenpachi pulled out his sword. Kankuro sat on a tree branch, sweating bullets as he tried to decide what to do. He had never seen Gaara act this way before. Not only had he disobeyed orders by leaving the village, he had also taken that chef with the horrible cooking skills. The Gaara he knew would have loved to be in the best place to kill as many as he could. But something had changed in him since he arrived in this village. It had started when he had seen that Haku person. At first, Kankuro had thought it to be funny. However, looking back on it, he now realized how confused his brother really was. He knew nothing about loving others and what it was like to be in love. Perhaps he should have explained it to him and let him know what he was going through like a good brother should. Then there was that fight between Gaara and Sex. Well, it was more about what happened after it with that crazy blonde. He had no idea why, but even since that fight, Gaara had been in deep thought about him. Sensing that someone was coming, Kankuro quickly pulled out Karasu. He then moved his puppet several yards ahead of him and readied all of its poisons and hidden weapons. In the distance, he could see someone coming at him fast. It took a moment before Kankuro realized that it was Naruto. Before Kankuro could say anything, Naruto had pulled out the Raijin and slashed his puppet into 2 pieces before he could even blink. The blonde didn't even stop to finish him off, he just kept on going. Kankuro fell backwards, his back hitting the tree. It was then that he realized that he had pissed his pants. He just laid there as others passed him by. For example, Sasuke, who had originally been following them, seemed to be trying to catch up with Naruto. "He's a monster," was all the terrified puppeteer could say. Hurry up, Anko," called out Hinata as they passed a shaken Kankuro. "He has to have gone this way." "Of course he has," snapped Anko. "Anyways, you don't have to be here, you know. I know you're still shaken up after your match against Naruto-kun. Hell, I don't even know how you're able to move right now." "Infine," insisted Hinata. Anko gave her a disagreeing look, but Hinata ignored it. True, her whole body ached and she felt like crap. But knowing that Naruto was out here trying to get back his cousin made her force her body to move. She then looked at Anko. "Are you sure you don't want to get a shirt?" Anko looked down at her almost bare chest and shrugged. "I'm good," she replied. "Besides, this feels kind of nice to go around shirtless. I really have to start doing this more." Hinata groaned. Gaara-kun, why did you bring me here?" asked Haku. The two of them were somewhere deep in the forest. Exactly where, she had no clue in hell. All she knew was she was standing on a tree branch far from the village. I don't know," stammered Gaara as he clutched his head with both hands. He then let go of his head and grabbed Haku by her shoulders. "I don't know what is what anymore. Ever since the day I met you I haven't been myself. Whenever you're around I feel all nervous. The thought of you not liking me fills me with dread. The thought of you getting hurt makes me feel like my heart is getting pulled out. What is wrong with me?" Haku could only stare at the red head. Then, slowly, she lifted her arms and wrapped them around Gaara's head. His eyes widened, and then got even wider as she slowly pulled his head closer to her chest. "Gaara-kun, has anyone ever told you about love?" asked Haku. My uncle did," stammered Gaara as tears rolled down his face. "I thought he loved me. But it was all a trick. He hated me like everyone else." He suddenly pushed himself off of Haku. "Since then I have loved only myself. I won't love anyone else. And if what I am feeling now is love, then there is only one thing to do. Gaara-kun, began Haku." But she stopped as the sand in Gaara's gourd began to erupt from its container and merge with his skin. Soon, half of Gaara's face had changed into a creature with yellow eyes and wicked-looking fangs. Also, one of Gaara's arm's hand transformed as well, making it look wicked and deadly. "If you die then I'll only suffer for a little while," growled Gaara as he lunged at Haku. Haku held up her hands and prepared to create an ice wall to defend herself, but there was no need to. Naruto had flown into the scene and landed a punch on Gaara's transformed face, causing Gaara to be thrown to the side. However, Gaara grew a sand tail and used it to catch a tree branch so he wouldn't be sent to the forest floor. "This is Kodo coming to you live as the face of the century is about to be fought," said Kyoto, who had just arrived on the scene. Her cameraman quickly got into position and the two were ready to roll. As they did, Neji, Hinata, Anko, Temari, and Sasuke all arrived as well. It seems that Gaara had planned on killing Haku, Naruto-kun's cousin, out here in the wild like an animal. Luckily for her, Naruto has arrived just in the nick of time along with the rest of us. But now Gaara has become a creature found only in nightmares. Kazeshu vs Sabaku no Gaara, who will win? "She enjoys this too much," said Hinata. "Team," growled Naruto. "What's your problem?" Gaara didn't respond with words. He instead raised an arm at Naruto. Well, I guess he did respond with words because he yelled, "Suna Shuriken," and then dozens of sand balls came flying right out of his arm. Does that count? Anyways, Naruto responded by spinning his arm around while keeping his palm flat. Soon, an almost flat disc of wind appeared an inch off of Naruto's palm, taking the form of a shuriken. Naruto then brought his arm down and took a position that looked like he was about to throw a frisbee. He then threw this wind shuriken at Gaara while yelling, "Senpa Shuriken." The two attacks collided and cancelled each other out. Naruto Itoko, he's just like me, called out Haku. Nani? Asked a confused Naruto. Someone he cared about and thought that he cared about him betrayed him, said Haku. The same thing happened to me and my Tusan. But I found Zabuza-sama and moved on. But Garakuen wasn't able to find someone like that. Great, so he's like this because of his crappy childhood, thought Naruto. As the smoke cleared from the attack, Naruto saw that Gaara was almost completely transformed. Only his legs seemed to be still human while the rest of him looked like some kind of beast. Like a biju. I bet that's why he was alone and had people try to kill him. Is that what could have been me? And what's with this Garakuen stuff? I won't let you end my existence, roared Gaara. He grabbed 2 trees and began to push his body backwards. He then used them to slingshot himself over to Naruto, who flew into the air to avoid the attack. But Gaara's tail was able to reach him. It grabbed him by the leg and flung him to the ground. Gaara looked down and saw Naruto lying there in a crater. You think you can stop me? My mother cursed me from birth. She knew this was my fate since before I was born. I am nothing but a self-loving monster, just like she wanted. Just then, Naruto poofed into a cloud of smoke and the only thing that was in the crater now was a log. Gaara turned to look for Naruto only to see him flying right at him with his newest jutsu. Rasengan, yelled Naruto as he shoved the blue sphere into Gaara's chest. The effect was immediate and Gaara was thrown spinning to the ground. When he landed he created a much larger crater. Gaara, said Naruto as he looked down at the fallen shinobi. I know what it's like to have something trusted on you from birth. I know what it's like to be hated for something you never chose to do. I'm just like you, in more ways than you know. But when you stopped trying, that's when you gave up any chance of finding happiness. Shut up, wheezed Gaara. He slowly began to stand and as he did that he gave thanks to his sand for taking much of the blow. He probably had a couple broken ribs and some other injuries, but he was alive. If he hadn't made his sand denser than it had been before that attack of his, he would be dead. You understand nothing. You're not alone. You are weak. With that, Gaara seemed to explode into the sky. Within seconds, Gaara had become a huge tanuki. Oh my kami, cried Kodo. Does anyone realize what this means? Gaara is a Jinchuriki, a container for a biju sealed within him. Then, to everyone's surprise, Naruto flew up and began to hover in front of Gaara, who was now more like a pimple on the giant. And it seems like Naruto-kun is going to be fighting that monster. I can only imagine the blood that will be spilled. Now entertain me Uzumaki, said Gaara. Tanuki Neiri no Jutsu. As soon as he did that, Gaara fell asleep and the horror that was Shikaku was released. I'm free, cried the demon. I'm free at last, thank Kami I'm free at last. Now I can do all the things I've waited to like peek at the girls in the hot spring. At that, everyone face faulted. Well, everyone but Naruto who just had an eye twitch. Now to take care of this pesky little. Shikaku stopped in mid-sentence as he stared at Naruto who just floated there. His eyes widened as he saw the resemblance on the man who had once kicked his large ass so many centuries ago. Why you? Can't be you, can't be. Long dead, long dead. Go away. Futon, Renkuden. Naruto could feel the chakra in that attack long before it hit him. Acting on pure instinct, Naruto began to spin his right arm around and created a twister around his fist. He yelled Senpuken as he swung his fist at the air bullet and hoped for the best. What happened next was something no one had ever seen before. The two attacks seemed to fight for dominance while in midair, one trying to defeat the other. On the ground, Sasuke watched with his Sharingan activate. This is impossible, he thought. I can see the color of their chakra and it's like Naruto's is trying to suck in the Biju's chakra into the Senpuken. Elsewhere, unknown to Naruto, something was going on with two people who would play an important role in the young blonde's life. With Tsunade, the stone around her neck began to glow. It was the same with Madara, whose stone was tied around his wrist. And elsewhere, the third and final stone glowed as well. But only Madara knew that, even if he still hadn't found it yet. Whatever the intent of Naruto's attack was meant to do, it failed as the two attacks seemed to explode. Everyone on the ground hung on to whatever they could for dear life. Meanwhile, the two locked in battle were thrown back. Shikaku fell back a ways and landed on his ass while Naruto had been shot through 3 trees before landing on the ground. Ha ha ha, laughed Shikaku. You try to trick me. Failed you did, failed. Damn it, growled Naruto. He knew that the fox was slowly fixing his body, but it was hard to move right now. It took everything Naruto had just to get on his feet. Looks like I'll need some help with this fight. With that, he bit his thumb and began to make a few hand signs before yelling, Kuchios no Jutsu. Moments later there was a huge cloud of smoke that covered the forest and when it vanished Naruto was standing on the head of a giant salamander. Where am I? Demanded the large salamander. Been a while, hasn't it, Ryuza, said Naruto. Well, if it isn't Naruto-kun, said the old salamander in the same way a grandfather talks to a grandson. It's been a while, hasn't it? So, why have you summoned me? It was then that Ryuza saw Shikaku. Well, look at what we have here. If it isn't Shikaku. Been a while since I faced the likes of his kind before. This could get interesting. Shikaku responded by yelling, Futon, Renkuden, at them, which Ryuza dodged with just a bit of trouble. After all, he wasn't the same young salamander he had been back in the day. This is unbelievable, cried Kodo. It seems that Naruto can summon, and not just anything but salamanders, just like Hanzo-sama. Could we be looking at the birth of a new legend in the making? Naruto, let's do this old school style, said Ryuza. Naruto grinned as he placed both of his palms on the boss salamander's head. He then began to push his wind chakra into him as Ryuza began to use his best fire jutsu. When it was ready, they both yelled, Katan, Sanshou Inferno no Jutsu. The high-powered flames hit Shikaku, who yelled out in pain. When the flames died, everyone was shocked to see that from the neck down was made of glass. Shikaku continued to scream as his head began to slide off the body, and as it did, Naruto flew off Ryuza's head. The blonde made a dash in the air for Gaara and punched him in the face. Gaara woke up and immediately realized what was going on. Gaara then managed to twist his body so that he would land on a tree branch. Naruto did so as well, but with less grace. Both eyed each other and saw that they were both running on empty. Both were panting, had plenty of blood stains, and had half-closed eyes. Neither one refused to give up. How did you know hitting me would release me from that jutsu? Asked Gaara. I didn't, replied Naruto, which surprised Gaara. I just wanted to get you back for taking my cousin. I see, said Gaara. Look, we both are almost out of chakra, said Naruto. Let's finish this. With that, both of them leapt off their branches as they slung their fists at the other. Gaara hit Naruto first, but his physical strength was not enough to stop Naruto's fist. Naruto's fist impacted Gaara's face and the Sunanin was sent flying to the ground faster than Naruto could fall. Once they were on the ground, Gaara just laid there staring at the sky. Slowly, he turned his head to look at where Naruto was, only to see Naruto was slowly dragging his way to Gaara with just his chin. Why? What makes him keep going? I won't cease to exist. I won't. But even as he thought that, Naruto still continued to make his way over to Gaara. He closed his eyes and began to remember the past. People calling him a monster, telling him to die. He then opened his eyes and saw that Naruto was slowly gaining speed and beginning to lift himself up. Little did they know that Kodo had been the first to find them and was having the last moments of this battle broadcasted. No, cried a scared Gaara. Stay away from me. It's painful, isn't? Asked Naruto to a confused Gaara. That feeling of being alone, I remember it. Being all alone from the start, with no one to help you. I was there, in that dark and lonely place until they came along. My friends. My family. They saved me from that place. And because of that, they mean more to me than anything else. That's why I have to stop you, before you hunt any of them. But why? Asked Gaara. Because they are precious to me, said Naruto. Was that it? Thought Gaara. Then, Gaara remembered something that Naruto had told him. About how much they were alike. Could it be that he holds a Biju like me? Is that what separates us? I gave up while he refused to. He found what I wanted because he refused to give in, just like now. Stop it, Naruto Itoko, cried out Haku as she appeared on the scene. It's over, you won. Hey, only I'm allowed to call a match, yelled Kodo from her hiding spot from behind the bushes. This caused everyone to glare at her. Then Temari and Kankuro appeared on the scene in between Gaara and Naruto. Then Anko and Hinata appeared as well next to Naruto. Both sides looked ready to fight. Temari, Kankuro, that's enough, said Gaara. His siblings turned around and looked at him. I give up. I never thought I'd live to see this, thought Kankuro. All right. With that, both he and Temari picked up Gaara and made their departure. As they made their way out of the forest, Gaara noticed a leaf sticking out of a pile of sand. It was an odd thing for him to notice, but it reminded him of Naruto. The blonde's words still echoed in his head and made him realize what he had to do now. Temari, Kankuro, I'm sorry, he said. Both Suna siblings were shocked to say the least. Gaara had never said that to them. Don't worry about it, Gaara, said Kankuro. Oh, and Kankuro, said Gaara. Your pants are all wet. The jaws on both siblings dropped when they heard this. Then both Temari and Gaara began to laugh and Kankuro looked embarrassed as hell. And back with Naruto? I declare Uzumaki Naruto the winner of this match, said Kodo as she picked up the unconscious blonde. And his prize is to come home with me. Let go of Naruto-kun, yelled both Anko and Hinata. Why? Asked Kyoto. It's not like he's your boyfriend. Yes he is, said Anko with a smirk. We've even kissed. Lair, yelled Hinata. Naruto-kun and I kissed. Now I'm taking him back home and treating his wounds. Hinata made a dash over to Kyoto and took hold of Naruto. I'm telling you I kissed him, yelled Anko. She reached out and tried to take Naruto from Hinata, but Hinata jumped back to avoid her. Well, so did I, said Hinata. Then, a thought came across her mind. Wait a minute. Did we both kiss Naruto-kun? Chapter 27. Hanzo walked towards the council chamber with a quickened pace. There were so many things to do due to the war that he was busy day and night. He had strategies to plan, troops to inspect, and many other things involved with fighting a war. But was he doing that? No. The council had called him from the front lines, again. In Hanzo's mind they were useless. Just a bunch of old fools who cared more about the money in their pocket than the lives of their shinobi. They were the greatest evil on this planet, politicians. He had an idea on why they wanted to see him. Only a few days ago he had agreed to an alliance with a young group that wanted peace. Personally, peace didn't mean all that much to him. As long as there is conflict, shinobi will be needed. And what will happen to all the shinobi once all the conflict is gone? What will they do? But if they could help end this war so they could start rebuilding sooner, then he said, why not get the countries to stop fighting for a while? Hanzo then came to the great iron doors of the council's chambers and opened them with a single push. The inside was lit with a few flickering candles. But even if there had been no light at all, he could have easily seen that there were 7 people in the room. 6 council members and 1 other. And that other person caused Hanzo's eyes to narrow. What the hell is he doing here? Demanded Hanzo as he pointed at Danzo. I see you haven't changed, Hanzo-sama, said Danzo. No manners at all. Hanzo just glared at the one-eyed shinobi. He hated Danzo and everything he stood for. Hanzo believed in fighting with all one's heart and soul, while Danzo sought to create a soulless army. Hanzo, said one of the councilmen. We have heard of the illegal alliance that you have made with Yahiko and his group. They are a threat to our way of life and they have the potential to rip this country in half. So what are you going to do? Demanded Hanzo as he glanced at Danzo. Are you going to punish me and have one of your little puppets taking my position? Hanzo tightened his grip and readied himself. The moment they made a move he would attack with everything he had. He remembered what it was like before he became the head of the shinobi. Back then their village was seen as a disgrace, a group of shinobi whose leader didn't do anything without the council say so. But when Hanzo came to power things changed. Their shinobi got real educations, real equipment, and he made sure that they wouldn't be used as pawns to scum like them. No, said another councilman. You are to help out our real new ally, Danzo and his root forces. Nani? We have made an alliance with Danzo in order to strengthen our position in the shinobi world, said another councilman. They will help you eliminate this group, assist us with the war. In return we will help him become the next Hokage. Hanzo glared at them all and released a massive amount of chakra and killing intent. It was so powerful that a couple of the council members were blown backwards. Danzo began to sweat, yet he calmly walked over to Hanzo with a slight smirk. When he was close enough, Danzo leaned over and whispered in Hanzo's ear. Tell me, how is your family? In an instant Hanzo felt his world go cold. His eyes rested on Danzo as a cold sweat appeared on his body. He knew what Danzo was capable of, he should have expected something like this. If only he had known Danzo would be here, then maybe? You bastard, was all Hanzo could say. Danzo said nothing for a while as he kept walking out the door. Now, let's talk about how we are going to deal with the peaceful little group, he said. Gritting his teeth, Hanzo knew that however it went he would be the fall guy. He would be seen as the betrayer. But if it meant that his family would be safe, then so be it. Little did he know that what would happen in the days that would follow would give birth to pain. It had been only a handful of days since that attack on the village and almost everything was back to normal. Buildings were still being repaired, but life went on inside the village. Most of the people went about their daily duties while others worked to repair the village. However, there were some things that couldn't be repaired. One was the death of the Hokage. Almost everyone in the village mourned his death in their own way. Most left flowers on his casket and grave. Others drank to his memory. Jiraiya himself went to the old training grounds and remembered the days when he had just been a genin. Speaking of the old pervert, he was currently working on his latest novel on a roof when 2 figures appeared behind him. He turned around and gave the 2 a small smile. How's it going, Jiraiya-sama, said Urahara. Jiraiya nodded and turned back to his work. I know why you 2 are here, he said. Tell those old fossils that I won't become the next Hokage. But isn't what Sarutobi-sama wanted, asked Yoruichi. I might have been what he wanted, but not me, said Jiraiya with a sigh. I'm too free-spirited for something like that. Plus it would take me away from my current work. I can't wait, said Urahara with a perverted look on his face. Well, someone has to take the job soon, said Yoruchi. Sooner or later Danzo will make a pass for the title of Hokage. Then he'll have Naruto-kun, Anko-chan, and Hinata-chan. So he's after the disowned Hyuga as well, said Jiraiya as he made a note of a hot girl he saw. Makes sense, he's been trying to get a Hyuga into his root group since it was founded. Problem was that Hayashi, for all his faults, has kept a close eye on the clan, making sure that they remained loyal to the clan and the village. For all we know, he might have had a hand in Hinata's kidnapping as some kind of under-the-table deal. I'm just glad that there was someone like you out there for here. He paused for a moment and then turned around and looked at Urahara. And you for Naruto? Nice work, by the way. Someone had to teach him the basics, said Urahara as he took out a lollipop and began to lick it. Kakashi sure has been absent when it came to Naruto. Did he hate his sensei that much? No, said Jiraiya as he got up. He hated the boy's mother that much. Yoruchi's eyes widened and Urahara dropped his candy. He hated Kushina? Was that even possible? Don't worry about the title of Hokage. I know that there is one other who has the power and support to become Hokage. And all I need is one Gaki to get her. Sasuke walked down the streets of the village with a scowl on his face. Kakashi had summoned him for some reason, but at the moment he didn't care. All around him he heard people talking about the Chunin exam. How Naruto defeated 2 people back to back and then took on Gaara. It made him sick to hear people talking about that dope like that. As Sasuke walked down the street he passed by a bookstore with a magazine rack. As he was passing by, his eyes gazed at the covers until he saw one that made him stop in a cold sweat. On the cover of Teen Shinobi magazine was a picture of Naruto with his Senpuken activated. Forgetting to meet with Kakashi, Sasuke quickly bought the magazine and went right to the article which had been about the Chunin exams. Every year the hidden villages allow several of their students to become genins, it read. And this year, in Konohagakure, several rookies were allowed to partake in the biannual Chunin exam. At the time it seemed like their senseis had made a mistake to allow such a group to attend this difficult and deadly exam. However, all doubts were eliminated as the 3 newest teams made into the semi-finals. Oddly enough, their most skilled shinobi was the one who was looked down upon the most. Uzumaki Naruto, age 13, had been reported to be a less than average shinobi in terms of skill. Yet during the exam he showed above average skill, winning matches against some of the contestants that had been reported to have much more experience or simply more skill. The article continued with a list of Naruto's fights in great detail, his jutsus, and even how he fought Gaara. It then began to cover other things about Naruto that weren't about the Chunin exams at all. For example, there was a small part about Haku. Then there was personal information about Naruto like his favorite foods, things he liked to do in his free time, and possible love interests. As Sasuke read, his grip on the paper tightened. His was just unfair. Why was the dope getting all this recognition while he, a member of the Uchiha clan, was getting nothing? And when did Naruto learn a jutsu created by the Yondaime? Sasuke skipped to the end and what he read, he didn't like. Several questions arise as to why such information was kept from the media about this genin. First of all, why did his sensei say that Uzumaki is the weakest member of the team? Why did the elders claim that their most promising genin was Uchiha Sasuke, who last in the semifinals and was only allowed to be in the finals by their grace? When did Hanzo-sama's interest in the Uzumaki begin? So far, the only answer given by the elders has been silence. Sasuke couldn't take it anymore. He began to run with the magazine in his hand, but not to Kakashi. He needed answers, real ones, and not just what Kakashi wanted to tell him. He needed to know more about Naruto and his clan so he could figure out how to defeat him. There had to be something special about him that allowed him to use the wind as well as he did, some clan-based skill. And the best place for him to find any answers was the library. It took Sasuke about 10 minutes to get there. He entered the building and made his way down to the archives which were in the basement. It held all sorts of newspaper clipping going back at least 100 years. Also, there were many old books that had been collected over the years. Many of them were about various clans all over the world. Others were about legends or wars. And perhaps there were a few on the theories behind some forbidden jutsus. There was no better place to learn about Naruto. Sasuke-kun, came a shrill cry behind Sasuke. He turned around and saw Sakura and sweat dropped. Time here had not been good on her. She had gained at least 10 pounds, her skin had become a bit whiter, and she had some acne. You came to see me? Yeah, lied Sasuke, and he looked away for a moment as hearts appeared around Sakura. Sakura, I need your help. I'll do anything for you Sasuke-kun, she replied. Great, he replied. He then paused for a moment and took a deep breath. I saw something very odd. I was wondering if it was possible for a jutsu to absorb chakra. Well, there are shinobi out there that have the ability to absorb chakra, said Sakura. For example, the type of insect the shino uses which eats chakra. There are also shinobi who can absorb chakra from either parts of their body or their whole body. In their cases, their chakra is somewhat special which allows them to bond with other people's chakra and then separate it from either their bodies or their jutsus. There are also jutsus out there that allow shinobis to do this for a short amount of time. I see, said Sasuke. But have you ever heard of someone who could drain chakra from something like a demon? Sakura brought her hand to her chin and began to think about it for a while. Well, she began. If you were talking about a Biju, then there is a record of one person with that power. Senju Hashirama, the Shodai Hokage, did have a power similar to that. However, he was only able to suppress their chakra. Ah, Sasuke-kun, why are you asking me these questions? When I saw the Dobe fight Gaara, he used his Senpuken against one of that thing's jutsus. While my Sharingan was activated, I was able to see the color of their chakras. And for a moment it appeared that the Senpuken was taking in some of Shikaku's chakra and then uses it against him. However, it seemed to fail for some reason. Well, of course it did, said Sakura. Naruto Baka was using it after all. I bet if you knew how to do the Senpuken then it would have worked. A small smile appeared on Sasuke's face as he nodded. He was an Uchiha after all. Sakura, I need you to help me research, he said. Naruto was panting hard as he pressed his body against the side of a building in an alley. His stomach growled, but he couldn't let that bother him now. There was a chance that either Anko or Hinata could be in the area. Since he had escaped from the hospital, he had been spending most of his time in the sky in order to avoid the two girls. Both seemed to think that he was timing them. Was it his fault that they kissed him on the same day? Suddenly a hand appeared on his shoulder and Naruto flew up into the sky. Or rather he tried to, but the hand kept him grounded. Slowly, Naruto turned his head and saw that the one holding him to the earth was Jiraiya. Hey there Gaki, he said with a grin. I need you for a mission. It's to get... I don't care, cried Naruto as he floated up so he was face to face with the pervert. I'll go. The next day, Naruto and Jiraiya were in a small village. However, when they got there they could tell something was wrong. The townspeople seemed to drag their feet and were contently looking behind them as if there were some kind of threat always lurking behind them. There was also an aura of depression that seemed to permeate the air itself. Something is wrong, said Jiraiya. Where are all the pretty girls? Naruto face faulted. That monster took them, said a nearby old man wearing a hooded robe. And you are? Asked Jiraiya. I am, or at least was, this town's mayor until he came, said the mayor. It was several days ago when an evil Nin came here. He had such a powerful reputation that we had to give him whatever he wanted. He took our money, our women, our food, and our Ika. What an evil man, said Jiraiya as tears were flowing from his eyes like waterfalls. How dare anyone steal another man's porn? Who is he? The Kaze Shu, declared the mayor with a glint in his eye. Naruto's jaw dropped and his eyes turned into dish plates. Then, he began to laugh. It wasn't a happy laugh, but an insane one. Both Jiraiya and the mayor took a step back from Naruto as his killer intent began to grow. All right then, said a pissed-off Naruto. Take me to your Kaze Shu. Meanwhile, outside of the mayor's office as a familiar figure. He stood there dressed in black with black hair and one eyes. On his back was a folded weapon that, when it was extended it was like a double-ended spear or pole arm. His right arm had been replaced by a bulky mechanical one. It's about time I made my return, said Sex with a grin. He then lifted his mechanical arm into the air and made a fist. It has been a long road to recovery but now I can finally have my rematch against Uzumaki. And then I'll begin my training to defeat Hanzo-sama. With nothing less to say, Sex ran right for the door and destroyed it with a single punch. He raced inside and then, he face-faulted. The person claiming to be the Kaze Shu was surrounded by every pretty girl from the ages 16 to 35. Each girl was dressed in bunny outfits and high heels. The Kaze Shu had long flowing blonde hair, dark blue eyes, and a total of 4 whisker marks that looked a little too thick. He was dressed in the finest silk robes with a light blue sash and had a long sword next to him. Who are you? He demanded in a silky smooth voice. That's my line, yelled Sex as he pointed at the man in front of him. Where the hell is Uzumaki? I am Uzumaki Naruto, said the man as he stood up, revealing that he was at least 6 feet tall. Also known far and wide as the Kaze Shu. Sex just sighed, turned around, and began to walk away while shaking his head in disgust. I can't believe that I came here, he muttered. I knew I should have gone to Konohagakure instead of listening to that rumor. Man, what was I thinking? Suddenly the ground next to him was slashed by some invisible force. Sex quickly turned around and saw that the fake Kaze Shu had drawn his sword. He stood there, holding it with both arms and his eyes locked on Sex. "How dare you turn your back on me?" he demanded. "It looks like I'll have to use Raijin to teach you a lesson." He then made a slashing motion at Sex. A half-second later, Sex was cut in half. Well, until he went puff and was replaced by a log. "Nanny? Is that the best you got?" demanded Sex's voice. The fake turned his attention to the ceiling and there he was, standing upside down. Sex then pointed an anger finger at the fake. "Let's get something straight. You aren't the real deal. The Kazeshu the I fought has a blade of lightning and uses the wind for close-range combat. He's also a spiky-haired midget. Cammy, didn't you see him on television during the Chunin exam?" "Ah, excuse me," said one of the girls. "We don't get cable in this area." "Forget that," said another girl. "Are you telling me that we have been afraid of a fake for the last several weeks?" Sex nodded until the fake began to laugh. "It is you who fought a fake," said the fake. "There is only one person who Sanchuo no Hanzo gave the title of Kazeshu to and that is me. Once I kill you I will silence that lying tongue of yours." With that the fake slashed at Sex once again and sent what looked like a large blade-shaped burst of wind at Sex, who simply released his chakra to avoid it. But the fake didn't stop there. He had already sent another wind slash at the area where Sex would land. Sex smirked as he realized this and pulled out his blade and began to spin it. He then yelled, "Kakijitan," as flames burst out from the blades. Sex then adjusted his fall so that his weapon would reach the ground, and the oncoming attack, first. And while wind is best suited for cutting, it was still weak against fire. The two attacks connected and the flying wind blade burst into flames as the titan blade pierced the floor with Sex held onto it upside down. Sex quickly got his feet back onto the ground and was about to attack when they both heard someone yell, "Senpuken," from outside. Then they both heard the sound of a fist and a yelp of pain. "What was that for Ero Sennin?" yelled Naruto's voice. "Think Gaki," yelled an older voice that Sex didn't know. "You might hurt all the pretty women in there." "I just wanted to make a cool entrance," muttered Naruto. Moments later the two of them had walked through the entrance and stood facing the fake. Naruto, it seemed, was still sulking a bit as he had his arms crossed and was looking away from Jiraiya. "It seems that more fools dare to challenge the power of the Kazeshu," declared the fake as he readied his sword. Naruto looked over at him and then at Sex. Naruto rushed over to the aim and began to stare at his new arm. "Wow," cried Naruto as his eye lit up. "That's so cool." "Hey focus," barked Sex. He then turned to look at Jiraiya, who was still standing at the door. "Hey, who's the old guy?" "You mean Ero Sennin?" asked Naruto. "Don't call me that," yelled Jiraiya. "I am Jiraiya of the Sannin." Sex nodded and turned back to the standoff. He was about to attack when Naruto took several steps forward. Sex eyed him for a moment and then relaxed a bit. He understood what Naruto wanted. This was about his honor and name. He had to finish this fight himself. "So you're the baka who has been using my name," said Naruto as he made a cross-shaped seal. "Now it's time to pay." Gakebunshi no Jutsu. 4 more Narutos appeared and then all 5 of them took out their Raijins and activated them. The fake began to tremble and sweat as all 5 of them flew towards him. "It's as if they are flying at me instead of leaping through the air," thought the fake. Could he be the real one? With a scream, the fake launched the same wind attack as he had been using against Sex. However, all of the Narutos dodged it with ease. He tried to attack again but it was too late. 4 of the Narutos parried with sword with their own. Now, while his sword did have wind churka surging through it, it was still no match for 4 Raijins. Not only was his sword destroyed but he also received a nice electric shock. And as he fell to the floor the clones vanished. Behind him was the real Naruto with his Raijin pointed at his back. "Alright now," said Naruto. "I think it's time that you told everyone here the truth." The fake said nothing but he did smirk, which confused Naruto. Then something fell out of his sleeve. Naruto looked down and realized it to be a flash tag. Moments later the room was bathed in blinding white light. When it was over and everyone could see again, the fake had vanished. Where the hell did he go? "Never mind that now, Naruto," said Jiraiya. "We don't have time to go on a manhunt. Trust me, people like that usually get what they deserve." Jiraiya then began to blush and had a perverted grin on his face. He walked past Sex and Naruto and went straight to the girls. "Hello ladies. Now who wants a date with the great Jiraiya?" Before they could answer or call him a pervert, both Naruto and Sex kicked him upside the head. Meanwhile, the fake Naruto was running out of the village at top speed. He had no idea that the real Uzumaki Naruto would show up. His plan had been so perfect too. He had found this village that had heard rumors about him and had a general idea of what he looked like. All he had to do was add some whisker marks and use a couple of wind jutsus and the people believed that he was the real deal. For the last several weeks he ruled that village with an iron fist and had everything he ever wanted. Until they showed up. As he raced down the road, his thoughts were only on figuring out his next target. Sadly, because of this, the fake ran into someone and was knocked to the ground. "Watch where you're going," said the man he bumped into. "Watch yourself," said the fake who had not bothered to look up. "You're messing with Uzumaki Naruto, the Kaze Shu." The man began to laugh and the fake finally looked up. It was Kisame. And next to him was Itachi. "See Itachi," said Kisame as he looked over at Itachi. "I knew following that rumor was a good idea." Itachi squinted at the fake and then sighed. "Is it really him?" he asked aloud. "No matter. We'll confirm it later. And if it's not him, then we'll just have to go to Konohagakure." The last thing the fake was Itachi's Sharingan before the whole world went dark. Konohamaru, yelled Udon as he raced towards Konohamaru and Moegi. "What's up, Udon?" asked Konohamaru. "You've been looking for the boss, right?" asked Udon as he stopped to catch his breath. "Hi," cried Konohamaru. "I need to tell him what me and Hanabi-chan found." "So where is he?" "Yes, where is Naruto-kun?" came a somewhat sweet voice behind Konohamaru and Moegi. The two turned around and Udon began to back away. It was Anko and Hinata. Chapter 28. Tsunade stood before her old sensei in his office. The weather outside was nice despite the current situation. The war had been going on for years and with no sign that it would let up soon. Even Jiraiya had come back to the village to help out and try some of the genin. And yet, gazing out the window of this office, everything seemed right with the world. "Tsunade," said Sarutobi as he scanned a document. "I have called you here for an important mission." "No, I guess mission is the wrong term for this task." Tsunade blinked, clearly curious as to what he was getting at. "Whatever it is, sensei, I can handle it," she said proudly. After all, she was related to the past two Hokages. Whatever the village needed done, she would do it, for she believed in what their village stood for. "That's good," said Sarutobi as he set down the papers and leaned back in his chair. "The matter has to do with the Uzumaki clan. Have you heard of them?" "Only in passing and on some mission reports," said Tsunade. "They are the founding clan in Uzugakure and are said to be powerful wind users. They have no strict fighting style and seem to prefer the element of surprise in battle. Their methods are random at best and are very loud." Tsunade paused for a moment. "Sensei, why are you asking me about them? Don't tell me that they—" "Relax," said Sarutobi as he waved her off. "No, they haven't allied themselves with our enemies. I asked you what you knew about them because your grandfather seemed to know them very well. In fact, he once told me that the Senju clan and the Uzumaki clan have known each other since their founding, dating back well over 1,000 years ago. Now it seems that they are no more." "What happened, sensei?" asked Tsunade nervously. "Kyuubi attacked them," said the Hokage simply. Tsunade's eyes widened in fear and horror at that sound of that name. The most powerful creature ever to walk the earth had attacked them and most likely left no survivors. Kyuubi was like a natural disaster that could alter nature just by whipping one of its 9 tails. How could anyone survive such an attack? "There were survivors," continued the Hokage. "And one of the last of the Uzumaki line has come here and asked to become a part of the village. I would like it if you would watch over her for the time being." "Now wait just a moment," said Tsunade, but she got no further. A knock on the door interrupted her protests and then it opened. Tsunade turned around to see a red-haired girl wearing an orange and black jumpsuit with the sleeves missing. She seemed to be a little chubby, but not overly fat. Her head was down and she seemed to be carrying a present wrapped up in a bright red bow. "A gift for my honored sensei," she said as she kept her head down. Tsunade felt a twinge of guilt. She was about to reject this poor girl who had lost everything to a monster. No telling how many brothers or sisters she once had. Deep down, Tsunade knew if anything ever happened to her own brother she would fall apart. "Thank you," said Tsunade as she took the surprising light gift from her. She opened the gift, looked inside, and saw a tag? A moment later the tag went poof and a cream pie flew into Tsunade's face. And before she could say anything, Kushina had fallen over laughing. "Oh man, I didn't know how much longer I could have lasted with the good girl act," she laughed while pointing at Tsunade. "The look on your face was just priceless." Kushina looked up and saw that Tsunade's face was not only covered with cream but tick marks as well. In addition, her face was burning red with rage. "Time to Daigaki," screamed Tsunade as she focused all her chakra into her fist. And then, Tsunade awoke. Her opens opened and stared at the wall to her side while her head continued to lie on the table. She was in a bar next to a casino. After having won a lot of money on the Chunin exams, Shizun had taken the winnings and was able to get them squared off with most of her loan sharks. Personally, Tsunade wanted to pay them off all at once, but her assistant put her foot down. So here they were, trying to gamble the last of the money that they needed. That was until Orochimaru had showed up. He shows up, destroys a castle to get her attention, and then asks her to heal his arms. The nerve of him. But what struck Tsunade was what he was willing to pay her. If Tsunade healed him, then he would revive both her dead brother and lover. Now she was caught between a rock and a hard place: heal a monster for personal gain or let the one chance to get back those she lost slip away forever. So, while she was using the time he had given her to decide, she decided to do what most people do in this situation: get drunk. "Dreaming on me, Heim?" asked a familiar and lecherous voice that caused Tsunade to sit straight up. Sure enough, Jiraiya was sitting right in front of her with his famous grin on his face. "Maybe that's why I awoke with a start," said Tsunade as she looked away. "Nightmares do that to a person." "Same as always," said Jiraiya as he took a sip on his drink. "Just get on with it," said Tsunade with a little aggression. "Why did you track me down?" "It isn't really tracking when it only takes a week to find a person like you," said Jiraiya. "I heard all about your recent winnings and I know your habits better than anyone else. So finding you was a piece of cake. But you're right, I should just get to the point." Jiraiya then stared at her, all humor gone. "We need you to become Hokage." "No," said Tsunade. "I swore I'd never go back to that place again. And you above all people should know the reason why I can't become Hokage. Because it was..." Tsunade broke off as she remembered those two closest to her heart. Those who had died before their dream could come true. She then looked back at Jiraiya. "How could you even think to ask me something like that?" Jiraiya had planned to tell her that he was simply the worst choice. Maybe joke about it and claim that he might have taken the job if the old fossils known to everyone else as the Hokage's advisors were gone. But, in all seriousness, he had to let her know the truth. He was related to the first two Hokages and was a student of the Sandaime. She had great people and she cared deeply about others. If she didn't, she would never have left the village and began this path of self-destruction thinking that she was to blame for their deaths. He would also tell her about the benefits of the job, like starting up that medical program she wanted. But what happened next stopped him. "Don't eat all the food, you blonde baka," roared a voice from behind the pervert. Tsunade looked at the table in front of her to find the person who was being so loud. The first two had their backs facing her. One was Shizune, like she could ever mistake anyone else for her. The other one was much younger with black hair as well. Figuring it was him that was making all the noise, Tsunade prepared to yell at him when she caught sight of the third person at the table. Her eyes widened and she gulped loudly. He looked almost like Nawaki and Minato. She had seen him on TV, but she'd never think that she'd meet him in real life. "Is that your game plan?" demanded Tsunade. "By bringing him along?" The answer is still no. "Hey lady, keep it down," said Sex as he looked behind him. He looked Tsunade over once and then sighed. "So this is the famous Tsunade that I have heard about. An old hag hiding behind a genjutsu?" "Care to say that again?" demanded Tsunade as tick marks appeared over her face. "She should really act her age," commented Naruto as he took a bite of his food. "She should be in a rocking chair sipping tea or something." Shizune gulped and tried to signal the two boys to shut their mouths unless they want to see what she was like pissed off. And she really didn't want to pay for the damages Tsunade would cause to the bar. "At least her genjutsu is nice to look at," commented Sex as he turned to face Naruto again. "I bet underneath that illusion she's really wrinkly and flat-chested." Lightning flashed in the bar and a very dark aura surrounded Tsunade. It was so dark the even Kyuubi began to whimper like a frightened puppy. The next thing that the two boys knew was that they were blown through the wall of the bar. Tsunade then walked through the hole she had made in the wall when she threw the two of them and picked them up by the collar of their shirts. "You two have some nerve to insult me," she said with fire in her eyes. "Do you have any idea who I am?" "Just a Bachan who used to be someone people could look up to," said Naruto. "But I don't see someone who was one of the Sannin, all I see is a drunk." Tsunade glared at him and dropped Sex. Either the blonde had guts, a death wish, or as a complete baka she had no clue. Naruto then continued to say what was on his mind. "I don't even think you deserve to be Hokage." "That's good because I don't want that job," snarled Tsunade. "It's a job for fools who die soon after." Naruto's eyes suddenly hardened and he grabbed Tsunade by her wrist. He tightened his grip and soon became lighter. It didn't take long for Tsunade to realize he was floating in midair. "I don't mind you getting angry at what I said earlier," he said. "I don't mind the punch you gave me or holding me up like you were. But don't you ever insult the title of Hokage in front of me." "And why not?" demanded Tsunade. "I know who you are. I know what that village did to you at birth. I know how they have treated you in the past. It's the same wherever you go and it's never pretty. So why does the title of Hokage mean so much to you?" "Because of Aji-san," said Naruto. "He was the person who believed in me and helped me start my training. He was the one who taught me how to read and write. He stood up to a team who kicked his own daughter on the streets. He's did his best to see that I had a chance to make friends and as close to a normal life as I could. And, in the end, he gave his life to protect the village just like the Yondiame did. And don't think that's the only reason why the title of Hokage means something to me. Suddenly the wind began to pick up. It began to spin around Naruto and Tsunade and he glared at her with a look of sheer determination. Becoming Hokage is my dream. Tsunade was at a loss for words. The same look and the same words as Dan and Nawaki. She could almost see them standing behind Naruto, all of them giving her that look of determination. This only caused Tsunade to become irritated as she gritted her teeth. But before she could say anything or do anything, someone yelled out Sanaijishu, and several large snakes appeared in her line of vision. Tsunade let go of Naruto and jumped back, thinking that the attack was meant for her. But the snakes wrapped around Naruto and he seemed to drop to the ground. "No more running, Naruto-kun," said Enko as she walked towards the fallen blonde who was sweating bullets. A moment later, Hinata appeared next to Enko. "Please Naruto-kun, we need you to give us an answer," said Hinata in a pleading voice. "How did you find me?" asked Naruto. "I got to use the skills I learned from Ibiki-sensei," said Enko as she licked her lips. Flashback. Udon was tied up to a tride, too scared to move. Normally he'd be struggling to get free but not in this situation. In class they had been going over means to escape, but in class they had used ropes not snakes. Enko was standing next to him with her kunai lightly brushing against his cheek. "All right worm," said Enko with a grin. "Tell us where Naruto-kun went and this will all be over." "I won't," stammered Udon. "I won't betray him, my friend." "All right then," said Enko with a sigh as she began to walk away. "You leave us no choice." That was when Hinata walked into view. Her hands were brought together and Udon could see tears in her eyes. "Please Udon-kun," she said in her sweetest voice. "Tell us what happened to Naruto-kun." "Okay," said Udon as a blush appeared on his face and a bit of blood came out of his nose. End flashback. While Naruto began to get questioned by the two girls, with Sex watching with an amused look on his face, Tsunade turned towards the bar to see Jiraiya standing there with his notepad out. Shizune was standing next to him going over the issue of Teen Shinobi that she had bought after she saw Naruto's face on it. According to her, she just wanted to know more about the shinobi that had helped them win so much money. Also, she liked the ads. "This brings me back," said Jiraiya with a small grin. Minato was also a lady killer, but had more than just two girls chasing after him. "But he's young so there's still time, I guess." Tsunade just sighed, most of her earlier anger had gone. Then an idea popped into her head. If all went right she could make some money and get Jiraiya off her back. Hell, even if she didn't win anything, they would be off her back. "Hey Naruto," she called out as she got all of their attention. "How about we make a little bet?" "What kind of bet?" asked the blonde. Enko released him and allowed him to stand up. "It's simple," said Tsunade with a smirk. "In Oni no Kuni, there is a tournament that is held every year that has been given the nickname the Second Chance Tournament. It was created for those who couldn't make it to the Chunin exam or would simply like a redo. It allows shinobi to showcase their skills to a neutral party who then contact their villages with their opinion, thus allowing a shinobi to reach the rank of Chunin. Also, many bounty hunter and other fighters compete as well to showcase their talents in front of potential clients as well as earn a name for themselves. First prize is an automatic promotion to Chunin. Here is the bet. I want you to make it to the final round. If you can do that, I will admit that you can become Hokage and will become Hokage myself. However, if you should fail, then you must give up on your dream and leave me alone. I'll also throw in my necklace." As she said that last part, she pointed to the purple stone hanging from her neck. "Tsunade-sama," gasped Shizune. "That's fine with me," said Naruto. "But I won't just make to the final round, I'll win it." "Not so fast," said Sex. "I'll also be entering this tournament. I can't think of a better stage to defeat you on than that." While that was going on, Tsunade moved next to Jiraiya. "Hey," she whispered into his ear. "What's that Aimnin doing here?" "He seems to be a rival of Naruto's," he whispered back. "But never mind that now, what are you thinking? You know that there are two-seeded Jonin in the tournament that represent the host of this event. And you know the other reason for this exam." "Well, it's too late now," said Tsunade as she turned her attention back to the genin. "Naruto has already agreed to this and a man should never back out of something that he gave his word to." Sasuke was going over some of the notes he had obtained from Sakura. From the village registry, there had been only two Uzumakis in the village. The first was Uzumaki Kushina and then his teammate. From what he could tell, Kushina had turned traitor even if the Hokage hadn't declared her a nuke nin. Also, all scrolls found in her home were taken by the ANBU so that whatever skills she had weren't lost to the village. It took a little more digging, but Sasuke found that a person named Danzo was the person who had been in charge of her Jutsu scroll recovery. After he had looked at all the information from the registry, Sasuke began to look at anything that had the word Uzumaki in it. There were several mission reports that were open to the public that had accounts of meeting shinobi of the Uzumaki clan. All of them seemed to mention them using wing-based jutsus and similar behavior patterns. But none of them mentioned what he had seen during Naruto's fight with Gaara. Finally, Sasuke came to the beginning of the village's history and what he saw shocked him. Apparently, the Shodai Hokage had sent a letter asking the Uzumaki clan to join the village. Frantically, Sasuke began to search through the notes and copies he had for their response. This was important, he just knew it. Nearly all the clans in the village came from various areas in Hai no Kuni. Those that didn't came here of their own accord. But Sasuke never heard of any Hokage that asked, no begged, another clan to join the village. Finally, Sasuke found the letter from Uzumaki Haran. Hey Hashirama, been a while hasn't it? Haven't heard from you since that time with Madara. How is the team? Look, about joining your village, I'll have to take a pass. Don't get me wrong, I think it's a great idea to unite the clans and create hidden villages. Hopefully this will lessen the death toll caused by the constant clan fighting. And I have nothing but respect for you. However, we can't have all three clans join together. Senju, Uchiha, and Uzumaki should remain separate for now or else we'll become too powerful and whatever balance there was will be gone. Should you ever need an ally, know that Uzugakure will stand by you until the danger is over. Don't be a stranger. Kion makes good ramen. And for you I will even pull out the good sake. Reading the note, Sasuke began to feel his eye twitch. It was so Naruto-like. Even at the bottom was a hand-drawn picture of a chibi man make a V sign and sticking out his tongue. Baka, Sasuke swore as his grip tightened. Chapter 29. Welcome fight fans to the Oni tournament, exclaimed Kodo who was standing in the middle of a giant arena. It was oval-shaped, but the stands were made of wood instead of stone like many other arenas. Also the seating went from the ground level to the 90th with no barrier to protect them. Thus the higher level seats were the cheapest due to the health risks. The cameras were pointed at Kodo who stood in the middle of a large stone circle. I'm your referee Kodo. And I'm her partner Yuri, said the other announcer. Let's just hope that this doesn't end up like the Chunin exam. You were so lucky to be near all that beautiful death and violence, said Kodo with a blush. Just thinking of all the blood that was spilt makes my heart beat so fast. Yuri gave her a deadpan expression. Sadist, muttered Yuri. She then shook her head and got back to work. Now for the tournament setup. Of the 477 contestants that signed up, only 8 will be selected to compete, exclaimed Kodo. Everyone will be divided into 8 groups and will then fight in battle royals in different locations. The last man standing will advance into the tournament and the rest will be taken to the hospital or placed 6 feet under. Also, 2 shinobi who are ranked as Jonin will placed in the prelims to represent our hostess who will be awarding the grand prize. And now, please welcome the hostess of the tournament, Cheyenne-sama, exclaimed Yuri. A searchlight came to life and shined on a figure sitting on a silk cushion on a platform in the middle of the bleachers. She looked no older than 13 and had blonde hair and lavender eyes that almost seemed to glow. She looks familiar, commented Naruto. Currently he was floating in the air with his legs crossed. Next to him was Sex who had a bored look on his face. Not like I give a damn, replied the Aim-nin. Then, out of the corner of his only eye, Sex saw Hinata and Enko beckoning them from an entranceway. Or rather Naruto. With a sigh Sex gave the blonde a nudge as Cheyenne began to go over some of the rules in more detail. Once Sex had the blonde's attention he jerked his head over to the girl's location. Naruto sighed as he floated over towards them. He knew what they wanted to talk about, their relationship. He had been doing what all guys do in a difficult situation, ignore it and hope it goes away. Sadly, it didn't work this time. Once he and Sex were in the entranceway Naruto set his feet on the ground and Sex leaned against the wall. Like hell he was going to miss this show. Naruto's love life was better than cable. Alright Naruto-kun, said Enko at once. We need an answer. No more stalling. Please Naruto-kun, begged Hinata. Well, said Naruto with a blush as he scratched his cheek. The truth is that I like you both the same. A moment later a kunai barely missed his other cheek and he was then grabbed by its owner. Do you think this is some kind of joke? Demanded Enko as a dozen tick marks appeared on her face. She was pissed. She had opened her heart to him and this is the answer that she got? On top of it she found out that this tournament was men only this year. The nerve. How dare you? Both me and Hinata put our hearts on the line here to tell you how we feel. The least you could do was be honest and tell us who you liked better. I am being honest, said Naruto nervously. I like you both, but for different reasons. And besides, I ain't never been on a date or anything in my life, so it seems weird just to say I like someone better than the other. Right? Why you dash, began Enko as she pulled back her fist. Wait, cried Hinata. Why should I, demanded Enko as she paused on her assault. Because he's right, said Hinata. Enko raised an eyebrow as she lowered her fist. We did confess, but the problem is that neither of us had ever been in anything close to romantic with him. All we do is train and hang out. So when we told him how we felt, it must have seemed out of the blue. So what are we supposed to do then, demanded Enko as she let go of Naruto. We could both date him, said Hinata. Enko looked ready to object, so Hinata decided that she'd better continue quickly. We date him for a while and then Naruto-kun can decide who he likes being with better. And in the end we can still be friends because we all did it fair and square. Enko sighed. I guess I can agree to that, said Enko. Hinata smiled as Naruto nodded, happy that they weren't going to be fighting and treating him like a trophy. Little did he know that Hinata was smiling because she had scored the first point. She, not Enko, had found a way for Naruto to fairly pick who he wanted to be with and no one got hurt. And that meant that Naruto was closer to becoming hers. A while later, Naruto was walking towards his assigned fighting zone. After he had met with Enko and Hinata, he had returned to see that everyone was now drawing lots. Naruto had drawn 1 while Sex got 6. Oddly enough, a lot of people were griping about getting those same numbers. It probably had something to do with what he had missed while talking to the girls. When he finally got to his destination, Naruto found a large stone square shape that he guessed was where he was going to be fighting on. However, there was only one other person there. He was shorter than Naruto and had slicked back black hair with several small bangs in the middle. He wore typical fisherman garments, which included a long-sleeved turquoise shirt with short black tights that extend halfway down his shins and straw bottoms held up by a thin black belt. He also had a bag on his back and in his hand was a fishing pole. So, someone has the guts to fight the great Urashima Yura, declared the small man with a sinister-looking grin. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he stepped into the ring. He really didn't like this guy and he had only said one sentence. Where is everyone else? Demanded Naruto. Yura began to laugh. It was a foul-sounding laugh that made Naruto feel sick. You're the only one to show up, said Yura as he pointed at Naruto. It seems that everyone else was afraid to face a Jonin. You're a Jonin? Asked a wide-eyed Naruto as he pointed at Yura. The fisherman nodded and Naruto fought back a laugh. All in all, this short man didn't seem all that powerful. But then again, neither did Kakashi at times. But at least Kakashi had size. And before Naruto could say anything, Yuri came onto the scene with a camera crew. Yuri here, and it seems that Uzumaki Naruto has decided not to listen to the advice of Shion-sama gave about fighting against Urashima Yura, she said as Naruto's jaw dropped. Hajime. At that same moment, Sex was also learning about what Shion had said, for he was also fighting a Jonin alone. Well, he was ranked as a Jonin at least. The man standing before him was tall and muscular. He had thick crew-cut blonde hair that was kept up by a large white headband. On his upper body he wore sleeveless white jacket, although it was too small to cover his entire torso. His baggy bottoms were a burnt sienna color, engulfed at the bottom by his long black boots and held up at the top by a white belt. This is Kodo here, said Kodo. It seems that Sex was the only one brave or insane enough to face Momotaro Kuro. Will this brave genin survive, or will Momotaro rip him into beautiful shreds of blood and guts? I can hardly wait. Hajime. Hey kid, said Momotaro as he looked down on Sex. I'll tell you what, I'll let you have the first move. Not that it'll help much. Don't get too cocky, team, said Sex as he unfolded his titan blade. Sex then got into a charging stance. He had no idea what was going on in the mind of his opponent, nor what he could do, but there was only one way to find out. It might be dangerous, mainly because he suggested it, but then again he might just be cocky because he was facing a genin. Sex yelled out, Sexterong Riff, and then leapt towards Momotaro. As he went through the air, Sex began to twist his body around while the titan blade seemed to move around his body. Sex would do a somersault and the blade would travel from behind him, between his legs, and then across his body. Then Sex would do a kick spin and the blade would spin around an arm or a leg. Momotaro, who should have stayed still, dodged to the side. However, he wasn't fast enough to dodge the entire attack and ended up getting slashed on his arm. Blood shot out of the wound and Momotaro took a knee for a moment while dealing with the pain. Blood was dripping down his arm and Kodo looked like she had seen the fountain of youth. Not bad, kid, said Momotaro as he slowly got back to his feet. Sex turned to face Momotaro and began to point angrily at him. Hey, you said that I would get the first move, yelled Sex. And you did, said Momotaro as he reached for his belt. And now my body was memorized this pain. There, he grabbed a strange sphere that seemed to be attached to it and pulled it out. He held it up so that Sex could see it clearly. This is a Kibidango, and with it I will seal your fate. Momotaro then squeezed the sphere and a steam-like mist appeared which then seeped into his skin. Instantly the wound healed and Momotaro underwent a transformation. His hair turned brown and fur seemed to cover his body, leaving only his face, chest, and palms untouched. And there it is, ladies and gentlemen, Momotaro has now shown Sex why he is known as Buju Soko no Momotaro, said Yuri with a slight pout. And things will only get worse for Sex and Momotaro will continue to lose his hotness. I don't get what's going on and I don't care, declared Sex. Sechster Angriff. And with that, Sex attacked Momotaro who didn't move a muscle. Sex's attack hit him in the chest, but there was no damage. In fact, it was like Sex seemed to bounce right off of him. Momotaro then began his attack and punched Sex while he was falling backwards, causing the one-eyed genin to hit the ground hard several yards away. I know what you're thinking, said Momotaro as he crossed his arms. And you're right, that should have worked. However, my body has the ability to memorize any damage it receives. After that I just use a Kibidango and I gain immunity from that attack and I get a body upgrade. So, in short, every jutsu that you use against me just makes me stronger. Right now I'm using Buju Soko, main no so. Momotaro watched as Sex got into a sitting position. He expected Sex to beg for his life or give up. But instead, Sex began to laugh. Looks like I knocked the sense out of him. I have that effect on people. Please, said Sex as he stood up. All this means is that all I have to do is kill you before you can use one of those spheres. That should make things more interesting. Back with Naruto, he was easily avoiding all of Yura's attacks. Yura used his fishing pole like a whip, slashing out at Naruto who flew around his attacks. It seemed weird to Naruto that someone like this was considered to be a jonin. He wasn't fast or strong and his attacks so far were that of a beginner's. But people seemed to be afraid of him for some reason. Naruto couldn't make sense of it. I've heard a lot about you, said Yura as he continued his attack. But do you really think it'll last? What are you talking about? Asked Naruto as he dodged another attack with ease. I heard that you were nothing but an outcast in your village, said Yura. But now it seems that people are warming up to you. But that's only because you're strong and win. But as soon as you lose, they'll turn on you again. Naruto's eyes widened slowly as he dodged another lash. You know it's true. Deep down they haven't changed their minds about you. You're still the same outcast, but one they can use. Use and then throw away once they have no more use for you. Naruto then moved towards the edge of the arena and was then stopped by an invisible force that caused him to bounce off of it. Yura smirked as his fishing line wrapped around Naruto and then pulled, causing dozens of cuts to appear on Naruto's body. Naruto fell to the ground in utter pain. What the dash, he gasped in pain only to be whipped across his back. That was too easy, said Yura as he whipped Naruto again. Blood was now beginning to soak the stones as Naruto's shirt was torn to shreds. I've heard all the rumors and seen you on TV. In terms of power I fall short, but there are ways around that. You fell right into my mind game and never even noticed that I created a barrier. And now I think I'll finish you off. With that, Yura took of the bag on his back and opened it to reveal a box which he set on the ground. This is Yami 8 Emu, Gyakutama Tobacco. Anyone who breathes in the smoke, other than the person who opens it, will begin to regress in age. This will make my victory as easy as killing a newborn baby. And with that, Yura opened the box. Naruto tried to get up and fly away, but his injuries were too painful and the smoke came at him too quickly. Before Naruto knew it, the entire area was full of a white mist. And the effects were immediate. Naruto could feel his body shrinking. His life seemed to flow backwards before his eyes. He watched as he fought Gaara. Fighting Sex, a shinobi who pushed him to his limits. He felt the tear-filled joy of finding his cousin. He experienced Iruka accepting him for who he was. He saw himself meeting Hanzo, the great shinobi who believed he had the makings of a great shinobi. The feeling of Hinata's tears as she cried in his lap. The happiness of making his first friend, Enko. Sitting on the Hokage's lap as they looked over scrolls as he learned to read. And then, there was nothing. Yura felt Naruto's chakra slowly fade until there was nothing left. No one knew how hard it was to use this item. Oh, who was he kidding? What did it really matter if his opponent regressed too far? The end result was that he would die. With this power, strength didn't matter in the slightest. All enemies he had to fight would be reduced to their weakest moments and made easier to kill. Suddenly, Yura felt a huge chakra spike. It was like nothing he had ever felt before. And it wasn't Naruto's. No, this chakra was much darker and pure evil. Yura looked around, trying to find the source, but it was like it was coming from every direction. Then, he felt something drip on his head. Slowly, shaking from head to toe, Yura looked up and saw the face of Kyubi. "You have my thanks, human," said Kyubi. Yura fell onto his back and tried to protect himself with his arms. "Why you can't be here," he cried. "Oh, but I am," said Kyubi darkly. "Normally, for freeing me, I would spare your pathetic life. But I know the secrets of that little toy you use and how long its effects will last. Pity this can't be permanent. And I haven't eaten in so long." And the last thing that Urashima Yura ever saw were the giant fangs of Kyubi. Yuri, who had been standing outside the fighting area, sighed. It was so boring when Urashima Yura did this. She couldn't see anything and thus couldn't report anything. But, thanks to previous experiences, she knew it was better to just wait outside. Suddenly the barrier vanished and the smoke began to clear. A few moments later, Yuri saw Naruto on all fours blinking in confusion. She looked around for Yura, but it was as if he had vanished. "Since Urashima Yura is no longer in the ring, I declare Uzumaki Naruto the winner," she declared. Sex continued to use his Titan Blade against Momotaro with no effect. It was as if his fur was tougher than diamonds. But still Sex went on because he still had a few tricks up his sleeve. Once he was directly in front of Momotaro. Sex made several hand signs and then yelled, "Raitun, Yukai Haimai," and out of Sex's mouth came a lightning blast that spread out like a beam of light. This was a jutsu that Sex never used against Naruto in their fight because he knew it would have been weak against Naruto's wind jutsus. This was a long-range jutsu that could take out multiple opponents at once. But, when used point-blank, its power and effectiveness was greatly increased. The attack hit Momotaro, who was thrown back. Sadly, he landed on his feet. There were scorch marks on his chest and sparks were still flying. There was also a thin line of blood coming from his lip. "Well, that was a surprise," said Momotaro as he took another small sphere. "That hurt a little. But now it's time for another Kibi Dango." Momotaro squashed it in his hand and once again underwent a transformation. His hair turned yellow and his body became covered with blue scales. Golden feathers shot out of his arms to make it seem that he had wings and his hands became claws. "Bucheseka, machi noese." Momotaro then jumped into the air and then seemed to dive onto Sex, slashing him with his claws on the way down. And due to the force of the attack, Sex dropped the Titan Blade. Thinking that he had won, Momotaro seemed to fly up again and prepared for the finishing blow. But Sex had his own transformation. The upper portion of his arm opened up and a cylinder came out it. His hand turned flat and his fingers seemed to recline. Once it was done, Sex pointed his mechanical arm at Momotaro and fired a high-pressured, supersonic stream of water that cut right through Momotaro's Bujusoko like a knife cutting through warm butter. Momotaro fell to the ground, bleeding and gasping in pain. "Now to finish it," declared Sex as he pointed his gun arm at the fallen warrior. Once again, water shot out of it, but before it hit Momotaro he was covered with steam. It was too late for Sex to realize that while he had been falling Momotaro had reached for one of his Kibi Dango. When the transformation was over, Momotaro looked like a brown werewolf with white-colored hair. His claws were also sharper now, like inch-long blades attached to every finger. "Bujusoko, maken no so," said Momotaro as he flexed his fingers. "This is my fastest and favorite form. And now you die." With that, Momotaro raced towards Sex. He knew there was no way he could turn his arm back to normal in time to make any hand signs. He smirked as Sex pointed his gun-like arm at him, ready to fire the third attack. Like it would work now that he was immune to that jet stream. A blue light then shot out of it and shot towards his heart. And then it went right through him. Momotaro fell to the ground while continuing to slide, only to stop at Sex's feet. "Baka," said Sex as he began to manually turn his arm back to normal. "This arm can also fire the chakra saved up in it for a one-time blast." "Splendid," cried Kodo. "And Sex is the winner." It was late at night in the village of Konoha. Most of its people were asleep. The few that weren't were on guard duty, having sex, or trying to get some sleep. All but one, and his name was Sasuke. He was currently in the former home of Uzumaki Kushina that he had managed to find. There had to be something that Danzo, whoever he was, had missed. With his Sharingan activated, he was sure he could find something that was hidden. Yet so far he had found nothing in the small, cozy kitchen and sitting room. Once again, Naruto was on TV and that fact pissed the hell out of him. Everyone in the village was talking about it. How Naruto had a chance to win first prize. How strong he had gotten since his academy days. All anybody wanted to talk about was Naruto. Never mind the few whispers he had heard about Itachi being in the area. No one seemed to care that the man that murdered his clan was close by and nothing was being done. No, not when Uzumaki Naruto was too busy showing off. Sasuke walked into a room and scanned it. Apparently it had been intended as a baby room, judging by the crib. Right above it, painted in red, was the name Naruto with a large spiral underneath it. Also, all over the walls, were hand-drawn pictures of a chibi woman with word boxes next to her. In some cases she was making a V for victory sign, and in others she had her arms bent to make a heart. She said things like, "Kaa-san loves you, no matter what," and "True strength is not measured by how little you fall but in how many times you get up," and "Never give up and never go back on your word." Several toys were in the corners of the room, and there was also a bookcase full of old picture books. Sasuke felt sick just standing in this idiotic room and was about to leave when he noticed something. There was some strange chakra in the spiral above the crib. There was so little in it making it hard to detect, but it was there. Sasuke moved over to it and realized that something was sealed in the wall. Quickly he bit his thumb and then pressed it against the spiral. It glowed for a second, and then in a poof came a large scroll and a letter. Picking up the letter, Sasuke began to read. "Dear Naruto-kun, if you are reading this letter, then you have just graduated from the academy. I am so proud of you. And I know that you aren't taking crap from anyone. Members of our clan have signed this summoning scroll when they have reached adulthood. And now, your time has come. May you soar high on the wings that will help you realize your dreams. Hey, that had a rhyme to it. Love, your Kaa-san." At the bottom was another hand-drawn picture of the same chibi woman who seemed to be blowing him a kiss. Sasuke crumbled up the letter and threw it in the corner and then went right for the scroll. My, said a voice from behind Sasuke. He turned around and saw Kabuto standing there with a small smirk. "What do we have here? Has the Uchiha clan fallen so low as to needing to steal from his teammates? What are you doing here?" demanded Sasuke as he got ready to fight. He had heard from Kakashi that Kabuto was a traitor and knew to keep his guard up. But Kabuto just kept looking down on him. "I was looking for you," he said simply. "Orochimaru-sama has taken an interest in you and would like to extend to you a very generous offer to become his student." "Why should I go with him?" asked Sasuke as he lowered his guard a bit. The next thing he knew was that Kabuto had kicked him right into the wall. "That's why," said Kabuto. "This village is making you weak. Right now the strongest genin in this village is Naruto-kun." Sasuke growled when he heard that. In fact, little Hinata-chan, who was kicked out of her own clan due to her weakness, is currently stronger than you are. If you stay here, your dream of killing Itachi will never come into being. Is that what you want? To let the man who killed your family walk free until some nobody takes his life? "No one can kill Itachi but me," roared Sasuke as he got to his feet. "Pity," said Kabuto. "Right now Naruto-kun is closer to being able to defeat Itachi than you are. And he has been getting special training from Jiraiya of the Sannin. Don't you think that you deserve the same treatment at least? If you do, then you should head to Oni no Kuni before the Oni tournament ends. But, if you are content to be trained by someone of Kakashi's level, then stay here." And with that, Kabuto vanished as if he were being burned from existence. Sasuke stood there in that room for a while. He knew that Kabuto was a traitor, but he was strong. And so was Orochimaru, who had killed the Hokage. The things he could learn swarmed through his head as Sasuke picked up the summoning scroll and then strapped it to his back. Slowly, Sasuke walked towards the door and then turned around. He glared at the room full of love that seemed to be mocking him. He gathered his chakra and sent out a ball of fire that caused the room to catch on fire. And with that, Sasuke left the building knowing that soon firefighters would arrive on the scene. Chapter 30. Orochimaru stood on top of a hill overlooking the large walls of the place that had once been his home. His arms, now discolored, hung lifelessly by his sides. He was sweating a bit due to the pain which increased as the days went by. He knew he had to either take a new host or have his arms healed. And as much as he wanted the Sharingan, Sasuke wasn't ready yet. It would be risking too much to train that body of his to face Itachi in 3 years. No, he had to get the boy ready to be the best possible host he could be. A smile appeared on his face despite the pain. He slowly turned around and Kabuto landed behind him in a kneeling position. He then rose and took his place next to his master. "I take it that it went well," said Orochimaru as they both gazed at the village before them. "It was too easy," said Kabuto as he adjusted his glass. "Sasuke-kun seems to be getting desperate. I found him looting the home of Uzumaki Kushina." "Ah," said Orochimaru with a bit of fondness that surprised Kabuto a bit. "That name takes me back." Kabuto blinked in surprise. He had never known his master to say anything like that with that tone of voice. And before Kabuto could think anything else, Orochimaru spoke again. "Send word to the Sound 4, I want them in Oni on the day of the deadline. If Tsunade refuses and you end up fighting, they won't be much help," said Kabuto. "In fact, they would just be in the way." "I know that," snapped Orochimaru in a more familiar tone. Regardless of how Tsunadeheim responds, they will have a very special mission. A smile slowly appeared on his face. A mission that, if they succeed, will make my future seem much brighter. Danzo sat in his room alone. In front of him was a fresh cup of his favorite tea which he planned on enjoying while he waited to find out if Tsunade would be returning as Hokage or if Jiraiya would take up the position. Either way he was fine with, for now at least. After what happened in the invasion, the village needed someone strong to show their power. If Jiraiya became Hokage, which would have been better in his opinion, the village would have a Sannin as a leader. If Tsunade became Hokage, something he hoped wouldn't happen, then she would most likely create her medical corps and mission success rate would go up in a few years. While some of his minions suggested that he should take this opportunity and become Hokage, he knew it wasn't the right time. Orochimaru was still alive and would use their past deals as leverage to get him to do what he wanted. And then there was the matter with Itachi. Should he ever speak of what really happened about the Uchiha clan, then he would be doomed. No, he needed to wait for the right time. Suddenly one of Danzo's followers appeared before him in a poof of smoke. "Danzo-sama," he said, and he knelt before the older man. "A fire has broken out in the village." "A fire?" asked Danzo with some annoyance. "Hi," said the agent. "It will take some time to figure out the origins of the flames, however we believe that there are two possibilities. The first was that it was an accident caused by kids. The building had been abandoned for some time and we think there is a strong possibility that kids were using it as a place to smoke or something of that nature. However, given what happened during the invasion, it is also possible that it could have been a group of Otonins who had been hiding there since the invasion failed as part of a backup plan by Orochimaru." Danzo nodded. "Yes," he said slowly. "A fire would make things harder for us to gather any information on them now that they have left that location." Danzo looked down at his agent and a thought came to him. Where was this fire? "The old Uzumaki home," replied the masked one. When Danzo heard that, he could not hide his shock and fury as his eye opened wide. He stood up quickly, which caused him to knock over his tea. He wanted to strike out at the nearest person and unleash his full anger, but he held himself back. Silently he cursed Kushina and her seal. Flashback. Danzo stood in what should have been Uzumaki Naruto's room. It had been several days since Kushina had vanished and Danzo had already written her off, regardless if she was dead or on the run. He had easily found her jutsu scrolls, each one contained powerful wind jutsus like Futon, Shinkaha and Futon, Shinkagyoku. They would give him a powerful advantage when the time came to take power. All that was left was Kushina's summoning scroll, which he believed was behind this seal in her son's room. "This is a very interesting seal design," said one of his agents as he studied the seal. "The chakra inside of it seems to be cycling down." "It doesn't matter," said Danzo as he took his place in front of it. Once he was directly in front of it, he took out a small vial. Inside of it was a bit of Naruto's blood which his agents had obtained in secret. Danzo then put a few drops onto his thumb and then pressed it against the seal. Moments later the red lines of the spiral turned a bright blue and from the center came a bright light which shot at Danzo's forehead. "Danzo-sama," cried out one of Danzo's followers. But soon he was taken aback by what he saw, for on Danzo's forehead someone had written, "You're too young, honey bun." And next to it was a smiley face. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded Danzo after he himself saw what was on his head. "This is most interesting," said the agent who had been studying the seal. Danzo turned at him and glared. "Why didn't it work?" he demanded. "Well, Danzo-sama," the agent began, "I believe that this is a time lock seal. You see, I believe that when Kushina created it, she wasn't worried about anyone else in the village taking the scroll. She must have assumed that she would still be around and thus created a seal to keep out the one person she didn't want the scroll to go to until he was ready. As I said before, the chakra seems to be cycling down almost like a timer. Once it reaching a certain point, the seal will be so weak that anyone's blood can open it. Until that time, the only one who could possibly open it early would be its creator. Well, that is my theory anyways. So basically, we can't open the seal right now," restated Danzo. Silently he cursed Kushina and her skills. He could almost see her, grinning at him mockingly. If he had only gotten a bit of her blood, then he could get to her scroll. But, for now, he would take her jutsus and make them his own. And when the time came, once the seal was weak enough, he would try again. End flashback. In his room, Danzo growled at the memory of Kushina's seal. He had gone to check on it several times in the past few years and each time saw that it had weakened slightly more. Maybe this could have been the year he had been waiting for. And now it was gone to a fire. "I will speak to the council in the morning," said Danzo to his agent as he regained his cool. "I will have them assign genin teams to clean up the mess while an agent coordinates it. Hopefully, we'll be able to find some clues as to who did this. We might be able to salvage something." Hi Danzo-sama, said the agent. X. At the same time, Sasuke was admiring the stolen summoning scroll. Name after name of Uzumaki clansmen and women were listed. Perhaps this was what helped them gain the power and fame they once had. Well, in any matter, that power would soon be his. Without any more hesitation, Sasuke signed his name in blood onto the scroll. Sasuke then made the hand signs and prepared to summon for the first time. Yet things did not go as expected. As soon as Sasuke finished the jutsu, there was a puff of smoke and then a hawk shot out of it right toward him. It moved with such speed that Sasuke was unable to fully dodge it. Talons pierced his shoulder and he was pressed against the wall by this brown-feathered hawk. You're not Uzumaki, said the hawk as it moved its beak close to his eye. You are Uchiha? Tell me where is the Uzumaki clan or else I will gouge out your eyes. They are gone, gasped Sasuke. We know that, said the hawk. Uzumaki is all but gone, that we know. Oh, we know that all too well. But where are Uzumaki Kushina and her son? Tell me now. As far as I know, Kushina betrayed the village and is missing, said Sasuke. As for Naruto, he's still here but doesn't seem to want anything to do with you. The hawk released his grip on Sasuke and flew away from him. He fluttered for a bit and eventually landed on Sasuke's kitchen table. Sasuke clutched his wound and hid his smile as his lie seemed to work. Nothing to do with us, muttered the hawk as he lowered his head. All these generations just to be thrown away. No, not possible. Not possible. Kushinaheim, she who tended to us, would not leave us. But she has, said Sasuke as he sensed the hawk's doubt. You know it. Allow me to summon you and perhaps we can help each other. At this the hawk's head snapped back up. Help an Uchiha, he cried. Why should I do that? Even if Our Lady has forsaken us and her son has ignored us, we would never lower ourselves to work under the likes of you. We remember your clan sins. Who was it that tested their poisonous gases on pregnant women to see the effect? Whose clan has a brother that would turn on brother and friend against friend in order to taste more power? Who was it that claimed might equals right? Uchiha, that's who. So why should we allow you to summon us? Because you want revenge, declared Sasuke. I know because I want it too. My family was murdered by my own brother. At that point, Sasuke had clenched his fists. I have to avenge them, no matter what. And to do that, I need power. Power that you can give me. Help me with my revenge and I'll help you with yours. The hawk stared at him for a while. Then it vanished in a puff of smoke, leaving Sasuke alone and confused. Had it worked? Would he be allowed to summon hawks? Or would the next time he tried be his last? Meanwhile, the hawk he had summoned reappeared in his homeland. It was an island covered with large, spiky rocks and deep canyons. The land was barren so they had to hunt for their food on the nearby forested islands that surrounded them. That was how it had been for thousands of years. That was how it was going to stay for them. Takamaki, called out a voice from above. Takamaki looked up and saw another hawk, a white one, as it landed next to him. I heard you were summoned by the Uchiha, he said after he landed. How did they steal the scroll? I don't think they did, Takayami, replied Takamaki. The Uchiha spoke of Uzumaki betrayal. The Uchiha spoke of Uzumaki forgetting about us. Kushinaheim, came a wailing voice from above. Both hawks looked upwards to the tallest stone spike and saw the largest and most powerful summon of them all, Takayu. He was so large that one of his powerful wings could cover an entire football field. His feathers were gray while his chest was white with black spots. And on his back were two large katana swords. TSK, still he wails for her, said Takamaki in a cold tone. He has tried to reverse summon her many times in the past, but with no luck. Shall we remain here forever as we wait to be completely forgotten about? I shall not. Baka, snapped Takayami. Never trust the word of an Uchiha. Layers and betrayers all. He will use you and throw you away when he is done with you. You must find out the truth for it will not come from their lips. Then I have no choice, said Takamaki. I will allow him to summon me and any other hawk that feels the same. And I shall allow him this privilege until the day I see the last of the Uzumaki and find the truth with my own eyes. Cheyenne had been fast asleep for a while now. Night was the only time she could have time for herself when things like the tournament was going on. Personally, she hated it all, epically the first prize. And now, with both shinobi that were supposed to be representing her down in the prelims, she had lost all hope of no one winning. Her dreams were the only way she could get any escape now, even for a little while. Suddenly she heard a bell ring. One moment she was dreaming about being a normal high school girl with a military freak of a boyfriend who had no common sense, and the next she was in what looked like a battlefield. She saw herself on the ground, covered with dirt and looking like a complete mess. Over to the side there were two people fighting on what looked like a giant snake halfway buried in the mud. There was also another blonde woman with the largest breasts she had ever seen sitting next to her. She was watching the fighting and also looked scared about something. Cheyenne noted the blood on the woman's clothing, but didn't see any cuts. The next thing she knew was that the blonde shinobi from the tournament had landed right in front of them. He was covered with bruises, cuts, and dripping blood. It was almost like he had tried to take out an entire army by himself. But the look in his eyes was refreshing in a way. He then smiled at the two. "See," he said. "I told you I wouldn't let anything happen to you." His eyes suddenly widened as the sound of chirping birds was heard, and he then seemed to brace himself. A moment later something bright shot through his chest. Cheyenne winced at the powerful light and as drops of blood fell on her face. And when the light ended she saw a hand replace the light blade. "Never show pity," said someone else's voice from behind Naruto. "And never turn your back on an Uchiha?" Naruto did his best to stand up, but his a hand-sized hole in his chest. It was a miracle that he was still able to stand or still be alive. He then looked at Cheyenne directly in her eyes and grinned as he grabbed Sasuke's blood-soaked hand. What the hell are you doing?" "I promised you, didn't I?" said Naruto as he looked at Cheyenne and the other blonde woman. "I promised that I would protect you both with my life. And I never go back on my word." With that, Naruto shot upwards with his attacker in tow. Cheyenne followed him with her eyes as they became filled with tears. And then, when they were nothing but dots, she saw a large explosion in the sky. "Naruto!" screamed Cheyenne as she woke up. Immediately her attendants came to her side as she was panting and covered with sweat. She had many visions before, but never one like this. And it scared her. Elsewhere, at the hotel, Naruto and gang were relaxing for the night. Well, for the most part anyways. Naruto was lying on his side holding his stomach in pain and had been since his match ended. "Oh man," moaned the blonde wind user. "This is almost as bad as eating Hakuotoko's cooking. It's like I drank a gallon of warm spoiled milk." "Don't worry about a thing, Naruto-kun," said Hinata as she took out a small container. "I have some medicine here that should help." At that, Naruto smiled. "Thanks Hinata-chan," said Naruto as tears of joy appeared in his eyes. "You're a much better medic than that big boob drunk that just sits on her ass while someone suffers." And Naruto was then cut off as Tsunade punched him in the head. "Baka," she sneered. "Next time think before you speak." "I was just being honest," said Naruto. He was about to say something else but stopped as Hinata began to pull off his shirt. "Ah, Hinata-chan, what are you doing?" "Well," began Hinata with a blush. "I need to apply this ointment on your stomach." Upon hearing that, Anko sat straight up with disc-plate eyes. A growl escaped her throat as she then stood up. Quickly she moved over to Hinata, grabbed her by her jacket, and began to pull her away from Naruto and out of the room. Hinata squired back and forth, but Anko refused to let go. "Anko, what are you doing?" "We're going to the hot spring," said Anko as she slammed the door behind them. Now Sex stood up with a grin on his face. Hot springs meant one thing, naked women. Sure, Hinata and Anko were very hot, but they clearly liked Naruto. But that didn't mean that they were the only fish in the sea. He had already seen several hot women in the hotel and who knows, he might get lucky and find a nice hole to peek through. With that in mind, Sex moved over to Naruto and pulled him onto his shoulder. "Yeah, I think a nice bath in the hot springs might do you some good," said Sex as they moved towards the door. "Before you go there is something that I must tell you," said Tsunade as she crossed her arms. With a deadpan expression, Sex turned around. "What is it?" he sighed. "It's a very interesting story," said Tsunade with a gleam in her eye. "You see, there has only been one time when Jiraiya has been close to death. Both his arms were broken as well as 6 ribs." At the mention of the word 6, and seeing Jiraiya nod his head a bit, Sex gulped. "What's more, he also ruptured a number of his organs. All happened when he decided to peek on me while I was taking a bath at a hot spring." Tsunade then gave the boys a false sweet smile. "So in case you boys were planning on doing something stupid like that, you better think again." Sex was sweating all over and shaking from head to toe. He had heard all about the legendary fight between this woman's team and Hanzo all those years ago, almost blow for blow. So he knew their strengths and what it would take to do something like that to Jiraiya. But having your own teammate try to kill you for something like that? That's what men do. Naruto looked like he heard it but was too sick to really care. This sucks," complained Sex. For the last hour, both he and Naruto had been soaking in the hot spring. Naruto, who was now feeling better, had his eyes closed as he tried his best to relax. "I mean, this is why men go to hot springs, to peek at the ladies. It is wrong." "I thought you only cared about fighting," said Naruto. Sex snorted. "I care about other things in life," he said. "I mean, my life is all about being the best shinobi I can be, but I still get urges." So what about your teammates? Asked Naruto. Zex groaned. They're more like annoying sisters than anything else, he muttered. All they ever do is fool around and try to complete missions without any fighting. I mean, seriously, what's the point of being a shinobi without so action along the way? Naruto nodded. I mean, I'm not expecting every mission to be like the adventures of Fuenheim, but… Wait, said Naruto as he straightened up. You like the Fuenheim series? Hell yeah, said Sex. I really liked the one where she had to travel to the Temple of the Stars to start her training with the 7-colored chakra and then Moa attacked the village where her boyfriend lived in order to lure her out, finished Naruto with a grin. Too bad he died, but at least he did it to protect her. I was glad he died, said Sex. He was a complete wuss like some of those guys you see in animes who get all the girls. Only time he showed any guts was when he distracted Moa for a second to allow Fuenheim to get that last attack. Suddenly, they both heard a beeping sound and Naruto's eyes opened. Slowly, Naruto began to tremble a bit. What the hell is wrong with you? Shinobi Force 5 is coming on in 6 minutes, he said. Zex, jag droppet. Suddenly they both stood up and ran into the men's changing room. Soon, both of them were running down the hallway in their robes with their hair all wet. We can't miss this, we can't miss this, Sex kept saying. This is part 5 of a 7-part series. Someone is going to die in this episode. As he said that, they both passed by Cheyenne who had gone to the hot springs to calm down and to get rid of the smell of sweat. Chapter 31. Sasuke was walking down a long tunnel of multicolored lights. All around him were bright greens, reds, yellows, oranges, purples, and so on. And there, standing at what seemed to be the end was Itachi. Yelling with rage, Sasuke began to run after him only to find that the distance never changed. He seemed to stay in the same spot. Look out, yelled Naruto from behind him as Sasuke was knocked down to the ground. Seconds later he looked up and saw Sex and Naruto fighting as they made their way down the tunnel. They seemed to moving in circles as they punched and kicked each other until they reached Itachi only to have him join in on the fight. You're in the way, said Gaara as he stepped on Sasuke. Unlike Naruto or Sex, Gaara just walked towards the others with his arms crossed. Move it, Uchiha, said Neji as he ran after Gaara, and stepping on Sasuke's head. As the lone Uchiha raised his head once more, he gasped in shock to see that he was no longer in the tunnel of light. Instead, he was in his old house. In front of him were his parents, still covered in blood but standing upright and looking down on him. His father looked at him with nothing but disappointment. What have you been doing all this time? He demanded. Have you no pride? You are an Uchiha but you allow yourself to be surpassed by clowns and rivals. What have you been doing all this time? Sasuke looked at his mother who smiled at him warmly, with forgiveness. Sasuke relaxed, knowing that she knew he was doing everything in his power to avenge them. She opened her mouth, only to vomit blood. Moments later, a gloved hand with knives on it exploded from her belly and ripped open a hole. Then a man with a melted face came out and grinned at Sasuke. Look, it's Mama's little boy, he said mockingly. Why don't you come in here? With that, the man reached out for Sasuke, grabbed him, and pulled him back into his mother's womb. Once Sasuke was in, the hole sealed up trapping Sasuke inside. Sasuke began to scream for help and then, he woke up panting. Elsewhere in the village, Team Guy was cleaning through the wreckage of Kushina's old home. But along with Guy there was a member of ANBU with a cloak watching them as they worked. They were ordered by him that, in the event of finding anything unusual, they were to report it to him. So far, they had found out where the fire had started and, based on residual chakra, a jutsu had been used to start it. The only other thing they had found in the burnt rumble was a couple of chakra-infused papers that had somehow survived. Neji, are you alright? Asked Tenten as she moved some half-burnt wood out of the way. This was Neji's first real assignment since he had lost to Naruto. He hadn't even trained once since then and was now working on this mission. No, I'm not alright, growled Neji. That clown, that baka beat me like I was nothing. And now he's on TV once again showing off. How could I ever be alright after what happened? He sighed and sat down. He looked so angry and at the same time so defeated. I knew I would lose at some point. But I never even made it to the finals. Lee did better against Naruto than I did, so what's that say about me? So what? Demanded Tenten as she looked down on him. You're not even going to try and just give up? That's not the Neji I know. I lost in the prelims as well, but I haven't been sulking all this time. I have been training hard so the next time I see that Temari girl, I won't lose as easily as I did. Yash, she is right, said Lee as he did his good guy pose. With hard work, you can overcome anything. Your youthful teammates will help you overcome this setback and help you with your training. Why you really mean it? Asked Neji as he blinked. They both nodded. Good, then after this let's start training again. When Naruto gets back I plan on settling the score with him once and for all. Good morning fight fans, said a very cheerful Kodo over the mic. It was early in the morning and the first round of the tournament was about to begin. Welcome to the first round after the prelims of the Oni tournament. So let's give a warm welcome to our first shinobi Uzumaki Naruto. The crowd let out a loud cheer as Naruto stepped into the ring. The blonde shinobi waved to the crowd and smiled as they cheered him on. He was a bit nervous, which was partly due to what that blonde-haired girl had told him last night. That he was going to die. But, then again, he didn't believe in fate or fortune-telling. And all she really told him was that he was going to die. Lamest fortune-telling ever, because everyone is going to die someday. So, for now, Naruto was just going to forget it. Listen to them yabber on, said a slurred voice coming the opposite entrance. Soon after, the owner of the voice staggered out into the open. The man had a long, blue mohawk that trailed down the back of his neck and then split. The two ends of his hair were tied up with a red ribbon. His face was messy and rather short goatee and mustache, as well as two green striped tattoos under his eyes. He was wearing black boots, olive green pants with a red belt and a blue sleeveless shirt, both fur-lined. In his he had a large sake bottle. And now entering the arena is the drunken Kusanine Chu, exclaimed Kodo. The crowd started to cheer but became silent after Chu tripped after trying to get onto the ring. He then began to curse at it, claiming that it had gotten taller on him, before getting up once more. Soon the two were standing a few yards apart from each other. Naruto could now see that Chu was taller than Kakashi by several inches. Also, he seemed to have more muscle than his sensei, and he used the term loosely, as well. However, he was stumbling around, reeked of alcohol, and had glazed-over eyes. Naruto knew that there were a lot of shinobi who had weird powers out there, but he had never seen a power that required the user to be drunk. So you're the little ankle bitter I've heard so much about, said Chu before he finished what was in the bottle. He then threw it out of the ring and then belched. Course, I think you're just a bloke who's been getting lucky. Naruto growled. Now mate. No need to be getting all excited. Just hold on a tick. And with that, Chu vanished and reappeared behind Kodo. Then, faster than what could have been thought possible, Chu took her mic. Hey, that mine, yelled Kodo. Sorry Sheila, said Chu before addressing the crowd. Alright, before we get started I want to get the record straight. Right then, I'm a real ace fighter and the only things I suck at are paper, rock, scissor, and tests. The crowd, and Naruto, sweat dropped from that declaration. Sensing the need to explain things, Kodo took her mic back. Allow me to translate for the drunkard, she told everyone. Chu is normally part of a 4-man team who uses a game of paper, rock, scissors to decide which 3 are going to take the Chunin exam. Sadly, nearly every time Chu loses pathetically. And when he does get to go he never makes it past the paper portion. But he wants you to forget all of that because me is number 1. That's right, yelled Chu. Sheila here got it right. I'm the master of Suiken. I have no idea what that is, but I bet my Senpuken can beat it, declared Naruto. Well then let's have a burl, said Chu. A moment later, Naruto got worried. Chu seemed to get a lot more serious as he seemed to stumble into a stance of some kind. It was almost like he was leaning to the side and back a bit. Like he was about to fall backwards or something. And the look in his eyes, like he was sober or something. Naruto got ready as he began to float in the air a bit. Hajime, shouted Kodo. Naruto flew forward and swung his right fist into Chu's gut. Or at least that was the plan. Just before the hit could land Chu leaned backwards and moved to his left. Naruto then tried again only to have Chu avoid his next attack. Over and over Naruto flew his punches at the drunk only to have them miss. My turn, said Chu. Before Naruto could do anything Chu moved in and delivered 5 lightning-fast blows to the stomach. Once he was done with that, Chu sent him flying in the air with a kick to the side. But Naruto didn't go very far as he stopped in midair several yards up. He held onto his stomach and gritted in pain. Damn, swore Naruto as he spat some blood. He had underestimated Chu. He was harder to hit than Neji or Lee. But unlike Lee, he wasn't wearing any weights. That had to mean that Chu wouldn't get any stronger or faster. But that didn't change the fact that his fighting skills were greater. Suddenly, an idea came to Naruto's mind. Then, with a grin, Naruto made a hand sign and yelled, Kagebushin no Jutsu, and 4 more Narutos appeared. With a war cry they all flew down to where Chu was standing and began to attack all at once. They all seemed to be attacking at random to the point where their blows almost hit each other rather than Chu. However, Chu seemed to have no problem dodging the attacks. In fact, he seemed to be dodging the attacks better than before. But there soon came a time when he would switch to offense. He pulled back both of his fists and then struck 2 of the 5 Naruto. One of them flew backwards, trying to gain some distance as Chu prepared to kick the remaining two with one strike. They tried to block it, but failed as it slashed through them like a blade. Now Naruto was alone with Chu. "What a bloody waste of chakra," said Chu. "Not even a dent in me. Maybe you should have tried bigger numbers." With that, Chu vanished and reappeared in front of Naruto and punched him in the gut once again. But, unlike last time, Naruto went poof. "What the?" began Chu but stopped as he heard a whistling sound. He looked up and saw that there were two other Narutos above him. One seemed to be just floating way up in the air. The other was falling down fast in a nosedive. Not wanting to find out what was going on, Chu jumped backwards at the last second before Naruto hit the ground and exploded, sending Chu flying through the air. He landed face first and then rolled for a bit before he managed to hop back onto his feet as the real Naruto returned to the ground. "Not bad, mate," said Chu. "I was almost a Barbie with that on. Completely fooled I was." "You're not so bad yourself," admitted Naruto with a smirk. "But I wonder how you'll do once I get serious. I haven't even used my Senpuken yet." Chu smirked. "So you've been holding out on me," he said as he reached behind him. "Well then, I guess I'll have to take it up a notch myself." He then pulled out a tin flask. "In here is the strongest alcohol in the world. It's called Onigoroshi." "Oh, yeah people, that's some strong stuff," said Kodo. "One sip of that and you'll wake up in a cell the next morning and in the arms of some hairy dude you really don't want to know." By the time she finished talking, Chu had unscrewed the lid and was drinking every drop with his head tilted back. "And it seems that Chu is drinking more than just a sip." "I can't believe he's drinking that stuff," said Tsunade, who was up in the stands with Anko, Hinata, Jiraiya, and Shizune. Tsunade bit her lower lip, hoping that Naruto would finish this match soon. She bet everything on him. "Will it make him more powerful?" asked Hinata. Tsunade shook her head. "No," she said. "If it did something like that then everyone would drink it. A Suiken master does appear to get stronger the more they drink, but that is only because the alcohol draws out their hidden potential. But to use Onigoroshi is very dangerous. Not even I would try to drink that due to the massive liver damage." Back on the floor, Chu had finished his drink and had thrown the empty flash away. All of a sudden, Chu's entire body began to vibrate. His muscles began to bulge and his skin darkened. Naruto braced himself for the worst as he watched and prepared for anything. Then Chu's cheeks began to bulge and he ran to the edge of the ring, and threw up. Naruto, as well as the rest of the crowd, face faulted. "What's the matter with this guy?" yelled Naruto. After a few more minutes of watching Chu vomit, the Kusanine stood back up and faced Naruto. "Sorry about that," he said. "Now, let me show something amazing. Suiton, Suyogen." After calling out his attack, a ball of water and chakra formed in his hand. But where had the water come from? That's when Naruto saw that mixed in it was some other liquid, perhaps alcohol. Chu had probably used his own bodily liquids to create that attack and brought it out by his pores. Naruto smirked as he began to spin his arm around until a twister formed around his fist. Naruto yelled "Senpuken," and then readied himself for Chu's attack. Chu took off, running to the side, and Naruto did the same. Both of them still had their jutsus activated, ready to be used at a moment's notice. Then, Chu stopped in his tracks and threw his attack as if he were a pitcher in pro baseball. Naruto lifted his Senpuken and blocked the attack in the nick of time. The attack exploded and, thanks to the angle of the block, almost all of the damage was sent upwards. Once both attacks had been used, the two shinobi charged at each other. Naruto used his power of flight so that he could hit Chu in some place other than the legs and delivered the first blow to the man's chest. Chu countered this with a blow to the face. Over and over the two punched and kicked each other. It seemed like they were giving it their all, to see who could take the most pain. Then, after a couple of minutes of this, Naruto was sent into the air thanks to a blow to the gut. But this time, Naruto didn't stop to hold his injured gut. Instead, Naruto pulled out several kunai and threw them at Chu. But this only caused the Suiken master to smirk as he quickly pulled out 2 daggers from his boots to defend himself. But Naruto wasn't done as he yelled, "Futon, Daitapa," and created a powerful blast of wind. Thanks to this, the speed of the kunai was increased and Chu was pushed back. He was barely able to defend himself completely as he got nicked several times by the oncoming kunai. "Well," said Chu as he began to pant. "I see you're built like a brick shithouse. But I'm not done yet. Let's see that little twister block this attack. Suiton, Akuyogen." Chu then lifted both his arms above his head and created one large sphere like the last one, only this one was easily bigger than Naruto. "Eat this," yelled Chu as he threw the attack at Naruto. Chu watched as Naruto just floated there, staring at the attack. He wondered why he didn't try to get out of the way, but assumed that Naruto was just in shock. Too bad Chu never learned that one should never assume anything. Naruto began to spin his entire body around entire. He was surrounded by a sphere of wind. Chu's attack then veered off and was then caught in the wind's powerful force. And when Naruto stopped spinning, the Akkyuyogan was sent off into the distance. Elsewhere, Paul Watson from the show Whale Wars was on his ship planning his next episode. The plan so far was to throw some shit at some Japanese whaling ships in order to get them to stop and boost his ratings. Then, without warning, a large sphere that reeked of alcohol of energy hit his ship and destroyed it. Back at the tournament, Chu was barely standing. He had used almost all of his chakra in that last attack only to have it blown away. Literally. And from the looks of it, Naruto was panting as well. Seems like it took more chakra than usual for him to alter his attack's course. But it seemed like Naruto wasn't completely out of chakra because he formed another Senpuken. Now Naruto flew down towards Chu, his fist ready to strike Chu. He could feel the powerful winds from the Senpuken as they got closer and closer. Then, Naruto threw a punch aimed at Chu's head. Only he stopped just short. "Do you give?" asked Naruto. Chu fell to his knees and lowered his head. Seeing this, Naruto raised his fist. "Yeah, I give," said Chu. "Just do me a favor and make it quick." Naruto blinked. "Say what?" asked the blonde. "Make my death quick," said Chu as he looked up. "That's what normally happens here, you know." Naruto shook his head and deactivated the Senpuken. "Like hell I will," said Naruto. "You put up a great fight. I can't wait till next time." Chu blinked. "Why, you mean you want to meet a bloke like me again? But we're shinobi." "True," agreed Naruto. "But we're also people and you seem like a good guy. The world could use more people like us who give it our all until the very end." "Uzumaki Naruto," mumbled Chu as he fell to the ground. "Now his blood's worth bottling." "Winner of round 1, Uzumaki Naruto," declared Kodo. Chapter 32. "So how did your match go?" asked Naruto. It was late at night, several hours since the fights ended. Both he and Sex were walking to the outdoor hot springs for a little relaxation. However, ever since Sex had returned from his match he had been in a foul mood. Naruto had tried to ask him a couple of times before but the girls had always stopped him. Well, Hinata stopped him really while Anko also tried to ask what his problem was as well. "Hated it," said Sex. "They had me fighting some yo-yo kid. His damn toys hurt like hell." "Well, you won, didn't you?" asked Naruto. Sex nodded. "Yeah, but not before I had to use a secret jutsu I was saving for you. Damn it." Sex suddenly stopped in his tracks which caused Naruto to do the same. He then looked forward and let out a groan. Standing in front of them was Cheyenne. She was staring at Naruto intensely and by the look on her face it wasn't because she was a fan. Hell, he had been given kinder looks by people trying to kill him. "I think I'll give you two some time alone." With that, Sex made a mad dash down the hall. "Thanks a lot," mumbled Naruto as he lost sight of Sex. For what seemed like hours the two just stood there, waiting for the other to make the first move. Cheyenne continued her icy glare while Naruto began to fidget. Finally, Cheyenne made the first move. "So, you're still here," she said slowly. "Yeah, I am," replied Naruto. "You should leave here now and go back to where you came from," said the priestess as she pointed a finger at Naruto. "I have seen the future and you will die." Naruto rolled his eyes and groaned. This again. It was the same crap that Neji always talked about. The whole, "give up because I know the future and it can't be changed," deal. For Naruto, it was annoying as hell to hear. And after hearing it once he was in no mood to hear it again. "Whatever," replied Naruto as he tried to move past her. However, Cheyenne refused to let the matter drop so she blocked his path. "I'm serious," she said sternly. "My visions have always come true." "Then maybe you should join the Physic Friends Network or something," replied Naruto with a grin. Sadly, this only served to further piss off the priestess. "Don't you get it?" she all but screamed. "I really am cursed with the power to see the future. I don't like seeing the people around me dying. I never asked for this. I never wanted to be seen as a freak or a bad omen. But I guess that's something someone like you could never understand." Now it was Naruto's turn to be angry. His fists tightened and his eyes narrowed. So she thought he had no idea what it was like to be seen as an outcast or a monster. "I know more than you think," said Naruto darkly. Once again he tried to move past her only to have Cheyenne step in the way again. She then looked him in the eyes with great intensity. "No you don't," she said. "Now if you're smart you'll listen to me and leave." With that, Cheyenne turned her back towards Naruto and began to walk away. She walked for several seconds down the corridor before she turned her head to look behind her. There was no sign of Naruto and she had no idea if he had turned around or simply turned a corner. When she looked forward again she saw a purple-haired girl leaning against the wall. "We know more than you think," said the girl. Cheyenne blinked in surprise before she let out a groan. You shinobi are so rude, said Cheyenne. That was a private conversation. Cheyenne began to walk away, but Anko's voice made her stop. He's been hated for as long as he can remember, she said. Hell, so have I, but I have never had it as bad as him. I've seen him beaten more than once. I have been there when he was being shunned by the rest of the village. I've seen him covered in his own blood. For the longest time, that had been the norm for him. So yeah, he does know what it's like to be in your shoes. But there is one difference that separates the two of you. He has never given up or ran away from his problems. And before Cheyenne could say anything, Anko left. Thanks for all your help, Michi-chan, said the head nurse at the Kanahagakure hospital. Michi stood before her with a nervous smile on her face. Currently she was dressed in a nurse's trainee uniform which was completely white. Ever since the end of the Chunin exam, both Michi and his aim were basically stranded within the village. It wasn't that they were unable to leave. In fact, with security so low right now it would have been a piece of cake. The problem was that if they left, Kakuzu would kill them. They had failed in their mission to kill Hinata twice, and their boss was not a man of patience. At least not when it came to money. So for now they had to lie low until he either calmed down or they managed to kill Hinata. So, for the time being, she had managed to acquire some fake documents and joined the hospital staff along with his aim, who was, come to think about it, right now she had no idea where the shark girl was. Meanwhile, in a different room, Lee was lying on his back. After yesterday's mission, Lee and Tenten had decided to help Neji train. Lee, who had trained so that he might be able to defeat Naruto, had been giving Neji pointers. Mostly it involved jumping really high in the hope that they could reach Naruto before he flew too high up. But, at the end of the day's training, Neji accidentally delivered a dangerous blow to Lee. In truth it could have been worse and he would only be in the hospital for a couple of days. But it could have been worse. Suddenly the door opened. Lee managed to sit upright to see who had opened it and his eyes went dish plate. It was his aim in a white nurse's uniform. In her hands was a washing basin that seemed to be full of steaming hot water. How she was able to hold something like that was a mystery to Lee, but he had more important things on his mind. Like, for example, why the hell was she in his room? And why was she giving him such an odd grin? Hello Lee-kun, she said as she set down the basin. I'm here to give you a sponge bath. Lee gulped loudly. But then, his keen shinobi senses noticed something. She didn't have a sponge. Looks like you forgot the sponge, he said nervously. However, his same smile seemed to get wider and she grew Nico ears. The shark girl then moved over to Lee's bed and then crawled onto it. Within seconds, her face was right above Lee's. Silly me, she said slyly. She then lowered her head so that it was next to Lee's ear. It looks like I'll have to use my body instead. With that, his aim sat straight up and began to unbutton her dress. But, when she got to the third button, she was hit over the head with a mallet. Baka, screamed Michi as she grabbed his aim by the ear. How in the hell is this not drawing attention to ourselves? She then turned to Lee, who at this point was as white as a sheet. Sorry about this. With that, Michi dragged his aim out of the room. Moments later, the head nurse entered. Now where is his aim, she said aloud. I thought I told her to be in here giving Lee-san a sponge bath. Welcome to the semifinals fight fans, cried a happy Kodo into her mic. We have 4 people remaining and only 2 of them will be going to the finals tomorrow. Now on to the mayhem with our first 2 combatants. Hailing from Hino Kuni we have the Master of the Wind, the Kazeshu himself, Uzumaki Naruto. At that the crowd cheered as Naruto entered the arena. He was grinning like an idiot as he waved his arms in the air wildly for the crowd. And his opponent this time will be a samurai from Tetsu no Kuni, the lady killer himself, Shishiwakamaru. Naruto watched as his opponent entered the field. He had bluish hair with long tresses tied in a loose ponytail and 2 large bangs sticking straight up from a widow's peak before falling back down to frame his face that was parted equally on both sides of his face. He wore a white uwagi and a light blue zuban with a red obi. As this 16-year-old boy entered, his fans, almost all of them female, began to cheer loudly. Many of them were holding up signs and jumping up and down. So we finally meet Uzumaki, said Shurshur in an arrogant tone. It wasn't as bad as Sasuke's, but it was close. Now we shall settle our dispute for the entire world to see. Naruto crossed his arms over his chest and closed his eyes. To all of the world, it looked like he was thinking real hard about what Shurshur had said. Slowly he looked up at Shurshur with a deadpan expression. I have no idea what you're talking about, he said as Shurshur's face faltered. I'm your rival from Tetsu no Kuni, shouted Shurshur as he got up, hoping that the name of his homeland would jog the blonde's memory. Oh, said Naruto. Never heard of it. This caused Shurshur to once again face fault. When he got up, he saw that Naruto was scratching the back of his head. Could you just tell me what I did or what you think I did to you? So, you seem determined to play the fool, said Shurshur as he reached behind his back. Seeing this, Naruto's instincts kicked in and he prepared for a sneak attack. A second later Shurshur threw the item he was reaching for at Naruto only to have it land at the blonde's feet. Naruto looked down and saw that it was a magazine. As Naruto picked it up he realized that he was on the cover. Allow me to spell it out for you. You stole my spot to be this month's Teen Shinobi cover bow. Nearly everyone in the stadium face faulted. That's it, cried Tsunade after she recovered. Wow, said Naruto as he admired his picture. I never even knew. Proof that you are not worthy of such fame, said Shurshur as he pointed a finger at Naruto. I came here so that I might recover from the humiliation only to find you here as well. It seems that even the goddess of luck loves me for she has given me the chance to show you who the greater showman is. Then fame will belong to me. Like I give a crap about being a showman, muttered Naruto. Hajime, said Kodo, who wanted to get the bloodbath underway. As Shurshur drew his sword Naruto opened the magazine to the article about him. Seeing this, tick marks appeared on Shurshur's face. Taking a breath Shurshur charged at Naruto, ready to slice him in two with one stroke. However, Naruto shot up into the air and then crossed his legs. Shurshur stopped and then tried to leap into the air with all his might, but it was no use. Naruto was simply too high up. Coward, roared Shurshur. Get down here now. Not now, yelled Naruto back as he was looking over the article. Hey, what the hell? I didn't know it was that big. Suddenly, Shurshur heard the sound of thousands of pages being turned. Then he began to hear things from the crowd like oh my, and I wish my boyfriend's was that big, and so on. So you dare to mock me, growled Shurshur as he tightened his grip on his sword. Then he took a breath and calmed down. He realized that Naruto was mocking him to get him angry, so that he would dance to the blonde's tune. But now that he knew the blonde's plan he could end it. With that Shurshur gripped the handle with both hands and pulled it apart to reveal veins and a face that seemed to look like it was wailing. Now you will face the power of my Makoku Meizan Ken. Naruto looked down from the magazine to see Shurshur twirling his sword around above his head. The blonde raised an eyebrow in confusion before a loud, annoying sound filled the air. It kept getting louder and louder until Naruto had to cover his ears. Shurshur then yelled, Baku to Dokushoku so. Then, from his blade, came what seemed like dozens of ghostly skulls right at Naruto. Seeing the threat, Naruto let go of the magazine and did his best to dodge the attacks. But there were too many of them and he had been caught off guard all because he wanted to read the magazine during the fight. So it was little wonder that one of the phantom skulls hit his arm and the pain caused him to fall. But before he hit the ground Shurshur used his trump card. He reached into his Uwagi and pulled out a seemingly transparent cloth. Then, with a grin he jumped up to where Naruto was and wrapped it around him until Naruto vanished. Hey, where did he go? Asked Yuri. Many people in the audience began to mumble the same question as they stared at the spot where Naruto had vanished. All that matters is that he's not here, said Shurshur in a calm tone as he landed on the ground. As to where he is I have no idea. The Shurta no Hagoromo could have sent him anywhere. Perhaps he's at the bottom of the ocean or in on the moon herself. Wherever he is I don't care. Since he's not in the arena that means I win. Well, what he's saying is true, said Yuri. It's in the rules. Gur, growled Kodo. Very. Hold up, yelled Naruto from up above. Everyone looked up to see Naruto as he slowly descended. As the blonde landed on the ground he turned to face Shurshur. That cloth thingy seems like a rip-off. Why? Demanded Shurshur. It's a perfectly legal strategy to remove the target from the area in order to achieve victory. That's not what I meant, said Naruto as he shook his head. That thing just sent me 50 feet into the air. Shurshur felt his jaw drop to the floor. How the hell was this possible? The Shurta no Hagoromo was supposed to send whoever got wrapped in it to a random location. It never occurred to him that it might send someone to a nearby location. How dare you mock me, growled Shurshur as he lifted his sword above his head. He then stabbed the ground and yelled out, on Kosho Baku Heki. The next thing that Naruto knew was they were surrounded by a wall of chakra that seemed to be wailing. Naruto tried to move forward but he found out that he couldn't. Hell, he could barely move his arms. Shurshur smirked as he watched Naruto try to move. He knew it was pointless. The only one who was able to easily pass through this cage was the one who used the jutsu. Even if Naruto attempted to fly up it would take too long. With a war cry Shurshur leapt towards the blonde with his sword above his head. Naruto stood there and watched as the blade made contact with his skull and then, there was a nice, big explosion that sent Shurshur flying out of his cage. When the young samurai landed he was barely able to move. His clothing was either burned or ripped and his sword lay a few yards away. Slowly he looked up to see Naruto gently land in front of him. I guess I owe you an explanation, said Naruto, still holding on to his injured arm. When you used that Shurta no Hagoromo, I really was sent about 50 feet in the air. However, I never came down. Instead I sent a Bunshin Daibakuha in my place. The moment you attacked was the moment you lost. Why you shinobi D don't play fair, stammered Shurshur as he tried to get up and failed. You stole my chance for fame. I could care less about fame, said Naruto as he started to walk away. Then he stopped and turned to look at Shurshur. And you should have known we shinobi are tricky bunch. We are never as we appear. I'll fight you again if you want, but next time you better come at me with better reasons to fight or else you'll end up the same. And with that Naruto walked away and let the medics take care of Shurshur. Winner of match 1 is Uzumaki Naruto, cheered Kodo. Next up we have the one-eyed genin from AIM, the shinobi with the arm of steel, Sex. With that Sex entered the arena. And his opponent will be none other than the trickster from Kuma no Kuni, the shinobi who is said to be a master of a 999 jutsus, Suzuka. I think you mean the beautiful Suzuka, came a voice from nowhere. Moments later a bright pink cloud appeared in front of Sex. Sex believed he was prepared for whatever came out of that cloud, but he was mistaken. Instead of a fierce-looking warrior he got a clown. Suzuka had long spiky blonde hair that stood up like a broom. On the right side of his face was covered with an iron mask and a teardrop painted on his left eye while wearing a red rubber nose. As for his clothing, it was a neon pink jester suit. What in the hell, demanded Sex. Why is it that ever since my first match I've been getting the weirdos? I mean, first I get the kid and now this. How dare you address me in such a manner, demanded Suzuka. It appears that you lack any sense of fashion or grace in battle. But don't worry, the beautiful Suzuka will teach you well. By the time this battle is over you shall never forget neither my power nor beauty. And with that Suzuka threw his head back and began to laugh. I don't give a damn about beauty, Suzuka, said Sex. The clown glared at Sex and pointed an angry finger at the boy. You forgot to add in beautiful to my name, said Suzuka. Beautiful is a word that is meant for me and only for me. To not place it in front of my name is a crime that is punishable by death. Since you are young I will forgive you this time. Never forget the kindness of the beautiful Suzuka. Then, for reasons known only to the loony, he began to laugh again. I like the way this guy thinks, said Tsunade. Everyone around her gasped in surprise. Tsunade-sama, please, that's not funny, cried Shizune. Silence, demanded Tsunade as she grinned wickedly. From this day forth I will be known as Sexy Tsunade. At that, Shizune began to cry. She had been putting up with a lot from her master. Always on the run from debt collectors, always cleaning up her messes, carrying her up to their room after she drank too much. But this was simply too much. Too bad you can't really enforce it, said Jiraiya, which caused Tsunade to eye him. But if you were Hokage then everyone would have to call you that instead of just Shizune. Said Tsunade as she got into a thinking pose. You have a point there. Might be worth becoming Hokage after all. The village is doomed, thought both Anko and Hinata at the same time. Okay, I'm getting tired of this, said Sex as he turned towards Kodo. Start the match already. Hi, said Kodo. Hajime. I see that you're eager to lose to the might of the beautiful Suzuka, said the extremely annoying clown. But do not worry, for I shall make this quick. That was the last thing he said before Sex punched him in the face. With his metal fist. At full strength. The little rubber nose was smashed by the blow and the clown flew backwards by several yards. But Sex wasn't done with him. Sex raced after him and before he hit the ground Sex punched him in the gut with his metal fist again. Suzuka began to cough blood as he hit the floor. Finally Sex slammed his foot into the clown's gut. Yeah, this was real quick, said Sex as he looked down at Suzuka. Your problem is that you are too concerned about your appearance. You're all surface with no real power. I have no idea how you won before me, but it ends here. With that, Sex kicked Suzuka so hard that it launched him out of the arena. You saw it here folks, cried a happy Kodo. Sex has defeated Suzuka, which means he will be facing off against Uzumaki Naruto tomorrow to see who will be champion. Outside the village where the Oni tournament was taking place, at the dead of night, Orochimaru stood on a hill. Around him were his loyal minions. First and foremost was Kabuto. Then there was his elite guards known as the Sound Four. They waited patiently as a new figure made his arrival. It was Sasuke. Sasuke had left his village shortly after he had signed the scroll. It had been easy to slip out and as far as he knew no one had noticed he was gone yet. He looked at Orochimaru with some doubt that he could help train him. With the snake user's arms damaged as they were, how could he train Sasuke to his fullest? Orochimaru seemed to sense what he was thinking and began to laugh. Kukuku, laughed Orochimaru. Do not worry Sasuke-kun. I will give you all the power you need in order to achieve your goal. Fine, granted Sasuke. He was tried from his travels and wanted this to go as fast as possible. Then let's get going and give me the power you promised. What a fucking asshole, said the only female of the group. Do not worry Sasuke-kun, said Orochimaru. The first step begins right now. We shall upgrade your seal so that you will have more power than ever before. And all you have to do is die for a little while. Seeing the startled look on Sasuke's face caused Orochimaru to grin and lick his lips. It was the next morning and the stadium was packed. People from all over had gathered to see this event. Most of them had come to place bets in order to earn a little extra income. Right now the odds were dead, even making it anyone's game. Cheyenne, who was guarded by several guards, sat in her usual seat. For her, this match was more important than any bet. Hinata felt uneasy. Next to her was Anko, but that wasn't the reason why. The reason was that last night Jiraiya hadn't returned to their hotel. He had gone out to drink with Tsunade, but only the legendary medic had returned. She had voiced her concerns to Naruto, who had assured her that the old prevent was either sleeping in a gutter drunk or chasing girls, so there wasn't any need to worry. Hinata had to agree that those were both likely since she had seen his drinking and perversion more than enough in the short time she had known him. But now that Tsunade had also vanished made her worry some more. Shizune was also missing, but Hinata assumed that she was wherever Tsunade was. Hinata was suddenly taken out of her thoughts as Koto's voice filled the area. Well, fight fans, the end has come, she said cheerfully. Next to her were both Naruto and Sex, both eager to begin their rematch. This will be the final fight of the Oni tournament. I hope you all have enjoyed yourselves. Now let's get this bloodbath started. Hajime. Both Sex and Naruto quickly got into their fighting positions while grinning. Both of them had been waiting for this moment since the beginning of the tournament, and both of them were happy to be facing each other in the final match. This meant that they could put their all into their match and not worry about holding back. Nothing could ruin this moment. Well, except that crashing noise near Cheyenne's seat. Chapter 33. Just a few minutes before Naruto Otoko match begins, thought Haku as she looked from the TV to the oven. I hope Ibiki-san's pie doesn't get too burnt. Or maybe that will help improve the flavor. Ever since the Chunin exam, a certain scared-faced torture master had been ordering pies and cookies from Haku like crazy. Never before had anyone ever asked for so much of her home cooking before. And it was helping her pay her part of the rent. Suddenly there was a knock at the door. With a sigh, Haku got up from her seat and went to the front of the apartment. She had been expecting Kiba again because he had been showing up nearly every day. Haku wasn't dumb and knew that he liked her, and normally she would have been flattered by it all. However, he also showed signs of interest in Hinata in a way that was more than a teammate. Yet, when Haku opened the door, she found herself looking at Gaara. Ah, hi, he said as he looked away. Gaara-kun, what are you doing here? Asked Haku nervously. It had been a while since she had seen the sand-using shinobi and had mixed feelings about him. Feelings even she didn't understand. Me and my siblings are in the village as part of a peace endeavor until a new Hokage is appointed, he said. I asked around and found out that this is where both you and Naruto live. Is he home? No, said Haku as she shook her head. Naruto Otoko is right now in the Oni tournament. If he wins first place he will become a Chunin automatically. I see, said Gaara. Then allow me to say what I need to say to you then, and I'll be on my way. Haku said nothing, she simply nodded, and a moment later Gaara was on his hands and knees bowing to her. I'm sorry for what happened during the invasion. I was under orders to attack this village, but what I did to you wasn't. I know that there is no way you'll forgive me for trying to kill you, but I had to let you know how I felt. Because Gaara-kun, said Haku softly as she interrupted Gaara. The redhead looked up and saw Haku's smiling face. Would you like to come in? Hi, said Gaara with a smile as he got up. A minute or so later he found himself seated at a table near the TV with a plate of Haku's homemade cookies in front of him. So, said Haku as she sat down. I'm a bit curious as to what you want to tell my cousin. I hope it's not something like you want a rematch or something. No, said Gaara. I wanted to tell Naruto that I have decided to join the regular troops in my village. I know how they feel about me and that the villagers in general are afraid of me. I have always known that but have done nothing. And all that has happened has caused me pain. The only connecting I have had with others until now have been painful ones. Gaara-kun, whispered Haku. I want to forge a new path. I want to work hard and connect with others. And maybe one day I can be like him. My fight with your cousin opened my eyes to something new. He and I are so much alike. We were born with the same burdens and the same hatred. Yet he was the one who kept fighting to change people's opinions of him. He never gave up hope that one day he could be something more. I now know what I must do and the goal I must set for myself. I plan on working hard so that I will be acknowledged by the people of Suna and become their Kazekage. And maybe, on that day, I will be seen as something precious to others. At that, Haku smiled. I see, she said. But I don't think you'll have to wait until that day, Gaara-kun. What do you mean? Asked Gaara. But before he could get an answer, something happened on the TV that caught both of their attentions. An explosion. What's going on here? Demanded Kodo as she looked at the audience. Smoke hid most of the people from her view, but she knew where it had originated from. Cheyenne's seat. Then 4 figures suddenly jumped out of the smoke cloud. One of which, the one with 6 arms, was carrying Cheyenne away. Hey, muttered Sex, those are Otonins. I recognize them from the footage of the Chunin exam. They were the ones who were helping Orochimaru when he fought the Hokage. Are you sure? Asked Naruto. Sex looked at Naruto for a moment before he nodded. Unconsciously he tightened his fist. He hadn't been there to see that fight and didn't feel right asking others what had happened. Well, not yet anyways. But if those 4 shinobi had helped kill the old man, then he was going to make sure whatever they were planning with Cheyenne didn't happen. Who knew what they were going to do to her? Then I have to go after them. You can't, said Kodo. According to the rules, if you leave the arena then you are disqualified. Naruto, think about it, said Sex as he moved over to Naruto's side. Whatever happens to her isn't your concern. Look, everyone else here is fine and the guards are heading out. Sex was right. At that moment all of Cheyenne's bodyguards were moving out and ready to fight. But Naruto also noticed how slow they were going. He also noticed that none of them were shinobi. Naruto looked Sex in the eye and then towards where Cheyenne had vanished. Then, he looked down. Zexi, began Naruto. Zexite. I thought this might be the case, said Sex. We can't have a proper rematch if your focus is elsewhere anyways. So that means there is only one thing to do. Naruto looked up at Sex, who was grinning wickedly. The same kind of smile that Naruto got whenever he planned an awesome prank. And Naruto understood exactly what Sex had in mind. Without another word the two of them jumped with all their might and landed outside the arena at the same time. They then began to race off as 2 people from the stands began to follow them. Kodo, said Yuri nervously. How are we going to call this one? Let me go, screamed Cheyenne as she tried to kick her way out. She had no idea what was going on or why. Also, she was confused. If her life was in danger she should have had a vision. So why hadn't she seen this coming or seen someone else dying while protecting her from them? Shut the fuck up, swore Tayuya. That's not very ladylike, Tayuya, said Jirobo. Can it fatso, growled Tayuya. Shut up you two, said Sakan. The 2 quickly fell silent and turned their attention towards him. Cheyenne took this to mean that this guy was the leader. We seem to have some trash following us. That might not be so bad, said Kidamaru with a smirk. We have some time before Orochimaru is done with that Tsunade lady, right? We might as well have some fun killing some level 1 trash. I'll go, said Jirobo. I could use a snack anyways. Naruto-kun, are you sure this is a good idea? Asked Hinata as she jumped from tree to tree. Why not, said Anko with a smirk. We have been on the sidelines for too long. Might as well have a little fun. But this is dangerous, insisted Hinata as she looked at the backs of Naruto and Sex. These are people who work for Orochimaru and we have no idea where Tsunade and Jiraiya are. I know this is dangerous, said Naruto. And I know this isn't a mission. But what I do know is that this Orochimaru person wants Cheyenne for some reason, otherwise he wouldn't have sent those guys to get her. I know I can't stand up to him, but I might be able to mess up whatever he's planning and save Cheyenne. And why are you doing this, Sex? Asked Anko. I mean, you have no real reason to mess with Orochimaru. And we are from different villages, so if we die then that's good for your village, isn't it? Zex snorted. Don't take like you know everything, said Sex. I came here and entered this tournament for one reason and one reason alone, to have a rematch against Naruto. And if he goes and dies before that happens then I'll never get that. I'll never know if I can defeat him the second time around and surpass my former self. So I'll help you guys out for the sake of that day. He then turned his head to look at Naruto. But let's get one thing straight. You owe me big time. Don't worry, said Naruto as he gave Sex a thumbs up. I promise we'll have our rematch. I don't think you'll be able to keep that promise, said a voice ahead of them. The next thing they knew, a heavy man with orange hair shot towards them in a Superman-like pose. It was aimed at Hinata, but Sex got in the way and caught the guy's fist in his metal hand. Sex then tightened his grip and pulled the orange-haired man towards the ground. Sex, yelled Naruto as he stopped and turned around. Down on the ground the dust was beginning to settle from their landing. Sex and his opponent had landed on their feet and then jumped back to get some distance from each other. Don't worry about me, said Sex with a grin. I'll make quick work of this lardass. What did you say? Yelled the orange-haired man. You sure? Asked Naruto. Just go, said Sex. He then looked up and gave Naruto a small smile. I intend to keep up my end of our promise. Naruto said nothing, he simply nodded and went on his way along with Hinata and Anko. Pathetic, said the orange-haired man. Looks like as a leader he's nothing but trash for leaving you behind to face your death. I, Jirobo of the Sound Four, shall end your life here and then kill the rest of them. Sex narrowed his one good eye. If you think you can then do it, said Sex. My pleasure, said Jirobo as he made several hand signs. He then yelled out, Doton Kekai, Doro Domu. Sex didn't make a move as he was trapped inside a dome of earth. Jirobo then placed both of his hands on the dome and prepared to drain Sex of his chakra. Then, the chakra within the dome vanished, which surprised him. The next thing he knew was that he was pierced by the Titan blade. Slowly he turned his head to glare at Sex, who was giving him a bored look. How? A simple combination of the Kawarimi and Bushin, said Sex. Jirobo's eyes widened. He tried to think of a time when he could have used those two jutsus and then it hit him. When they landed there was all that dust, it was the perfect time. Sex then withdrew his blade from Jirobo and then turned around. You must be the weakest. Damn, I was hoping that I'd get more of a challenge from you. But you're so lame you're not even worth using any real jutsus. And with that he folded up the Titan blade, placed it on his shoulder, and began to walk away. Jirobo placed a hand on his wound as he turned around. His face was twisted into a snarl. How dare he? How dare this trash look down upon him? He was one of Orochimaru's chosen few. Rage flowed through him with the force of a raging stream. It burned within him with the fury and heat of molten lava. His body began to change. His hair turned into a long mane and his skin turned red. He got up and charged at Sex, who did not turn around or stop. But, when Jirobo was about to strike at Sex with a powerful blow to the head, Sex spun around to avoid the attack as well as to counter-attack with a metallic punch to the face. Jirobo fell backwards from the blow with his eyes shut. He could feel that his nose was broken and the blood running down his face. Damn you, cursed Jirobo as he opened his eyes. He then gulped, for Sex had activated his arm's transformation and turned it into a gun. A gun aimed right at Jirobo's head. You don't know when to stay down, said Sex. I was going to let you just walk away, but it seems like that was a mistake. And with that a beam of highly pressurized water shot out of Sex's arm and pierced Jirobo's skull. I see you already took care of that piece of trash, said a voice over to the side. Sex turned around and saw a white-haired teen dressed in a similar fashion to the late Jirobo. Something in Sex stirred at the sight of this person. A sense of danger mixed with worry. Whoever this person was, Sex knew that he was strong. And who might you be? Asked Sex as his arm turned back to normal. The teen said nothing at first. He simply reached over to his shoulder as a bone seemed to pop out. He grabbed it and pulled it out all the way to reveal that it was shaped like a dagger. I am the former leader of the Sound Four, said the teen. My name is Kimimaro, and in the name of Orochimaru-sama I shall defeat you and all others who stand in his way. I see them, called out Naruto as he and the two girls had caught up with the remainder of the Sound Four. What the hell, swore Tayuya. That fat ass only took out one of the little shit? Oh well, said Kidamaru. He then tossed Cheyenne over to Sakan, who caught her with ease. Looks like we'll have to handle this ourselves. It will be game over for them soon enough. And with that, both he and Tayuya turned around and began to head towards Naruto and his group. Anko yelled out Sanaijishu as several snakes shot out of her sleeve and wrapped around Tayuya. Anko then proceeded to drag the other girl west of the group. Naruto managed to jump over Kidamaru, and when he turned around to pursue the blonde he found Hinata blocking his path. Don't worry about these guys, Naruto-kun, said Hinata as she got into her stance. We'll handle them while you get the priestess. Thanks Hinata-chan, said Naruto. I owe you a date after this. At that, Hinata's face went beet red. Naruto continued to chase Sakan until they came to a clearing. When they got there, Sakan stopped and turned around. Naruto noticed that they were far from alone. He could see Shizune, Tsunade, Orochimaru, and Jiraiya. There was also someone else there fighting Shizune, but Naruto couldn't make him out. But what he could tell was that Tsunade wasn't helping Shizune fight, nor was she helping Jiraiya fight Orochimaru. And near Tsunade was an odd barrel a little bigger than he was. I think it's time to end this chase, said Sakan. And when I'm done with you I will assist Orochimaru-sama. You might have had a chance while you were all together, but facing me alone has guaranteed your death. Oh shut up, said a voice behind Sakan. Naruto blinked, unsure about who said that. Then, the body on Sakan's back began to move as they dropped Cheyenne. The head turned to face Naruto. Would you be quiet, Yukon, said Sakan. I can handle this, so just go back to your nap. No, because you'll just waste time, said Yukon as he stepped out of his twin brother. We have wasted too much time with this trash already. Let's just get this over with. And with that he charged at Naruto, who prepared to block the attack. But what happened next shocked Naruto. Instead of hitting him, Yukon began to merge with him. What the hell, yelled Naruto. This is our Kekkei Genkai, said Yukon. It allows us to merge with others at the molecular level. But then, just as his left arm had merged into Naruto, the unexpected happened. Yukon felt a presence and a chakra like he had never felt before. It felt like it was roaring at him and pushing him out. Then, all of a sudden, Yukon was sent flying backwards and landed on his back. What the hell are you? Naruto blinked, unsure of what had just happened. One moment his opponent was trying to merge with him and then he's flung backwards. Naruto didn't know how or why, but none of that mattered. I'm the guy who's going to kick your ass. Senpuken. Chapter 34. Sakan and Yukon managed to dodge Naruto's first Senpuken. While they were spared from the full force of the jutsu, they were however thrown back several dozen yards by the powerful winds it created. As they readied themselves they saw that Naruto was hovering over the large crater that he had just created. Most likely the first of many in this fight. Off to the sidelines Cheyenne was watching like her life depended on it. Well, actually, it did. Crap, yelled Sakan. If that attack hits us we're dead. Then we make sure it doesn't hit us, replied Yukon as he activated his cursed seal mark. His twin nodded and activated his seal mark as well. Naruto's eyes widened in shock and surprise. He had never seen anything like this before except in an anime or a manga. But if it worked in the same way then that meant that their abilities had become stronger. They might even have gained new powers as well. Taking a deep breath, Naruto paused to take in the situation. He was facing two strong opponents who had unusual abilities. They seemed to be able to merge with each other and had tried to merge with him. What it would have done to him Naruto had no idea. But for some reason it had failed and they were confused, like it had never happened before. He knew this worked in his favor. Right now seemed like the best time to attack before they managed to merge back together. With a grin and a plan, Naruto began to spin his arm around and yelled, Senpuken. He then flew at the twin brothers at full speed. Seeing the attack, and knowing the power behind it, Sakan and Yukon decided to play defense. They bit their thumbs, made the hand signs for a summoning, and then together yelled, Kuchios, Rashomon. This resulted in the summon of a giant gate which the two of them hid behind. They both waited for several seconds but heard nothing. No explosion of the Senpuken as it hit the gate. No cry of anguish from the blonde. Hey Bakas, came Naruto's voice from above. Sakan and Yukon both looked up to see Naruto standing at the top of the gate. Did you both really think I couldn't stop in time to avoid hitting this thing or that I wouldn't try? I'm really offended here. Who is stupid enough to try and plow through the enemy's defenses when he could just go around it or above it? Back in Konohagakure, Kiba sneezed. Baka, yelled Cheyenne who was watching the fight from the sidelines. You should have continued your attack. Don't announce your presence to the enemies like that. What kind of shinobi are you? Wow, said Naruto as he scratched his head in embarrassment. You're right, I should have done that. Just then Sakan and Yukon were both grabbed from behind. The two brothers turned their heads around to see that they had been grabbed by Naruto's Kagebushins. Oh wait, I did. A moment later Sakan and Yukon realized that they were wrong about what kind of clones had grabbed them as they exploded. When the smoke cleared all Naruto could see were the remains of what used to be two logs. Naruto stared at the remains with wide eyes as Sakan and Yukon appeared on opposite side of the gate. They both charged at Naruto with their kunais in hand, positioned to kill. Naruto saw this however and took to the sky to avoid the attack, but both brothers threw their weapons at him. Seeing this, Naruto pulled out the Raijin, deflecting them. This could take a while, said Yukon as he looked over at his brother. Then let's finish up with this trash quickly before Orochimaru-sama gets mad, replied his brother. Trust me, said Naruto as he got their attention. The snake team is the least of your worries. Hinata dodged another one of Kidamaru's attacks as she jumped from tree to tree. Besides having a couple extra arms he also seemed to be able to create weapons as well as webs from a substance that came out of his mouth. For a moment, Hinata couldn't help but think of a certain weapon mistress of their age group who would love an ability like that. Yet, on second thought, it did seem a little gross. You're good at running away, taunted Kidamaru as he landed on a branch near her. Yet despite his taunt, he was a bit confused. He had heard a lot about the Hyuga fighting style and had even seen it several times before. But, from what he had seen thus far in this fight, this girl had a completely different fighting style. Then he remembered a meeting the Sound 4 had with Kabuto before the mission began. He had his special cards out and was showing them information on several shinobi he believed would try to interfere with their mission. This one's name is Shihoin Hinata, said Kabuto as he held up a card. As you can tell by her eyes, she has the Byakugan, normally held within the Hyuga clan alone. However, at a young age she was deemed a failure and then she was kicked out of her clan. She was recently adopted by the Shihoin clan and possesses high-speed attacks. Kabuto began to go more into depth about Hinata's abilities, but Kidamaru wasn't listening. She was a weakling that her own clan didn't want, so why should he bother to remember what pathetic skills she did have? And now he was staring right at her with a wicked smile on his face. Kabuto told me about you, said Kidamaru, causing Hinata to pause in shock. Just another piece of trash that got kicked out of her own clan. So what if I am? Demanded Hinata as she kept her guard up. She did her best not to show it, but inside she was worried. Her opponent had mentioned Kabuto. Could it have been the Kabuto she met at the Chunin exams? And if it was, did they force the information out of him or did he tell them willingly? If he had been forced, then that would mean that the village would have to try looking for him or his corpse. But, if he had given the information willingly, then that meant he was a traitor. Hinata mentally shook her head to cancel out these thoughts so she could focus on the matter at hand. You are trash, aren't you? Said Kidamaru. I knew you couldn't be much of a threat, being a mere genin, but now that I know that you're even less threatening than before. This is going to be one boring game. Hinata said nothing. He's just trying to rattle you, she told herself. He wants you to get angry and rush in without thinking. Time to show him what you can really do. Kidamaru frowned as Hinata continued to stare at him. The girl hadn't taken the bait. Then he watched as Hinata's body flickered for a moment before it appeared right in front of him. His eyes widened in shock as the pale-eyed girl delivered a powerful dropping axe kick that connected with his left shoulder. As Kidamaru yelled in pain, Hinata vanished once more, using the Shuinpa to land on the ground and then used the momentum to deliver a more powerful roundhouse kick. Kidamaru was sent flying through the air until he crashed into a tree. Dust covered his form and, despite knowing that the power of that kick should have been enough to break nearly all his ribs while doing serious internal damage, Hinata stayed in her ready position for any possible counterattacks he might pull. Not bad, said Kidamaru as the dust cleared. Now his body was covered by the same golden substance she had seen him use earlier to make his weapons. Hinata tightened her fists as the armor cracked to reveal that Kidamaru was fine. My Kumo Nenkin doesn't just come from my mouth but my sweat as well. When it makes contact with air, it hardens instantly to form weapons or, like you just saw, armor. I have to admit that your last attack was slightly impressive. I never would have thought that trash would have forced me to use the Nenkin no Yoroi. Looks like I'll have to bring my game to the next level. With that said, Kidamaru jumped up into the air and landed onto a nearby branch. Hinata saw this and used her Shuinpa to appear on the same branch. She planned on using one of her powerful kicks at full speed, but Kidamaru had already pulled out a flash tag which he threw towards the girl. Hinata jumped away from the branch and tried to deactivate her Byakugan, but it was too late. A blinding light filled the area, and with her Byakugan activated, the effect was twice as powerful. In her shock and panic, Hinata missed the branch she had been aiming for and fell towards the ground, landing hard on the ground. Hinata found it hard to get up. Her entire body hurt from the fall. She opened her now normal eyes to see that her vision was full of spots. This caused her to let out a sigh of relief. Considering how close the tag had been while her Byakugan had been activated, it could have blinded her for life. Out in the distance, Kidamaru had activated the first level of his cursed mark. He had thought that he wouldn't have needed it in this fight, but the girl's close-ranged attacks were simply too powerful. As he watched Hinata try to stand up, the six-armed shinobi pulled out an arrow from his mouth and then proceeded to create a bow. Once that was done, Kidamaru smirked while taking aim. Hinata struggled to stand due to the pain. Everything hurt. It was starting to fade, but slowly. She managed to take a step forward just as a golden arrow grazed her side. She nearly fell down but stopped herself as her hand flew down to cover the wound. Hinata knew she had gotten lucky. She also knew that it was unlikely that her opponent would miss like that a second time. Her eyesight was still spotty, but she didn't think she could find him even with her Byakugan. He was most likely out of its range. Right now she had three options. The first would be to surrender. If she did that, then she would either be killed or taken to Orochimaru to be used in his experiments. The second option was to use her Shuinpa to get away as fast as possible. But if she did that, then Kidamaru would do one of two things. He would either chase her or go and help his teammates. If he gave chase and caught up with her, then she would have nothing left to fight with. If he went to go help his teammates, then there would be a greater chance that Naruto or Anko would be defeated. So running away was not an option. This left her with her third choice, which was to stand her ground and fight. And if she was going to that, then she needed to take a very big risk. Kidamaru, from his hiding space, activated the second level of his cursed seal. The extra eye it provided gave him greater accuracy. Once that was done, he created one of his special arrows that could plow through the trees and, just for good measure, attached webbing to the end of it to allow him greater control of the arrow's path. As he prepared to fire, he noticed that the girl was just standing there with her eyes closed. She must have given up, he thought. Too bad for you, because this is game over. And with that he let his arrow fly. The arrow went at an incredible speed and didn't lose any momentum even after going through several trees. Kidamaru watched with glee as it pierced the girl's chest and hit the ground behind her. But this expression didn't last long. A look of confusion had replaced it as Hinata's body vanished, leaving behind only her jacket. While Kidamaru was trying to process this, Hinata appeared in front of him, aimed for the middle of his chest, and yelled out with all her might, "Shunko!" The force of the attack was powerful enough to destroy many of the trees in the area, snapping them with the ease of a twig. Hinata was panting hard as she struggled to stay standing. "My chakra is nearly gone," she thought as she placed a hand to cover a small wound on her chest. Slowly the smoke and dust clearing, showing that Kidamaru was still standing and had used his Nenkin no Yoroi once again. Yet even his most powerful defense could not protect him from Hinata's most powerful attack, for there was a large hole in the middle of his chest. "Looks like this is game over for me," he thought. Never thought she could move that fast. She must have been focusing on her sense of touch and then used that weird substation jutsu at the very last second. Kidamaru then noticed Hinata fight to remain standing. Despite the numbness he felt as he began to die, a smile appeared on his lips. "Looks like it's game over for the both of us," he said just before the darkness overtook his mind. If he had been able to stay alive a few seconds longer, he would have been able to see Hinata fall off the branch and fall head first towards the ground. Man, you two are annoying," said Naruto. Before him were the twins, who were looking like they had seen better days. Breathing heavily, they stood in their level 2 forms that reminded Naruto of spiky armor. As for him, there were a few cuts here and there, but nothing that serious. "This is getting me nowhere," he thought. "Looks like I'll have to ask for some help, or else I'll be here all night." Naruto then proceeded to bite his thumb, make a few hand signs, and yell out, "Kuchios no Jutsu." White smoke surrounded him, which hid him from sight. But once it cleared, the twins could see that he was no longer alone. On his back was a bright blue salamander whose body was nearly the same length as Naruto's, but very thin and frail looking. It also had a long white beard that went down to the blonde's hip. Slowly the salamander began to look around as if it were confused. "Ah, Naruto-kun," it said in an ancient voice. "Are you in trouble or something?" "Something like that," replied Naruto as he pointed at the two in front of him. "I just need some advice on how to deal with these two bakas quickly." The old salamander looked at the two who were preparing for an attack. But none came, for all the salamander did was whisper in Naruto's ear. Once it was finished, Naruto made a sign before yelling, "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu." Smoke filled the area, and when it cleared, the two Otonins found themselves surrounded by a single ring of Narutos. But this was only part one of the plan the salamander had thought of. Next, all of the Narutos yelled out, "Futon, de Tapa." The powerful winds that this jutsu created from each clone forced the two into the center of the ring, where they felt like they were being compressed. In an effort to relieve some of the pain, Sakan and Yukon merged together so that they could heal themselves. However, this seriously drained their chakra to the point where they had barely anything left. A few more moments later, the two were tossed high into the air due to the force of the wind, only to land with a very large thud. Before they landed, Naruto had already dispelled his clones as well as his summons. He then flew into the air to check on them from a nice safe distance. It wasn't that he didn't trust the old salamander, who was a master strategist, it was just a precaution in case they had some life still in them. And as far as he could tell, the two were knocked out cold. If they didn't have any internal bleeding or anything that could kill them, then Anko could pump them for information. But before he went to get Anko, Naruto knew he had to check on Shizune, Tsunade, and that barrel. With that in mind, he flew over towards Cheyenne and landed. "Come on," he urged. Together they began to run in the direction of the others. "Wait a moment," said Cheyenne once she realized where they were running to. "Shouldn't we be running back? Anko-chan, Hinata-chan, and Sex might still be fighting," said Naruto. "If we go that way, there is a chance that'll you be targeted. Besides, I have a feeling that this is the way we should be going." Cheyenne gulped silently. This place looked a lot like her vision, and, if it was the place, then that meant that Naruto was running towards his death. Anko jumped from branch to branch as she avoided her enemy's attacks. Following her were Tayuya's Doki, 3 monstrous zombie-like creatures. The biggest of the 3 was bald with many scars covering its forehead. It wore only dark pants and a blindfold, while tied onto both arms were 3 claws that it could use as weapons. The second wore green armor and used a giant iron club as his weapon. Its face was completely hidden from view due to its long black hair. The third and final one had his head upside down while its upper body was covered in bandages. Also, sticking out from the bandages were several long needles. Tayuya was in the distance, playing her flute for reasons unknown to Anko. Anko had her Yurumi out, ready for it to taste her enemy's blood. The bald Doki charged at her first, but she avoided the attack and launched her own. It missed the big guy, but that wasn't her target, it was the one with the giant club. As the blade got closer to him, the melody that Tayuya was playing in the distance changed slightly. Anko's eyes widened as the creature used his club to block the attack, sending her blade upward. Yet with a flick of her wrist she sent the blade back downwards towards the creature's shoulder. Once again there was a slight change in the melody and the Doki jumped back before the blade hit. Anko gritted her teeth as she was forced to jump backwards to avoid the bald one's attack as the song Tayuya played changed slightly. Suddenly, from above her, was the one with the club ready to strike. Anko made several hand signs before yelling, "Tetsu Hikari." Scales appeared on her arms as she raised them to block the attack. The club struck her with enough force to break a normal human's bones, yet the scales were strong enough to take most of the damage. However, the force of the attack sent Anko down to the ground where the mummy man was waiting. As soon as she landed, he kicked her hard, sending right into the trunk of the nearest tree. Anko let out a curse as she slowly got back to her feet. "Okay, it's official. I really hate this bitch." Just then the other two Doki landed on the ground next to the mummy one. Not wanting to take all of them on at once, Anko threw down a smoke bomb and vanished. "Trying to run away," said Tayuya aloud to no one in particular. "Not like it will help. I'll hunt you down and present your corpse for Orochimaru-sama." With that, she brought the flute back up to her lips and began to play once more. Upon hearing the song, the three Doki jumped into the air and began to head in 3 different directions. Anko watched this from a hiding spot up in the trees. Well, this isn't hard to figure out. She's controlling those things with the sound of her flute. Get rid of the flute and those things are done for. At least I hope so. Worst case, they might start to run wild, attacking everything in sight. Anko paused for a moment as she considered her options. Right now the Doki were all over the place, apart for each other. Tayuya is still out in the open playing on her flute. Right now the best she could do was rush the opponent. Anko raced out of her hiding spot at full speed as she began a series of hand signs. Tayuya spotted her and ordered her Doki to intercept her. Once she was in range, Anko yelled out, "Dokiki Tsuba no Jutsu," sending out several spheres of purple liquid at the red head. Tayuya, knowing that her Doki wouldn't be able to reach her in time, leapt to the right to avoid the attack. She then turned to her to look at the area she had been standing on to find that the areas where the spheres had hit had melted away. That shit is going to be a fucking problem, thought Tayuya as she began to play on her flute again. Anko yelled out, "Dokiki Tsuba no Jutsu," once more sending out several more poisonous spheres towards Tayuya. The attack would have worked, however the Doki with the club used his weapon to block the attack. As his weapon melted before her eyes, the other two flew towards Anko on both her left and right. Seeing that she had missed her chance, Anko twisted her body around so that her back was facing Tayuya. She raised her arm towards a branch and yelled out, "Sanaijishu." Snakes shot out of her sleeve and wrapped around the branch. Moments later she was being pulled away from the Doki and towards the branch as her snakes began to retract. "Not bad, bitch," thought Tayuya. "But you're still shit compared to me." Tayuya then changed the melody on her flute. As she did, her Doki began to open their mouths as ghost-like worms began to come out. One of the worms managed to touch Anko's leg as she got away. The effect was immediate as she felt some of her strength vanish. "Crap," yelled Anko as she landed on the branch. Once her snakes were fully retracted into her sleeve, she began to jump from branch to branch in order to avoid the Doki. "It only touched me for a second. If it had been any longer I might not be able to move this fast. Or perhaps not at all." Anko knew she was in trouble. Not only were the Doki strong, fighting them at close range was even more deadly as long as they had those worms coming out of their mouths. Not to mention that Tayuya was somehow controlling them with music. How she was doing that, Anko had no idea. It was like fighting a more dangerous version of Kin. Still, that didn't mean that she was out. She had learned a lot from Ibiki-sensei. Not just torture and interrogation, but strategy as well. She knew what Tayuya could do as well as all the combinations of jutsus she could use. She needed one that would get her up close to Tayuya and then another to kill her quickly. After going through several ideas, only one seemed to have the best chance for victory. It was also the craziest, even by her standards. But it didn't change the fact that it was her best chance and she was going to take it. So, after taking a deep breath, Anko bit her thumb. Tayuya watched her surroundings like a hawk. There was no sign of Anko, but she knew that the purple-haired Kunoichi was still in the area and would try to attack her again. But this time, Tayuya would make sure that she didn't get away. Suddenly, Tayuya spotted movement on the forest floor. It was Anko making another mad dash towards the tree Tayuya was on. Rookie mistake bitch, thought Tayuya as she sent her doki towards her prey. As they fell down towards her, Anko yelled out Dokujiri. She then exhaled a large cloud of purple smoke blanketed the forest floor. Moments later the doki landed in the cloud, but could not see a thing. Nor could Tayuya from her position. Shit, I can't see a fucking thing. No matter, she can't stay in there forever. It will either fade or she'll come out on her own shitty free will. Maybe I should summon my doki over her so that they're not just standing ideally by and can protect me better. Before Tayuya could do that, she heard Anko yell out, Kochios no Jutsu. Then, from out of the purple cloud came a large blue snake heading right for the foul-mouthed red head. Acting quickly, Tayuya ordered her own summoned creatures to attack. Once they heard the order, the three doki jumped out of the poison and surrounded their prey. The big bald one attacked the snake's back with his claw-like weapon while the other two went with punches and kicks on the reptile's sides. As they did this, the ghost worms were also hard at work as they drained the snake's strength. By the time Anko's summon was 3/4 of the way to Tayuya, it opened its mouth to let out a screech of pain from having the scales on its back being ripped apart. As it did, however, it also let Anko out of its mouth with her weapon in hand. Anko swung, sending her whip-like blade towards Tayuya's chest. Acting more on instinct, Tayuya lowered her flute to block the attack. After all, it was a special flute that was stronger than nearly all other flutes out there. Sadly for her, Anko's blade not only pierced it but also her chest as well. Tayuya dropped both parts of her now useless weapon in order to pull out the Yurumi, but Anko reached her first. In a flash, Anko had knocked her against the trunk and brought their palms together. She then forced them both to make a certain hand sign together that made Tayuya's eyes widen in fear. "What the fuck do you think you're doing?" yelled Tayuya. "We'll both die." Anko grinned wickedly. "As long as I take you down, I don't give a damn," she said coldly. "Sojusosai no Jutsu." From Anko's sleeve came two snakes that bit both girls' wrists, injecting them with a very deadly poison. Yet as Anko fell, Tayuya turned into mud. "Stupid bitch," said the foul-mouthed Otonin as she came out of her hiding place. "Should have made sure that was the real fucking thing." She was about to leave, but stopped and looked at Anko's corpse. For a half-second she stared at Anko before her eyes fell on Anko's weapon. Deciding to take it as a trophy, Tayuya walked over to the weapon. As she bent to pick it up, she heard a sizzling sound coming from Anko's body. Tayuya lifted up Anko's trench coat to find it full of active exploding tags. The explosion was both quick and powerful, not only destroying the branch they had been fighting on but most of the tree as well. Jumping out of the smoke was Tayuya, now in her level 2 form. She had several burn marks on her body and her clothing had several holes in it, but she was alive. "That bitch!" Tayuya screamed in her head. "She was going to kill us both and then blow up both our dead bodies." Wait, why would some piece of shit like her do something like that? And use that many exploding tags? 3 of 4 would have done the job, but there had to be a couple dozen in there. Did she think that I might survive her first attack and planned accordingly or some shit like that? And if she thought there was even a chance that I could, why the hell would she fucking use that first jutsu? Just then, Anko appeared behind Tayuya with a kunai in hand. In a swift and powerful motion she stabbed the Otonin right side. Tayuya screamed in pain and anger as she swung her arm at Anko. The attack hit, sending Anko flying towards the ground. After she landed on her stomach, she tried to get up but found she couldn't due to using far too much of her churka. "I knew this might happen," she thought. "Naruto-kun did warn me that the Kage Bunshin uses a lot of churka. Not to mention all my other jutsus as well as charging up all those exploding notes." When Tayuya landed, she couldn't help but smirk at Anko's current state. Despite all of her planning, she still ended up in this position looking utterly pathetic. She probably didn't even have enough churka to stand, let alone fight. "I'm going to fucking enjoy this," said Tayuya as she pulled out a kunai of her own. She then slowly walked over to Anko's body in an attempt to increase the girl's fear and panic. She wanted her to cry. She wanted her to beg for her life. Not that she would give it anyways. Yet, Anko said nothing as she stared at Tayuya. Once Tayuya was over Anko's body, she bent down and grabbed the girl by her hair. Once she did, however, a gray snake came out of Anko's mouth and bit the redhead's arm before going poof. Tayuya stared wide-eyed at Anko as her body began to tremble and her breathing quickened in fear. Then, all around her the world began to melt. Trees, birds, Anko, and even Tayuya's body all seemed to be melting together. "That was close," said Anko softly while still on the ground. She managed to move her head and saw that Tayuya was also lying on the ground with her mouth open as drool was dripping out. "Hey, can you hear me? That snake that bit you has a very interesting venom. It's a hallucinogen that feeds on your chakra. Think of it as a chemical genjutsu that you can only escape by having it drained from your body. The problem is that it takes time for my summon to build up the poison. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to take a little nap. And with that, Enko closed her eyes as a shadow fell over her body. Sex and Kimimaro continued to stand in the same place for a while now. Neither one had moved an inch since they had met. But both had their weapons ready for battle. Sex had his titan blade ready while Kimimaro had pulled out a bone dagger from his shoulder. Both were gauging the other and deciding on what to do first. Just then a buggy came by with Yuri and a camera crew, ready to film everything. "Do I really have to do this?" whined Yuri. "Hey Bachan," yelled Naruto as he and Cheyenne made their way to where Tsunade was. She was just lying on the ground, shaking nervously. Naruto noticed that she had some blood on her, but it didn't look like hers. Off to the side was a large barrel of some kind. He then glanced around to see Orochimaru fighting Jiraiya. He also saw another fight between Shizune and what looked like Kabuto. That caused Naruto's eyes to widen in shock. Wasn't Kabuto on their side? Why was he fighting Shizune? Just then a buggy came by and out of it came Kodo and a camera crew. In a flash they set up near where Tsunade was lying. "This is Kodo coming to you live on site," she said quickly and cheerfully. "As you can see, it is a beautiful war zone here with plenty of bloodshed to be had." "And more to be had," came Sakan's voice from behind them. They turned around and saw he was standing right in front of the barrel with Yukon in his back once more. He was panting heavily and looked like he was in real pain. "I will not fail, Orochimaru-sama." Naruto was about to say something when the barrel suddenly exploded. Everyone covered their eyes in order to protect them from the dust. When they opened them again they saw that the twin had been impaled by a Chidori. The owner of the jutsu. They tossed their bodies to the side and smirked at Naruto. "Here's Sasuke," he said with an insane smile. Chapter 35. A cold breeze blew past the group, turning the mood sinister. Naruto stared in disbelief as Sasuke stood in front of him, blood dripping from his hands from his recent kill. The blonde watched as his teammate lifted his bloody hand up to look and it smiling. Naruto tightened his fists as he glared at the dark-haired shinobi. Behind him the others stood watching silently. Tsunade, who was frozen on the ground caused by the blood splatter on her face, watched silently. Cheyenne stood a few feet behind the blonde teen, with a look of horror on her face. Finally, off to the side, Kodo and her film crew stood silently as their equipment continued to record the events occurring in front of them. "What the hell was that about, team?" demanded Naruto. "What's going on?" "What's going on is that I got what I deserve," said Sasuke with a smug look on his face. "Orochimaru has given me more power than I ever could have back in that pathetic village. And now I have the perfect test dummy to try this new power out on." "Wait," said Naruto as he took a step back in shock. "You're working with Orochimaru? He's the team that killed Ajisen. He attacked the village. Don't you understand that what you're doing is betraying the village?" Sasuke frowned. "You really are a dope," he said simply. "I don't care about that pathetic village at all. That place is full of fools who are just playing shinobi and fangirls. It's only been holding me back, keeping me from achieving my goal of killing Itachi. Orochimaru is strong enough to kill a Kage. He has the power that I need and deserve. It only makes sense that I would go to him." Naruto lowered his head, causing a shadow to cover his face. "I never really liked you," said Naruto slowly. "I always thought of you as an ass who always got everything he wanted without having to work for it. You were always surrounded by girls, always got Kakashi-sensei to give you one-on-one training, and so much more. It pissed me off to no end. But, in all honesty, I believed that deep down you loved the village just as much as anyone else in Konohagakure." Then, slowly, he raised his head back up, revealing his angry glare. "What you are doing right now is spitting in the face of everyone who helped you. Who looked up to you and trusted you." Naruto slipped his feet into a fighting stance. "I won't let you just walk away like this. I swear I'll stop you and take you back to the village so you can answer for all you've done." "I'd like to see you try, dope," said Sasuke as his Sharingan activated. Naruto took a step towards the traitor when he felt someone grab the back of his shirt. Turning his head, he saw that it was Cheyenne. "Don't fight him," she said with a hint of fear. "He's the one I saw in my vision. He's going to kill you." Naruto snorted. "I've said it once and I'll say it again, I don't believe in fate." "Baka," yelled Cheyenne as tears began to fall down her face. "Don't you understand? Every vision I have ever had comes true. Each one of them was of someone who was trying to protect me. It's written in stone that you will die." "Just shut up," said Naruto with enough force to make Cheyenne take a step back. Naruto sighed before continuing. "I don't know anything about your past. And right now I don't have time for you to give me your backstory. So I'll tell you this, I give you my word that I'll protect the two of you and live. And I never go back on my word." Both Tsunade and Cheyenne looked shocked by this declaration. Cheyenne opened her mouth to say something when Sasuke's fist connected to the side of Naruto's face, knocking the blonde to the ground. You should never take your eyes off someone who is trying to kill you, sneered Sasuke as he charged for another blow. Naruto managed to get to his knees as he caught the blow with his right palm. Sasuke's eyes narrowed for a moment before they widened with fear. He quickly jumped back as Naruto used his wind chakra to create a blade in his palm. Luckily for Sasuke, he managed to get out of the way in time while suffering only a minion cut. Crap, thought Sasuke. I didn't know he could do that. It looks like I'll have to take this a bit more seriously. Sasuke made several hand signs before a blade of lightning appeared in his hand. Naruto, now back on his feet, reacted by spinning his arm around until a mini twister surrounded his fist. The two shinobi shared a momentary look before charging at the other, screaming their attacks' names for all to hear. Chidori! Senpuken! X! I really don't like it here, whined Yuri from her hiding place. Her grip tightened around the mic as she watched the two shinobi in the field continue their staring contest. It felt like an eternity since the two began, just standing there refusing to blink. While she did not know the reason why, a more experienced fighter would recognize that the two were sizing the other up. Both knew that if they rushed into the fight half-cocked then he would most likely lose. But all things have to end sometime. Slowly, the two of them began to take out their weapons. Sex unfolded his titan blade while Kimamaro's grip on his bone blade tightened. The white-haired shinobi then charged at his opponent and with fluid movements delivered a low kick to Sex's legs. As Sex stumbled to the ground, Kimamaro adjusted his grip on his bone blade in preparation for a stabbing blow. Sex anticipated the attack before he hit the dirt. He had less than a second, but as soon as he landed on the ground he spun his body so that it rolled out of the way of Kimamaro's strike. As soon as he was out of the way the Aim Nin jumped to his feet, swinging his blade in the direction of the Oto Nin's head. Kimamaro expertly deflected his opponent's strike with his bone blade. A loud clang sound was heard by all in the area as the two stopped to stare at the other in surprise. Sex then leapt back several feet before glancing at his weapon. Shit, thought Sex as he glanced at the titan blade. I can't believe this bastard was able to chip the titan blade. This thing was specially made for me by some of the top weaponsmiths in AIM. Looks like I'll have to keep on my toes. Meanwhile, Kimamaro was studying his own weapon. The area that had impacted with Sex's weapon now had several cracks and fractures. So that piece of trash has a decent weapon, he thought, tossing his blade away. I'd had best take him out as quickly as possible. My body is only able to move right now due to my willpower and I must reach Orochimaru-sama soon so that I may be of use to him one final time. Kimamaro began to raise both hands, extending his fingers towards Sex as bones began to push out of the skin at the tip of each one. Teshi Sendan, he yelled as his finger bone bullets were launched at their target. Sex did his best to dodge, bending backwards as the attack soared harmlessly above him. However, Kimamaro relentlessly launched his jutsu again and again. Sex desperately dodged the attacks but, as time went by, he could feel each one coming closer and closer to hitting him. After the 10th try, the Aim Nin screamed out in pain as one of the bullets ripped through his leg. Damn you, growled Sex as he made several hand signs. Doton, Yakyu no Jutsu. Sex yelled, stomping his foot on the ground, causing a large dense chunk of rock to shoot out of the earth. Sex swung the titan blade, striking the rock with the flat side of his weapon, sending it flying towards Kimamaro. The Oto Nin let out a sigh as long thin bone blades grew out of the palms of his hands. Yanagi no Mai, said Kimamaro, calmly slicing the flying rock in half. As the two chucks soared past him, Kimamaro charged forward, slashing Sex across the chest. Sex cried in pain as he jumped back to a safer distance. Let's try this again, he said through clenched teeth. Doton, Jakyu no Jutsu. Useless, said Kimamaro, slicing another boulder in half while closing the gap between him and his metal-armed opponent. This time, however, Sex managed to dodge the attack by leaping backwards once more. The instant his feet touched the ground, Sex yelled out, Doton, Yakyu no Jutsu. Kimamaro felt his eye twitch. Pathetic trash, he said, cutting through Sex's attack once again. Yet what he didn't see was the exploding note that the Aim Nin had placed on the back of the rock. As soon as he cut it, the note detonated, sending the white-haired teen flying backwards. Seeing his chance, Sex jumped into the air above his opponent, ready to strike with the titan blade. This fight is mine, he yelled. Sadly, the titan blade did not pierce flesh as he had intended. Instead, it struck solid bone, which appeared on Kimamaro's skin like an exoskeleton. Black markings now covered every inch of Kimamaro's body. I never would have thought that I would need to use my cursed mark on a piece of trash like this, thought Kimamaro, rising to his feet. Once standing, dozens of bone spikes began to grow all over his body as they protruded from his elbows, back, chest, and even along his arms. I will finish this quickly so that he does not interfere with Orochimaru-sama's plans, Kimimaro thought, leaping forward to attack. You've got to be fucking kidding me, yelled Sex. Gulping, Sex did something that no one who knew him would ever believe, he ran away. A tick mark appeared on Kimimaro's head as he watched Sex run in the most disgraceful manner. With little effort, Kimimaro easily moved in front of the aim ready to strike. But as he did, he noticed that Sex's metal arm looked different. Almost like a shit, swore Kimimaro as Sex pointed his transformed arm at the killer bone user. Payback is a bitch, said Sex with a sadistic grin. He then shot a narrow stream of water at Kimimaro, who did his best to dodge. While the attack missed his main body, it did hit one of the numerous bone spikes on his body. After the attack ended, Kimimaro looked at where the water had hit him to discover a small hole through the bone. The pressure must be incredible to do that to one of my bones, thought a slightly shocked Kimimaro. If he gets in one good shot, then I'm done for. I can't believe that I'll have to resort to this. Not wasting another moment, Kimimaro began a series of hand signs. Once he was finished, the white-haired shinobi began to sink into the ground until there was nothing left of him. Confused, Sex transformed his gun back into its arm form. He had no idea what to expect, but at least he could make hand signs in this form. Sawarabi no mai. Sex heard a rumbling sound before a bone spike shot out of the ground near him. A second or two later another one followed, then two more. Then three. Soon dozens of bone spikes were coming out of the ground, faster and bigger than the ones before. Sex did his best to get out of his opponent's range of attack. Unfortunately, several large spikes shot up in front of Sex, causing him to slow down, losing his momentum. A moment later, hundreds of three-story bone spikes shot out of the earth. Kimimaro let out a small sigh as he walked out of one of the bone spikes. It was over. There was no way a piece of trash like him could have escaped his jutsu. Suddenly a burst of pain shot through his chest, causing him to fall to one knee as he coughed up some blood. I must hurry, thought Kimimaro as he started to stand once more. However, he suddenly leapt to the side in order to dodge some kunai attached with exploding tags. Once the explosion cleared, Kimimaro looked up to see a shocking sight. Sex was alive and airborne. Flames burst from the bottom of his boots, allowing him flight. Think of Firelord Ozai from Avatar. Can't believe I was forced to use this against someone other than Naruto, said Sex as he landed. The seals he had placed on his boots which allowed him this ability were recently placed, and Sex still hadn't fully mastered them yet. It would be dangerous to use them in a fight that wasn't a friendly sparring match. Kimimaro grunted irritably as he went into his second stage. He was going to end this right here and now. He would crush this piece of trash with 100% of his power. The markings began to cover his body, and soon he took the appearance of a purple dinosaur-like creature complete with a tail. Tesenka no Mai, Hana. Out of his arm came several bones which merged together until they took on the appearance of a large drill. This is one of my strongest attacks, said Kimimaro, pointing his arm at Sex. It is made of the strongest bones in my body. Impressive, said Sex as he lifted the titan blade above his head and began to swing it around with both arms. Then I guess I'll have to use my strongest attack as well. Flames began to cover the titan blade, which started out red but quickly turned blue and then white. Kimimaro watched in slight awe as Sex stopped the swinging to point the weapon at his opponent, causing the flames to take shape. The blade of the weapon resembled a bird's head while the hilt had sprouted wings. Hope you like this one. This is a jutsu I created just for the Kaze Shu. These are the hottest flames surrounding my weapon to give it incredible destructive power. Interesting that an insignificant runt like you can do something this impressive, said Kimimaro. Does it have a name? Sex blinked before reaching into his pocket to get a piece of paper. He had been having trouble coming up with a name for this jutsu, so he had asked his teammates to come up with one for him. When he found the paper, he looked at it, first in confusion and then rage. I am not calling it pretty pony, he yelled as he tossed the piece of paper away. Kimimaro felt his eye twitch right before he charged forward. Sex reacted instantly, charging Kimimaro with everything he had. There was a bright flash as their two attacks connected. When the light faded, Sex was lying on the ground, a dark circle around his one good eye. His entire body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Blood was spilling onto the grass. That attack, said Kimimaro slowly, wasn't complete trash. It was a pity Sex couldn't see the state his opponent was in. There was a large hole on his right side that had completely consumed his arm and most of his upper chest. There was no blood, for the heat of the flames was so strong that it had cauterized. Kimimaro coughed up blood one final time before falling to the ground. He was dead before he hit. Looks like I win, wheezed Sex as he heard Kimimaro fall. But, it doesn't look like I'll be able to continue. With that, Sex closed his eye as a human-shaped shadow fell upon him. Naruto and Sasuke's attacks collided. Sasuke had done his best to aim his Chidori right into the funnel of Naruto's Senpuken. According to Kakashi, that was the weak spot of the jutsu. Even a lightning element jutsu like his could defeat it if aimed for that one spot. What he didn't know was that Naruto also knew about his jutsu's weak point. As soon as he realized what Sasuke had planned, the blonde lifted his arm, deflecting Sasuke's attack away from the middle. While this did help to protect Naruto, Sasuke's attack still came, causing a huge explosion. Cheyenne coughed as rubble and dust from the explosion covered her. She rubbed her eyes clean only to wish she hadn't when she saw something that made her blood run cold. It was the same as her dream. Naruto suddenly landed in front of her and Tsunade. He had several bruises, cuts, and was dripping blood. Hopefully Sasuke had gotten the majority of the blast. Or at least the blonde hoped. He had acted more on instinct in order to defend himself. "See," Naruto said, grinning at the women. "I told you I wouldn't let anything happen to you." He suddenly braced himself as he heard the sound of chirping birds. Cheyenne saw Sasuke aim his Chidori and race towards Naruto at an amazing speed. She knew Naruto could get out of the way, but if he did there would be a chance that Sasuke's attack would hit one of them. One of the people Naruto had promised to protect. As the attack neared, the sound of a bell rang throughout the area. An energy field surrounded Naruto, deflecting Sasuke's attack. While everyone else blinked in confusion, Cheyenne had a confident smirk on her face. Unknown to all others, she had slipped a special bell onto Naruto the last time she was close to him. Using this bell she was able to protect him from the attack. She had changed Naruto's fate. "I don't know what that was, Dobe," said a bitter Sasuke, glaring at Naruto with all of his anger. Naruto watched as black marks began to appear all over the emo's body. "But I promise it will be the last lucky break you get." "We'll see about that, team," said Naruto as he shot into the air. Had Kakashi or Anko been there they would have expected Sasuke to growl in frustration or something to that effect. But instead, Sasuke just smirked as he bit his thumb. After doing a couple of hand signs, Sasuke yelled out, "Kuchiyos no Jutsu," bringing forth two giant hawks. Still grinning, Sasuke jumped on top of his first summoned hawk, Takamaki, while Takayami looked up to search for their prey. Meanwhile, Naruto bit both his thumb and placed a drop of blood on the back of each hand. Once done, he made several hand signs before yelling out, "Kuchiyos no Jutsu." When the smoke cleared, Hinoka and Ensho were on Naruto's arms once more. "Naruto-Nizan," cried Hinoka. "It's been a long time. Are we going to play a game?" "Baka," said Ensho as he turned his head to glare at the other salamander. "Naruto-sama needs us for battle, not to play some childish game." He then looked at Naruto. "So what is the situation?" "Sasuke team is betraying the village," said Naruto. "He has teamed up with Orochimaru and got some new powers. I thought I should pull you two out." Ensho nodded. "Very wise, Naruto-sama. The two of yous will be very helpful against his flames." "But I want a PLA dash," began Hinoka but was interrupted as two large hawks appeared in front of them. "When did he get those?" whispered Naruto under his breath as he tried to gain some distance. The two hawks, however, were faster than he thought and easily kept chase. "Looks like it's time for the reign of the Kazeshu to end," said Sasuke with a sneer. He then made several hand signs before yelling, "Katan, Hozenka no Jutsu." Several fireballs shot out of his mouth and headed in Naruto's direction. There is nothing that Dobe can do. Fire jutsus are strong against wind, which is all Naruto really knows. Even the Senputate, his best defensive jutsu, will be powerless against my fire. "That won't work," said both Hinoka and Ensho as they both made very familiar hand signs. "Katon, Senka no Jutsu." While it was the same jutsu, there was no doubt that there was more power in the one the two salamanders used. Their fireballs collided with Sasuke's, easily overpowering them. Seeing this, Takamaki banked left in order to dodge the attack. "Impossible," roared Sasuke. "How can that Dobe use a Katan jutsu with that much power? I thought the only element he knew was wind." "I saw it all," said Takamaki as he began to circle around to Naruto. "It was those salamanders on his arms, they used the Katan jutsu while Naruto made it stronger." "But how?" demanded Sasuke. "Naruto pumps his wind chakra into their legs," said Takamaki. "They have obviously been working together on this for a while." The hawk then paused as he realized that Naruto was flying straight at him, ready to deliver a knockout blow upon impact. However, Naruto didn't know of the enemy diving downwards with his talons ready to strike. As Naruto was about to hit Takamaki with the full force of his fist, Takayami grabbed Naruto from behind. The blonde screamed in pain as the hawk's talons dug deep into his flesh as the two plummeted towards the ground at a dangerous speed. Naruto struggled to free himself as best he could. But he couldn't reach behind him in order to free himself. Luckily for him, he wasn't alone. Ensho crawled up Naruto's arm as quickly as he could until he was at the shinobi's shoulder. Once there he unleashed a small Katon Jutsu at the winged creature, causing it to release its prey. As soon as he was free, Naruto stopped his descent as quickly as he could. However, he was in a large amount of pain and bleeding very badly. "Uzumaki," yelled Takayami as he circled around to make another go at Naruto. "Why? Why have you betrayed us?" "What are you taking about?" yelled Naruto as he barely dodged the Hawk's attack. "The scroll. How could you and your clan toss away our summoning contact after all these generations?" Takayami was about to attempt another strike, but Naruto appeared right in front of him and grabbed the Hawk by his wings. They were now face to face and Takayami could see confusion in the young teen's eyes. "I don't know what you're talking about," said Naruto. "As far as I know, my clan doesn't have a scroll." Takayami blinked. "You mean Kushinaheim never left you anything?" "Who the hell is Kushina?" demanded Naruto. He was starting to get annoyed with this Hawk. Nothing he said made any sense to the blonde. But, after he answered that last question, he noticed the Hawk's eyes narrow before looking over towards the other Hawk that carried Sasuke. Then, with a mighty beat of his wings, the Hawk left Naruto and headed right for Sasuke. "Lair," shouted Takayami, as he got close to Sasuke. "He didn't know anything about us. Something must have happened in the village that caused the Uzumaki clan to lose everything. After that, this Gaki must have found the scroll and tricked Takamaki. I'll claw out those cursed eyes out myself for this transgression." With talons ready, Takayami was about to do just that when Takamaki intercepted the attack. "What are you doing, you baka?" "I could ask you the same thing," said Takamaki. "I don't know what the Uzumaki has told you, but you shouldn't listen to his pathetic excuses." "I will not let blind rage guide me," said Takayami as he struggled with the other Hawk. "Nor will I allow you to do this. If you will not listen, then you have forced my claws." Without another word, Takayami grabbed the other Hawk before going poof, dragging Takamaki with him and leaving Sasuke to fall to the earth below. As Naruto watched Sasuke descend, he noticed that the marks on Sasuke's body changing. Soon his entire body turned gray and two webbed-handed looking wings shot out of his back. Sasuke began to flap his wings, however he was too heavy to fly like Naruto could. Still, he managed to slow his descent and glide down to the ground. Naruto studied Sasuke's movement intently from above only to realize that he was headed towards Tsunade and Cheyenne. Sasuke grinned wickedly as he neared the two women. He knew they were important to his former teammate, which meant that he would do anything to protect them. And if he couldn't, then Sasuke would get the satisfaction of knowing that he hurt Naruto in a deeper way. A way that would hurt him greater than any flesh wound. With that in mind, Sasuke activated his Chidori as he dove down towards his targets only to have Naruto appear in front of them with his Raijin out. Both teens screamed the other's name as their attacks collided, creating a blinding light. Both lightning blades fought for dominance for a moment, however, under the stress, a tiny crack appeared in the Raijin. Yet as soon as it happened, Sasuke's attack faded, much to his surprise. Seizing the moment, Naruto swung down with all his might and cut off Sasuke's right arm. The black-haired teen screamed as he fell to the ground holding the stump that was once his arm. The blonde, on the other hand, began to fall to the ground due to his exhaustion. "Naruto!" screamed Tsunade as she got up to caught the young shinobi despite all the blood on him. Slowly, she laid him down on his back so that she could heal his wounds. "Sasuke lost," thought Orochimaru as he saw the events out of the corner of his eye. He knew this was bad. His new body wasn't strong enough if he could be injured this easily. Not to mention he would need his arm reattached, which would take time. To make matters worse, it looked like Tsunade had gotten over her fear of blood, which meant that she could enter the fight at any moment. "We had better leave soon. But before we do, I should at least take care of the Kyubi-Gaki. If I leave him alone now, who knows how powerful he'll become in the future." Without another thought, Orochimaru raced away from Jiraiya, who'd he been fighting up till now, towards the blonde trio. His neck extended and a blade came out of his mouth. Tsunade looked up from her work to see her old teammate coming towards them. She instantly knew his target was Naruto, but she wouldn't let him have the boy. As he got closer, Tsunade planned on using her own body as a shield only to stop when she heard someone behind her shout, "Suiton, Akuyogen." She watched as a sphere smelling like sake hit Orochimaru, knocking him to the ground. Tsunade turned around to see Chu standing there along with Shishiwakamaru and Suzuka. The former clown-looking nin had Hinata, Enko, and Sex on his back. "Why is it that someone of my great beauty has to carry 3 people while you two don't even help?" whined Suzuka. "Because," began Shishiwakamaru as he drew his sword. "We'll be doing the fighting. As the weakest one here, you have to do something to pull your own weight." "He's right, mate," said Chu as he cracked his knuckles. "Our boy Naruto be in a deep shit pile, he is. Be needing some help against these blokes." Suddenly Kabuto appeared beside his master to help him up. Right then, Shizune appeared next to Suzuka with a kunai in hand. Both she and Kabuto looked worn out from their battle. Moments later Jiraiya landed next to Tsunade. "I have to ask you something," said the blonde medical Nin as she glanced at Chu. "We aren't from your village nor are we allies. So why are you helping us?" "It ain't complicated, Sheila," said Chu. "Naruto is a good old mate, he is. Good old fight we had, respected me. Let me live, he did, and that's not something to be forgotten. No hard feelings about my loss and all. I won't let Naruto show me up again," said Shishiwakamaru as he readied his sword. "I will show the world who the real showman is by taking down Orochimaru. I'm only here because they dragged me out here," said Suzuka. Orochimaru looked at the group in front of him. During his fight, he noticed that Jiraiya was getting stronger bit by bit. Whatever was wrong with him at the beginning of their fight was clearly wearing off. Then there was Tsunade, who was now finishing up the healing jutsu on Naruto. If she entered the fight, then the odds wouldn't be in his favor. As for the rest, well, he was sure that Kabuto could take them down even if he wasn't at full health. Finally, there was Sasuke, who had passed out. He needed to get the boy back to his lair to begin patching him up as well as making him stronger to be his next host body. Right now there was too great a chance that he might get hurt even worse in the crossfire. "Kabuto," said Orochimaru in a calm tone. "We have what we really need. Let's go home." With that the three enemies began to sink into the ground until they were gone. A few minutes later Cheyenne found herself sitting next to Naruto. Tsunade had finished giving him emergency first aid and was now working on sex. While she did that, Shizune was looking after Hinata. The others stood guard in case anyone interrupted them. "And Naruto-kun, I was wondering if I could ask you something," said Cheyenne. Naruto, who was still laying on the ground, looked up. "Sure," he said. "What's up?" "Well, it's like this," said Cheyenne as she took a breath to calm her nerves. "Do you know about the grand prize for the tournament?" Naruto nodded, which caused Cheyenne to feel a bit more at ease. "Well, then you know how the winner has to help me carry on my powers to the next generation." "I guess," said Naruto, who had no idea what she was talking about. "Don't worry. I'll do anything I can to help." "Really?" asked an excited Cheyenne. "Hey, don't count me out," said Sex as he tried to get up. However, Tsunade's strength kept him to the ground. Still he was able to turn his head to look at the two. "Whatever you want him to do I can do as well. Hell, I bet I can do it better than he can." This caused Cheyenne to blush. "Do they know what she's talking about?" whispered Shizune to Jiraiya. During the opening ceremony of the tournament she had seen Naruto and Sex leave while the rules of the tournament had been announced as well as what first place winner received. As usual, it was an immediate promotion to Chunin. This year, however, there was an added bonus that caused them to make it a men-only tournament, the hand of Cheyenne in marriage. "I don't think so," said Jiraiya as he pulled out his notebook. "But I want to see where this is going to go. It would make excellent research for my next book." Chapter 36. Tsunade needed a drink. It had been 1 week since the end of the tournament as well as the fight against Orochimaru and his followers, and since then much had happened. Following the announcement of the winner of the tournament, someone had been kind enough to spell out what Cheyenne wanted from both Naruto and Sex. After that little discussion they both ran for the hills as if they were being chased by demons. While Anko and Hinata went off to comfort and or yell at the blonde for winning said prize, it was left to Tsunade and Jiraiya to explain to Cheyenne that she might have to wait a while before her knights in shining armor returned to her. At first Cheyenne didn't take the news well, but when Jiraiya whispered something in her ear she seemed more able to accept the situation. Once that was over, things seemed to spiral downhill. They had returned to the village where Tsunade was quickly announced as Hokage. That part hadn't been so bad. But what came after was paperwork. When she had gotten to her office it had been filled knee-high with documents that she needed to go over before anything could be done. The academy needed new supplies and she needed to start thinking about future 3-man teams for the graduating class. There were mission requests that she needed to sort. Repair bills from when the village was attacked as well as other damages that had occurred afterwards. In short, it was hell. Then there were the results of the Chunin exam. She had to go over who made it to the finals, talk to the examiners, go over her own shinobi's histories, and several other things. And she had to do it quickly due to the state the village was in, so she could start sending them out on more advanced missions in order to help the village's income as well as not making it look like they had lost any real strength during the recent invasion. But that hadn't been the worst of it. No, that honor went to the constant interruptions that she was getting. The first few weren't so bad, coming over to congratulate her, welcome her back, and so on. But then came the shinobi or citizens who wanted her to do something for them. Wanted her to do some sort of favor in exchange for support or whatnot. Then there were the people who came over just to bitch. moaning about how the town still wasn't up and running, crying about how their son still wasn't a chunin, bellyaching for reasons Tsunade just couldn't bring herself to care about. One of the worst had been Hayashi. On her second day of office he had stormed in before she could sit down. Tsunade asked him what he wanted, which he replied by demanding that he be allowed to place the birdcage seal on Hinata. Tsunade's reply was to tell him no before ordering him out of her office. Hayashi tried to argue his case, saying that it would be best for his clan as well as making sure that the Byakugan never fell into enemies' hands. Tsunade responded by saying that if that was really true then all members of the clan would have that seal placed on them before ordering him to once again get out. That had been a real test of the new Hokage's patience. When he first brought up the seal she had wanted to punch him right off the wall to get him out of her office as soon as possible, but she restrained herself. Acting like that might cause a rift between her and those under her. While she might not like some of them, she had to treat them with at least some respect and not act like a bully. And today was shaping out to be no better than her previous days. When she entered her office there were several more stacks of papers that needed her attention as well as several other duties, but she supposed it could have been worse. "Tsunade," said Koharu as she and Hamera entered her office without knocking. Looking up, Tsunade could see that she was holding a piece of paper. Crap, it just got worse, she thought. "We have an important matter to talk to you about, Hokage-sama," said Hamera. "I'm sure you do," said Tsunade evenly as she looked at the elder pair. "It must be important seeing as the both of you entered my office so rudely." Her comment didn't seem to faze either of them. Tsunade sighed. "So, what seems to be the problem?" Koharu held up the piece of paper. "This is the problem," she said. Raising an eyebrow, Tsunade took the paper so she could read it better. It didn't take long for her to realize that this was a list of the genin she was planning on promoting. However, Tsunade hadn't shared this information with anyone yet. "Where did you get this?" demanded Tsunade. "That doesn't matter right now," replied Hamera plainly. "We are here to tell you that you need to make changes to it." Specifically removing one of the names, added Koharu. Tsunade closed her eyes for a moment. "You mean Naruto," she said. This had been the reason why she hadn't shown anyone the list yet. While there were more and more people who were now accepting Naruto, there were those who were higher up who still didn't like him, the primary two being the elders in front of her. Tsunade's plan had been to promote the new Chunins in secret before they could do anything to stop it. "Tsunade-sama, you know what Naruto really is," said Hamera. "We cannot allow him to be placed in situations where the Kyuubi can run amok or be captured by another village. If he is promoted to the rank of Chunin then the chances of either happening will be greater. Therefore we want to make sure that he remains near the village at all times with a proper escort to ensure that he never falls into enemy hands. Not to mention he is nothing but a troublemaker," said Koharu. "He has disrupted the village with his pranks. Not to mention his criminal behavior which your predecessor ignored. Defacing a village landmark. Stealing an important and highly guarded scroll. No one who has done these things should ever be allowed the rank of Chunin." "Well, I'm sorry you both feel that way," replied Tsunade calmly. "Shizune, will you please come in here?" A moment later the door opened to reveal Tsunade's assistant. "Yes, Tsunade-sama," she asked. "Please bring me the files in stack D," said Tsunade. Shizune let out a groan but complied as she exited the room. "Tsunade-sama began Hamera, but Tsunade held her hand up to stop him. "First of all, Naruto won the tournament in Oni no Kuni, which automatically gives him the rank of Chunin," said Tsunade. "Normally yes," said Hamera with a frown. "However, Naruto left the village and entered the tournament without the permission of the council which was in power at the time. Therefore his prize is null and void." "But I was the one who told him he could," countered Tsunade. "You were not Hokage at the time," stated Koharu. "True," said Tsunade. "But even so, Naruto has proven time and time again that he is ready for this promotion." With that said, Tsunade reached into her desk and pulled out a file. "I have gone over this a few times since I returned just in case someone like the two of you tried something like this. In Team 7's first mission outside of the village, Naruto displayed remarkable skill and cunning in order to free his superior officer. In the Chunin exam he impressed many of his examiners. In both the prelims as well as the finals he fought more opponents than anyone else. Then there was his fight with Gaara where he was fully able to display his skills. That does not mean that he began Koharu but was interrupted as Shizune entered the room carrying a large stack of documents. "What are those?" "These are request forms," replied Tsunade as Shizune set down the stack on her desk. "Since the Chunin exam, we have gotten well over 200 requests from all over the elemental nations to have Naruto specifically do a mission for them." "Biba stammered Koharu, who seemed lost for words. "I believe it was thanks to that stunt the council pulled during the Chunin exam," said Tsunade. People saw Naruto on live television as he fought two opponents. I know that the intention was to get him knocked out as quickly as possible. Instead, it made him look even stronger and thus more desirable as a shinobi. I see, said Hamera. His skills are impressive. However, being a Chunin is much more than simply being strong. A Chunin must be able to lead as well. From what we have read in Naruto's file, he hasn't shown any real leadership skills. Yes, said Koharu quickly. You can't make him a Chunin. I think you'll find that he does, replied Tsunade. During the Oni tournament, several shinobi from different countries stood beside him and helped us a bit in the fight against Orochimaru. They didn't have to, but they respected Naruto enough to follow him and support him, which is one quality of a leader. However, if that is not enough for you, there is something else we can do. Since I have returned, I have had several Chunin and Jonin come to me asking for Naruto to be part of their missions. Not hard to see why. The ability to fly would come in handy in a lot of missions. I would like to put Naruto on those missions so that he has a chance to learn more about leadership until he is better prepared to do so himself. For a moment, no one in the room spoke. Shizune held Tonton close as the two elders gave each other a look. By the looks on their faces, one would think they were talking to each other telepathically. Then, after a few seconds of this, they turned their attention back to Tsunade. Tsunade, began Hamera. It is important that we work well together for the sake of the village. While you have given us some decent reasons for why Naruto should become a Chunin, our minds remain unchanged in the matter. There is simply too much danger in allowing that boy to go off on more dangerous missions where some other village or group could take control of the Kyuubi. The two of us feel that it would be safer, and better, if he remained here. Then there is the matter of running this village, continued Koharu. We are your advisors, people you need to listen to. Crossing us right out of the gate would make it difficult for both us. So, in other words, either I do as you say or else you'll make my job a living hell, said Tsunade as she closed her eyes. Before either of the elders could say anything, Tsunade's eyes opened with a fierce and determined look in them. Very well then, you're both fired. What? They both yelled at the same time. Tsunade-sama, with all due respect, you can't do that, said Hamera. I can and will, replied Tsunade. You were both Sarutobi-sensei's teammates and he made you two his advisors because he trusted you. I, however, don't have such a connection and do not want his leftovers. I will pick my advisors from shinobi who are more current in all things. You two may now leave. For a moment, neither of the elders moved a muscle. They just stared at the Hokage as she went back to work as if she had already forgotten them. Seeing this, Hamera was the first to make his way towards the door with the full intent of heading straight to the daimyo. However, when he got to the door he realized that Koharu was still staring at Tsunade with eyes full of hate. This isn't over, was all she said before turning around and joining her former teammate. As the door closed behind them, Tsunade let out a sigh of relief. Personally, she thought that it went pretty well. At most, they would complain to the daimyo, making an argument that they should stay. Tsunade knew that she would have to be quicker. Shizune, said Tsunade as she pulled out a piece of paper. Quickly she wrote down two names before handing that paper to her trusted assistant. I want to see these two in my office right away. Of course Tsunade-sama, replied Shizune as she ran out of the office. Meanwhile, deep within Orochimaru's Oto village, Sasuke screamed in rage. He wanted to get out there so that he could kill Naruto for his defeat, but first his injuries needed to be treated. Most of them were minor, but the biggest one was the loss of his arm. Without it he could no longer perform his jutsus and would make taijutsu a bit more difficult. Without that arm, his chances of ever seeking revenge on Itachi or Naruto seemed very far away. Currently he was in Kabuto's medical room sitting on a bed with several tubes coming out of the stump that was once his arm. All around him were some of the most impressive medical devices that he had ever seen. Well, he would be impressed if he really gave a damn. He also noticed that he wasn't alone in the room. Lying on the bed next to him was a red-headed girl connected to several medical devices. After waiting for what seemed forever, Kabuto finally entered the room. Standing behind him was another man who had bandages over most of his body except for a single eye. A yellow, snake-like eye that could only belong to one person, Orochimaru. Good evening Sasuke-kun, cooed Orochimaru as he walked up to his prize. Kabuto, however, moved toward something that looked like a refrigerator in the back of the room. I trust all is well? What do you think, growled Sasuke. I finally got the power I need but can't use it because of this, growled Sasuke, pointing to his useless appendage. Orochimaru grinned underneath his bandages. Is that all? He asked. Sasuke-kun, I'm hurt that you would think that I would leave you like this. Don't worry, you will soon have a replacement arm that will help make you more powerful than ever before. As Sasuke raised an eyebrow at this, Kabuto walked over to the area next to his bed. Out of the corner of his eye, Sasuke saw him set down operating tools as well as a large cylinder-shaped object full of a semi-transparent liquid. But there was something else floating in the cylinder, a human arm. "Is that mine?" asked Sasuke. "No," replied Kabuto as he fixed his glasses. "This arm once belonged to a member of the Kagaya clan. By chance, we stumbled across its owner as he was dying. Poor boy, it was most likely his first mission. Anyways, we couldn't save him, but we brought the body back here to study it. Luckily for us, he wasn't suffering the same genetic disease that killing Kimimaro. With time, and a little luck, you should be able to use some of the jutsus that he was able to use." Sasuke nodded before looking over at the red head. "And what about her?" he asked. "Oh, that's Tayuya," replied Orochimaru. "She's a member of the Sound Four. Well, I should say she was a member since she's the only one left alive. A pity really." The snake Sannin then walked over to her and began to stroke her hair. "It seems that she fought with Anko-chan and lost. But she was the only one to survive their encounter, so she may still be of some use to us down the line, perhaps as a sparring partner for you." "Orochimaru-sama," said Kabuto quietly. "It's time to begin." "Very well," replied Orochimaru. "I will take my leave." He turned and smiled at Sasuke. "And once you have fully recovered, we will begin your training." Elsewhere, the Hawks had gathered together on their island home. It had taken some time to round up all 152 of them, and yet there were still some who hadn't shown. Most likely out hunting for food. Still, seeing that a majority were here, Takayami began to tell them about the fight as well as his beliefs about the Uchiha. In the front perched the elder hawk, Takakaze, who took every word to heart. He was a gray-colored hawk with a long, thin beard. He was also small, easily able to fit into the palm of a hand. Yet despite his small size, he was skilled and very powerful. Few hawks would dare to oppose him. "The Uzumaki clan has not betrayed us," roared Takayami. "In all likelihood the Uchiha Gaki stole the scroll." "Then tell us how he did so," demanded Takamaki. "The Uzumaki clan swore to keep the scroll safe. Swore they would never let another person outside of the clan use it unless they were trustworthy. Yet the Uchiha claimed dash." "You are taking the word of an Uchiha," yelled a hawk in the crowd. "How do you know he isn't lying?" "Then how did he get the scroll?" asked Takamaki. "Where is Kushinaheim? Why dash?" "Enough," said Takakaze quietly. Takamaki stopped in mid-sentence and turned to look at the elder, as did all of the other hawks. "Speculating like this isn't going to get us anywhere. It is well past time that we did something other than waiting around to be summoned. We need to investigate to see what has happened to the Uzumaki clan and how the Uchiha got his hands on our summoning scroll." "I know the truth," began Takamaki, but a quick stare by the elder hawk silenced him from saying anything else. "That is quite enough," said Takakaze. He then turned to address the rest of the hawks. "I am going to conduct an investigation myself in order to find the truth. Until I return, no hawk will be permitted to be summoned under any circumstance. After I have found out the truth, we shall see which clan will be allowed to summon us." Without another word, Takakaze opened his wings and took off into the air. At first it seemed like he was having a little trouble due to his age, faltering with every flag of his wings. But that quickly changed as he got higher. Soon he was flying more gracefully at a speed that seemed impossible for any living creature. And he was flying in the direction of Hai no Kuni. X. "This is so cool," said Naruto. "I know," replied Sex as a tear fell from his good eye. "I hope it keeps on like this until the end." "Shut your yaps, lads," said Chu as he looked at the two. "We're trying to watch the tele too." "It's my TV," muttered Naruto as he rolled his eyes. "Would you all keep it down?" yelled Suzuka as he looked up from the Raijin. "I'm trying to fix this thing and all your noise is distracting." After the tournament had ended, Naruto had been concerned about the state of Raijin. Never before had he seen a single crack on it, nor did he have any idea how to fix a blade made of lightning. When he voiced his concern, Suzuka had approached him, offering to look at it since he was an expert on techniques as well as odd weapons. Naruto, being so excited by this news, had almost immediately given the blade to him. However, he was stopped by Enko, who suspected that Suzuka might have less than honorable intentions. With his intentions being called into question, the once clown-like shinobi merely replied that he was simply curious and he wanted to look at the seals that made it work since he had never seen anything like it before. Before anyone else could say something, Jiraiya insisted that it would be a good idea since Suzuka was the only shinobi that was remotely trustworthy to look at it and not tamper with it. Shishiwakamaru spoke up to vouch for Suzuka, saying that he was the one who helped forge his own blade. Tsunade thought about it and decided that it would be okay as long as he looked at it in the village where it would be harder for him to run off with the blade. After that, Sex, Chu, and Shishiwakamaru volunteered to go as well to keep an eye on him. Currently, Naruto was watching a Sentai show along with Chu and Sex. Suzuka, meanwhile, was sitting at the kitchen table as he tinkered with the Raijin as Shishiwakamaru calmly drank tea. "Well, that about does it," said Suzuka as he set down the Raijin. "Really?" exclaimed Naruto as he jumped into the air. He then floated over to grab the sword, activating it. The blade appeared as it always had in the past, with no sign of the crack in it at all. "It looks great." "Of course it looks great," sighed Suzuka as Naruto deactivated the blade. The seal matrix that makes the blade work was seriously damaged due to the stress caused by Sasuke's attack. "I believe I managed to patch it up to a point where it can be used again in battle." Sex turned his head away from the television, glaring at Suzuka in annoyance. "What do you mean you believe?" he demanded. "It's been a week and dash. And I have never encountered anything this difficult before," interrupted Suzuka as he stood up. "It took 3 days just to examine each seal on the Raijin. 2 days were spent trying to figure out a plan to fix them using just my knowledge alone before spending 4 days trying to fix it. I'm honestly surprised that I was able to do as much as I was under these conditions." "But it's fixed, right?" asked Naruto. "It should be fine," replied Suzuka. "It'll function as it had before, however its durability has been weakened. In a way, the blade of the Raijin is very much like a real sword. Once a significant amount of damage has been done, the blade is impossible to fix or be at 100%. To be on the safe side you should avoid using it against a jutsu like the Chidori again." "But began Naruto. "Listen," said Suzuka as he pointed a figure at the Raijin. "If you go up against Sasuke in the future, avoid the Chidori instead of blocking it. If you block it with that sword again, there is a very good chance that it will break. And when that happens I wouldn't be able to fix it. Understand?" Naruto nodded gravely. Just then there was a knock on the door. Naruto, after setting his feet back on the ground, walked over to open it, revealing Hinata. Only she didn't look like her normal shy self. Today she was wearing a simple black, short-sleeved dress that caused Naruto to have a small nosebleed. "Good afternoon, Naruto-kun," she said with a small blush as Naruto stared at her. "I'm here for our date today, remember? You said we were going to the park and dash." "All right," stammered Naruto. "Well then we'd best be going off." "We should," announced Chu all of a sudden as he got to his feet. "Best not get in the way now." "But I haven't finished my drink," said Shishiwakamaru. "And Haku-chan said she would make us dinner tonight." "In that case we have to go," said Sex as Chu grabbed the swordsman with one hand. "It was nice seeing you all again," said Hinata as Chu, Shishiwakamaru, and Suzuka began to walk out the door and past her. "Yeah, I hope we'll meet again sometime," said Naruto. "Now don't you worry about that, mate," replied Chu. "Next time we be seeing you we be having more muscles, we will." With that the three left. Sex lingered behind, smirking as he held out his robotic hand for Naruto to take. "Next time we meet we will have that rematch," said Sex. "I got permission to go on a training journey to make myself stronger." "Sounds good," said Naruto as he shook the Cybernine's hand. "Got anything special in mind?" "Just finding super rare summons," replied Sex while trying to make it sound like it was no big deal. Then his expression became a bit more serious. "Just make sure you stay alive till then. I'm sure that after that tournament, there will be many villages that will see us both as a threat." "Don't worry about me," replied Naruto. Sex smirked while glancing at Hinata, who gave him a small nod. He knew that Naruto had strong friends who would help keep him safe. So, without another word, Sex left, allowing the two to begin their date.